Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Let Us Head Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Passed Relive Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Reset, 7:58 AM, Wednesday. Izuku, are you okay? Midoriya Izuku asked as her son shoveled katsudon into his mouth with his left hand, writing furiously into a fresh notebook with the right. You seem a little distracted today. Midoriya Izuku waved his pencil at her, making sure he finished chewing before he answered. Sorry, Mom. I just found a really interesting quirk and couldn't wait to note it down. Inko shook her head with a smile. Her baby really loved analyzing quirks. Oh really? What's this one called? I don't know its real name yet. Izuku shrugged, and she suddenly noticed that his bright green eyes were a little dimmer today. Did something happen? But I've named it Reset. Property of Izuku Midoriya, 13 years old. Quirk name, Reset. User, unknown. Ability, emitter, time reversal, manipulation. Observed use, 3 consecutive times so far. Rewinding back from 7:50 PM to 7:58 AM, no one seems to remember the reset other than me. It is unknown if the user can rewind further than this, or if their limit is capped at around 12 hours. But why are they creating a time loop in the first place, constantly rewinding back at the exact same time? Is there some event at 7:50 PM that they keep failing to stop? Possible applications, nearly limitless. In hero work, villain attacks could be predicted, police cases solved with extra time, and any human losses reversed. And in day-to-day life, well, everyone wants to fix their mistakes. Drawbacks. No drawbacks have been observed as of now. Midoriya, can you answer the last question, please? Yoshida-sensei prompted, his voice a bland monotone. It's sensei, Izuku replied, not even bothering to look up from his notebook. Correct, Midoriya. Next. Izuku zoned out again, letting the man drone on. Izuku sighed. If this class had been boring the first time, by the third Izuku was ready to leap out the window. Why couldn't he be stuck in a time loop on the weekend or something? He had hacked into the quirk database last loop, but there was no time manipulation quirk listed. If one did exist, they'd probably be in hiding or a well-known hero. The class bell chimed, and Izuku was already out the doorway. Oi, Deku. But apparently still not fast enough. Izuku turned around reluctantly. He played back his memory of the past few seconds, comparing it to the other variations of the day. Katsuki always got up just as he did, meaning that Izuku, unfortunately, couldn't avoid this talk unless he left class early. Katsuki Bakugo was an incredibly talented teenager, blessed with reflexes, a powerful quirk, and the intelligence to consistently stay right behind Izuku grade-wise. Unfortunately, this inflated the boy's pride a lot. Hey, you give up on being a damn hero yet? Katsuki demanded. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Why would I do that, Katsuki? Like every other time he'd use that name instead of Kaken, the blonde twitched the smallest bit. I don't know how many times I need to say this, you shitty nerd. But with that weak quirk, you'll just effing die trying to do hero work. Izuku cut him off, imitating his gruff voice. Katsuki sputtered, caught off guard as Izuku used his exact words. Is that what you wanted to say? Katsuki gritted his teeth, switching tactics. Get a job as a quirk analyst or some shit, Deku. But as a hero, you'd be fighting quirkless. He didn't hate Katsuki. The boy wasn't really his friend anymore, despite how close their parents were. But at the same time he was looking out for Izuku in some condescending way. That didn't make it any less annoying, though. I'm becoming an underground hero. I won't be in those flashy fights anyway. And plenty of heroes don't have combat-related quirks. I'll use support gear. What about Auntie and Co? The third time through this conversation, it was essentially a script. Izuku's memory told him exactly what Katsuki was going to say, and word by word what he responded. My mother supports me, Izuku said, a bit more irritation than the last loop in his voice. You don't have the right to throw her name at me like that. Leave me alone. The blonde's eyes flashed. Izuku sidestepped in a fluid movement, and Katsuki stumbled over his foot, mid-lunge, and crashed to the floor. I'll never give up on being a hero, Katsuki. Izuku walked away from Katsuki, ignoring the angry shout behind him. Katsuki didn't make any more moves, though. Even Aldra couldn't help their favorite student if he started a fight in a crowded hallway. 3:17 PM. Izuku texted his mom that he would be out with friends as soon as he got out of school. Lying to her felt horrible, but there were less than 5 hours till the next reset and he still had no clues to how to break out of the loop. Both resets so far, Izuku was a different spawn at 7:50. He didn't notice anything special before the reset was already happening. So why was Izuku the only one who seemed to remember, if the quirk's activation had no connection to him? Izuku had a photographic memory, his quirk letting him recall any moment in his 13 years of life with perfect clarity. That could be why he could. But Izuku had never experienced a reset before, meaning that the quirk hadn't been used once over Izuku's entire lifetime. Izuku placed a hand on his forehead, already feeling a headache pound his skull. The suspects were endless. Even a 4-year-old newly awakening his ability could be the one causing this time loop. Did Izuku have to check every single kid in Mustatafu? How would he even do that? What it was somebody across the world. He'd be unable to do a thing. He forced the panic away. He'd leave that possibility for later. Izuku chose a different street to stroll down this run-through, wandering aimlessly as his thoughts raced. Villain attacks. Maybe he'd find one right before the reset. That was exactly the kind of thing that'd force you to rewind time. 6:34 p.m. He got to see a pro-hero fight. Kamui Woods captured her easily using his quirk, Lumber, without any deaths. Izuku was so excited to see a pro fight in person, flashing back through the memory over and over with a grin. The giddiness started to fade though, as he realized he still had nothing to show for this loop. His phone was constantly monitoring the police radio, but there weren't any more villains showing up. Not that Izuku wanted a villain to attack, of course, but he didn't have any other ideas. His eyes caught on a bright sign, reading out Starlight Cafe in glowing yellow. He stifled a yawn. Coffee sounded pretty amazing right now. Then he dismissed the urge. Something could happen, right past the street, and he'd miss it. He couldn't take the chance. This time loop thing was really not as fun as it should be. Izuku sighed as he walked away. Everything was reset once again in a brilliant display of power. The world deconstructed around him. Roads and buildings and people reduced to blocks and drifting away. They were replaced by a field of pure white, expanding faster and faster. Izuku turned to meet the light as it approached from behind, closing his eyes just before he was engulfed in light. Wait a minute. Didn't that mean the reset had just come from that way? Reset, 7:58 a.m., Wednesday. Where he just was, Izuku realized, was close to the quirks user. In an incredible stroke of luck, his search had been narrowed down. Slow down on your food, Izuku. You're not late. Sorry, Mom. 3:10 p.m. Excuse me, Yoshida-sensei. The teacher paused, surprised. Yes, Midoriya. Can I leave early? I have a cram class soon, and I don't want to be late. Yoshida-sensei merely nodded, and Izuku passed a grumbling blonde on his way out. Izuku activated his quirk, setting off on the exact same path he took in his memory. 7:26. By finding where he was last reset using a mapping app, he could systematically search in a wide radius around it. He'd skipped the Kamui Woods fight in a tremendous show of self-control, giving him plenty of time to find Reset's user. Is what Izuku had thought, like a foolish fool. He slumped his shoulders as the truth hit. Without some kind of high-level vision quirk, or ragdoll search, one teenager just couldn't search through an entire area in time. Obviously, maybe he should go to the police. I've been hit by a 1-in-a-million time travel quirk. You've got to help me break out of a time loop. Never mind, there's no way they'd believe him. Izuku blinked out of his thoughts, realizing he was standing in front of the Starlight Cafe once again. His exhausted body must really want coffee. That's how he found himself taking a booth near the counter, feeling himself relax a little in the cafe's lighting. Hello, what can I get you today? A bright voice said next to him. Izuku glanced up to see a brunette smiling at him, menu in hand. Why was someone his age working in a cafe? Coffee, photographic memory, and he still couldn't remember what else he was supposed to specify. Figures. What size? The girl prompted kindly. Uraraka, he read off her name tag. Medium, please. I'll be right back then. Uraraka walked away, and he checked his phone. 7:45. 5 minutes then. His only goal right now was filling up on caffeine before he was forced to go through the day, yet again. He'd think of something new next loop. Wait, would the caffeine even transfer over? Izuku absently wondered how he was so calm about the whole time loop thing. Maybe it was because reliving his past was exactly what his quirk did. When he met Reset's user, maybe he'd ask them if they felt the same way. Then a man burst through the door, and Izuku almost jumped out of his seat. He was tall, his face sharp and alert and a little bit scary. His eyes scanned over Izuku and the few customers before landing on the employee there, Uraraka. Izuku's gaze sharpened, photographic memory feeding him more and more details on instinct as the man stormed up to the counter. That pink coat was ugly. Really, what was he even thinking? It clashed with those gloves, and especially that knife. Oh no. You there, kid? Hand over all the cash this cafe's got. He waved the weapon carelessly at Uraraka, a clear threat. A robbery, Izuku realized too late. Could Izuku take him down? He had some training, but he wasn't a licensed hero in any sense of the word. With no clue what the villain's quirk was, he'd just make things worse. The best thing to do, he knew, was to let the man take the money and leave without hurting anyone. But it was almost 7:50. This robbery could be exactly what caused the reset. Uraraka's fingers were trembling, but she did as he asked and unloaded the cash register as Izuku and the rest of the customers watched, anxious and silent. The man grew more and more impatient as the counter filled with yen, tapping his fingers against the wood. Hurry up, I don't have all day here. His gaze wandered over the rest of them as he waited. and Izuku resisted a shiver when it washed over him. Then the villain's eyes narrowed on something behind him. Izuku felt his heart sink through the ground as a woman froze in her seat, her phone still held up to her ear. Did she just try to call the cops? I in clear view of the villain. Damn it, even he had more common sense than that. The man's face twisted into a scowl as he lunged, grabbing Uraraka. The girl let out a short scream and in a fluid movement, the knife was held up to her neck as his other arm gripped her elbow. What's the effing deal, Beach? He tightened his hold on Uraraka, and Izuku tensed. Who'd you just call? Hey, nobody, I swear. It was just my boyfriend. Bullshit, the villain snarled. Izuku stood, hands up. He had to salvage this somehow. Hey, why don't you just take the money and leave before the cops can even get here? This cafe's pretty new, so that's probably all she's got anyway. The villain met his very reasonable statement with a hard glare. That's all this shitty cafe's got. Well then, I don't need this brat. The knife pressed harder into Uraraka's throat and perfect recall burned the image of a small drop of blood dripping slowly down her neck, deep into Izuku's mind. And then Izuku was moving before he knew it. He elbowed the man's knife arm, pushing it away before his palm struck his chin. The villain stumbled back, and Izuku yanked Uraraka behind him in the opening. Why yeah, no, Izuku said, willing his knees not to shake. He'd never been in a real fight before. Why don't you just leave? The villain laughed in his face. Rude. A kid trying to play hero, eh? What are you, 10? I'm 13. Izuku protested, indignant. Did he really look that small? Whatever, brat. I'm going to effing kill both of you, and then that beach over there on the phone. The villain lunched. There was a dangerous villain who racked up dozens of kills a few years back, named Dagger by the media. His knife-summoning quirk and skill were unstoppable for years until Maruko finally brought him down. Izuku flashed through the video in his mind. He ducked low under the first slash, twisting out of the way of the next. The man hurled his fist forward too wide and Izuku sidestepped and kicked him in the ankle, just like Maruko would. The hell? Izuku deflected a heavy arm, his limbs already tiring, before punching him in the stomach. Why is this kid so hard to hit? Izuku grinned as he knocked the knife out of the villain's hand with a chop, letting it clatter to the ground before throwing a punch at the man's face. Gotcha, villain-san. His much smaller fist stopped as the man's palm closed around it, and the villain smirked. Oh, no, I got you, brat. Pain. Izuku's vision went white for a moment. He felt like he was on fire as a sharp sting ran through his entire body at once. His thoughts were stilted as his mind was forced to memorize the sensation, before he toppled to the ground, completely numb. A touch-based electrification quirk, Izuku realized, activated with all 5 fingers. All Izuku had focused on was the knife. So many years spent on quirk analysis and he forgets about the villain's quirk in his first real fight. He'd been so stupid. How does it feel? Much worse than any taser? Huh. The man chuckled, picking up the fallen knife. Serves you right, dumbass. But don't worry, I'll end you soon. Leave him alone. A fist slammed into his face, almost knocking the villain over. Izuku blinked. Uraraka. The villain growled. Uraraka grabbed Izuku's elbow, trying to drag his fallen body away. No, you need to run away. Izuku urged. What do you? Uraraka huffed. Think I'm doing? There was no way they could outrun the villain like that. He raised the knife high, aiming for the still paralyzed Izuku. But instead of moving, Uraraka raised her arms wide in front of him like a shield, her face setting into something determined. Izuku forced his eyes shut, desperately refusing the memory. Yet he still heard it happen, the unmistakable sound of the girl he'd known for minutes sacrificing herself, and that was enough to make him scream as everything went white once again. Reset. 7:58 a.m. Wednesday. Izuku, is something wrong? Izuku's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm fine, Mom, don't worry. Inko bit her lip. If you're sure, honey, just tell me if there's anything I can do to help, okay? I'm fine, Izuku said, his eyes burning. He be prepared, this time. 3:10 p.m. Property of Midoriya Izuku. Reset. New information. Reset's user is found to be Uraraka, a girl who seems to be around my age. Quirk seems to activate automatically when the user is in critical condition. The page tore there, his pencil stabbing through the page. He took a deep breath and kept writing. Can she use Reset at will, then? Given that Uraraka had no clue the villain was going to attack. Her quirk doesn't carry her memories back with her as mine did. But why? Doesn't that make Reset completely useless? Excuse me, Yoshida-sensei. The teacher paused, surprised. Yes, Midoriya. Can I leave early? I have a cram class soon, and I don't want to be late. 7:40. Usually, the more Izuku viewed a memory, the less emotion he would feel watching it. But now, as Izuku's mind played back the villain fight over and over until the ache in his chest had turned into an angry blaze, that just wasn't true. Seeing Uraraka, bright and alive as he walked into the cafe, was disorienting. He probably stared a bit too long as he took the same seat as before. Hello, what can I get you today? Izuku glanced up. Can I have a coffee, medium please? I'll be right back, Uraraka said, walking away. Izuku watched her for a moment, then checked his phone. 7:45. Now, Izuku moved from his seat, ducking under the counter while Uraraka's back was turned, and then he waited patiently as the villain walked in, that effing knife clenched in his hand. The scene played out again in front of Izuku's eyes, almost like he was using his quirk. The villain leaned on the counter, ordering Uraraka to start handing over money. A tense minute, then the dumb woman made her call and the man lunged for Uraraka. Izuku rose, batting his arm away. Both the potential hostage and villain stared at him, confused. Where the F did you come from? Izuku cut him off with a punch to the jaw. The knife swung out on reflex and Izuku ducked, kicking him between the legs. Hard. The man screamed like a wounded bear, dropping the knife. Izuku kicked it aside. The villain's hands shot forward, reeking of ozone and glinting like sparks. Izuku weaved through them, throwing his own jabs and not letting his guard down for a second. Not this time. Not again. He caught Izuku's punch and his furious glare turned into a vicious grin. Only for nothing to happen. The man looked down at Izuku's gloves, a bright red that matched his shoes, eyes going wide. It's rubber, a hole. Izuku's right hook slammed into his head and the villain fell to the ground, unconscious. He whirled around, pointing a gloved finger at the woman whose mistake caused this whole situation, and would promptly receive a decent portion of the blame, at least from Izuku. Please tell me you actually called the cops, lady. 8:23 p.m., Wednesday. Izuku watched as the police took the villain away, quirk-suppressing handcuffs locked tight onto the man's wrist. It was finally over. After going through the same day 5 times, he was out of the time loop. He'd found Reset's user. Uraraka was his age, and this was the first time she had used her quirk. Reset must have some kind of specific activation condition, or maybe it only worked when she died. Izuku frowned at that thought. Either way, Uraraka would have lived quirkless since no one knew about Reset. He couldn't imagine having gone through that in a quirk-focused society. He wanted her help. If Reset could be activated without harming her, then they basically had a way to travel back in time. Izuku could save so many people with an ability like that. Yet he knew nothing about Uraraka besides that she was amazingly brave and could throw a mean punch. How would he convince her that she even had a quirk, not to mention to use for hero work? A man walked up, breaking Izuku out of his thoughts. He wore a kind smile and a tan coat, waving at Izuku and Uraraka as he approached. Hello, my name is Tsukachi Naomasa, and I'm a detective. Are you two all right? Yeah, Uraraka replied, and Izuku simply nodded next to her. Wonderful. Tsukachi pulled out a notepad and pen. Is it okay to ask the two of you some questions about this incident, then? They took a booth in the cafe, and Tsukachi sat across from the two of them. Most of the customers and police already cleared out. Tsukachi was probably questioning them here to save their parents an anxious trip to the station. You're Uraraka, right? Do you work at this cafe? Tsukachi asked. Yep, my part-time shift's from 5 to 8. Wait, so you got robbed just before you got off shift? Izuku blurted. Damn, that was tough. Yes, can you give your account of what happened here? Tsukachi asked. The man stomped through the door, and immediately I saw the knife in his hand. The cafe went silent. Uraraka bit her lip. He demanded money, and I was terrified and handed the money in the cash register over. I was doing that thing, you know, where you take really deep breaths, so you don't panic. And it helped a lot, but he was being impatient. Uraraka, we can continue this another time. Uraraka shook her head. No, I'm fine. Anyway, so this woman in the back, the one who got that latte with so much sugar, tried to call the cops, but the guy noticed. He got kinda angry and tried to grab me, but then bam. Tsukachi's pen paused at the sound effect before it kept moving. This guy jumped up from under the counter and beat him up. It was so cool. From under the counter, Tsukachi glanced at Izuku. His actions were pretty odd without context. Izuku realized he'd just been focused on saving Uraraka, and not at all what it looked like. It was weird for me, too, Uraraka exclaimed. Wait, what's your name? Midoriya Izuku. Midoriya-kun. Izuku blinked. Where'd that honorific come from? Came in shortly before Pink Jacket did. But before I could get him his coffee, the villain was walking in, and I don't remember seeing Midoriya-kun get under the counter. But anyway, Pink Jacket was losing to some really cool moves and then tried to use some kind of blue lightning, and Midoriya-kun stopped it with his rubber gloves. Uraraka paused, turning to Izuku. Wait, how do you know to bring rubber gloves? Oh, that wasn't good. Tsukachi hummed. Yes, Midoriya. Why'd you bring rubber gloves with you today? I needed the gloves for school, a science experiment. Turned out pretty lucky for me, Izuku shrugged, lying through his teeth. The index finger on Tsukachi's right hand moved the slightest bit. Izuku would normally have missed it, but the experienced detective was otherwise the perfect sign of control, calmly listening to their stories. Maybe Izuku was just being paranoid. I don't mean to pressure you here, but why were you behind the cafe's counter? Do you have some kind of precognition quirk? Izuku winced. It's a little embarrassing, so I didn't want to say. I walked around the counter to ask Uraraka-san something, but that's when Pink Jacket came in, so I ducked under before he could see me. The finger twitched again. I was right there when the villain grabbed for Uraraka, so I had to help her. He had a knife. Izuku didn't need to put on an act here. He'd truly been terrified for her. He couldn't let her die again. I could tell he had an electricity quirk from the smell and sparks, so I put on my rubber gloves. Tsukachi-san, am I going to face vigilante charges? Izuku was sure the finger didn't move an inch after that statement. Why? You're very good at thinking under pressure, Midoriya. Taking on a villain is no easy feat. Tsukachi praised. Don't worry about charges. This was clearly a case of self-defense, and according to the other witnesses, neither of you used a quirk. I've never seen Kamui Woods in person before, Izuku suddenly said. Tsukachi stared at him, confused. What? Izuku lied, and the index finger on his right hand moved. He didn't, and the finger stayed still. The twitch was so ridiculously small that Izuku's photographic memory only caught it after he reviewed the times where he lied. The detective must have endlessly trained the tell out of himself, but he couldn't remove it completely. And, well, Izuku doubted he was trying his best for two teenagers. Izuku had no idea how it worked, but the effect was clear. Lie detection, a perfect quirk for a detective. The information wasn't much use to Izuku now, unfortunately, now that he'd already lied about the most important parts. Sorry, I just heard about his villain fight today. He's amazing, Izuku said. Do detectives got to meet heroes often? That must be really cool. Tsukachi smiled. Yeah, we do. For us cops, the hero worship fades a little after years of working with them, but they're still neat, aren't they? Who's your favorite hero, Midoriya? If you asked me when I was little, I would have told you it was All Might, and the way he could save everyone with a warm smile on his face, Izuku said. But now, I think I'd say Sir Night-Eye. Tsukachi raised an eyebrow. That's a rare one. Despite being All Might's sidekick, he isn't very well known. May I ask why? I think I can imagine myself with the same kind of investigative focus and heroics. And his quirk is amazing, isn't it? The detective chuckled. You're right about that, kid. Having future knowledge is any hero's dream. Tsukachi waved as he walked out of the cafe. Would he care to investigate Izuku's lies? Or would he just dismiss Izuku as a weird teenager? Here, Izuku turned to see Uraraka, holding a cup of coffee out in her hand. Thanks. He didn't expect her to remember, especially after all of that. Uraraka smiled. You saved me, it's the least I can do. But all of that, do you really not have some kind of precognition quirk? I heard you mention Sir Night-Eye. Izuku opened his mouth then hesitated, taking a sip of his coffee. It's pretty complicated. Izuku started. But if you're free tomorrow, Uraraka-san, I could try to explain. Uraraka pouted. Making me wait, I see. I'm curious now. Fine then, does lunch work for you? We can meet here. 12:34 p.m., Thursday. Uraraka sat across from him in the booth as the people buzzed around the full cafe. Black gloves covered Uraraka's hands, yet left two of her fingers exposed. So what's your quirk? Uraraka asked, leaning forward eagerly. Something super complex. Nothing that's special. Izuku tapped his temple. I never forget anything I've lived through. Wow, that must be so useful. Uraraka exclaimed, never forgetting anything you need to do. And you can study so easily. Yeah, what about yours? Izuku asked, a little hesitant. He didn't want to force her to admit she was quirkless, but, oh, it's called zero gravity. Uraraka chirped brightly. Izuku blinked. Wait, what? She took her gloves off, grabbing the water bottle in front of her. Izuku watched, stunned, as a pink glow surrounded the bottle before it seemed to float in the air. Release. The water bottle dropped to the table. Cool, isn't it? Yeah, it is. She clearly had a touch-based quirk, completely different from Reset. Was he wrong? No, Uraraka definitely had Reset. Maybe she had two quirks. You either got one of your parents' quirks, a combination of the two, or something completely new. Some of the more unique quirk combinations could sometimes seem like two separate abilities, but they were just a single versatile ability. It was theoretically possible, though very rare, to be born with two. And if a quirk as insane as Reset existed, then Izuku couldn't disregard the fact. I think it'll be easier to show you. Izuku held out his hand. Through skin contact, I can show people my memories. Uraraka stared. And you're willing to show me them? Isn't that like letting me inside your mind? Well, yeah, that's what I said. Izuku said. Was he missing something? Uraraka took his hand after a moment's hesitation, and Izuku closed his eyes, searching for the right memory. Hello, what can I get you today? A bright voice said next to him. Izuku glanced up to see a brunette smiling at him, menu in hand. Why was someone his age working in a cafe? Coffee, photographic memory, and he still couldn't remember what else he was supposed to say. Figures. What size? The girl prompted kindly. Uraraka, her nameplate read. Medium, please. I'll be right back then. Uraraka walked away, and he checked his phone. Uraraka's eyes were wide. Wow, that was so weird. What? Everything was in so much detail. Like max resolution or something. Oh, that must be because of my perfect memory. Izuku mused. He hadn't realized that it could be disorienting. You don't have a headache or anything, do you? Nope, I'm good. But, Uraraka frowned. That memory, it's not what happened. You went, her voice dropped, imitating his. Can I have a coffee, medium? All smooth like. No, I can assure you that's what happened. The first time at least. Huh, Uraraka ... You have another quirk. Izuku said. You probably don't believe me, but I can prove it. What? But I already have zero gravity. Uraraka protested. I got its properties from both my dad and my mom. How can I have another quirk? Izuku shrugged. It's super rare, but not impossible to have two. Alright, what is it, then? Time reversal, Izuku stated. You can rewind time, including everything and everyone around you, back at least a day. Uraraka laughed. That's hilarious. Wait, you're serious? That's actually possible for a quirk. Izuku let out a sigh. Yep, time travel's insane, but well, he shrugged. You can negate gravity, and one of the top 10 heroes is a washing machine. I don't think anything's really impossible anymore. That's why you ordered differently in that memory, and how you stopped that guy so easily and came in right before he did. Uraraka realized. You're saying that I activated this quirk on you, somehow, and sent you back in time. Izuku blinked. He didn't expect her to catch on that quickly, not to mention go along with his crazy story. Kind of. But your second quirk isn't target-based. I've analyzed reset a bit already, that's what I named it, by the way. You can change it if you want. Uraraka sounded it out. Reset? Huh. That sounds cool. Instead of sending people back in time, it rewinds the entire world back to a specific point. Uraraka's eyes went wide. The whole world? Are you sure? Izuku nodded. Otherwise, the area around you wouldn't match up, time-wise, and it wouldn't make sense. Not to mention that Izuku wasn't anywhere near her the other times. But anyway, you rewinded me back a day, so I came into the cafe knowing exactly how to stop the villain. Uraraka held up her hands. Wait, go back. What happened the first time, then? It didn't end as well. Uraraka nodded. So something pretty bad must have happened, probably to me. Nothing else would have triggered this quirk that I've never even noticed before. Izuku barely hid his flinch. But then, why don't I remember it? Uraraka tapped a finger against her chin. If I activated the quirk, I should remember, right? Your quirk is a perfect reset, Izuku said. It rewinds everything back, including your memories. Then isn't it completely useless if I can't remember what I've erased? I'd use it, only to repeat the exact same mistakes over and over again. But then why do you remember? Uraraka trailed off. My quirk, Perfect Recall, protects my memories. Since I always have complete access to my past, I can remember what happened in an erased timeline. That's why I wanted to talk to you, both to tell you about your new quirk and ask for your help. My help? Uraraka tilted her head to the side. Sure, if it's possible. What? I haven't even said anything yet. You saved my life, Midoriya-kun. Of course, I'd hear you out. Well, alright then. Uraraka-san, are you aiming to become a hero? Yeah, I'll be taking the UA exams in 2 years. Why? Izuku let out a sigh of relief. That makes things easier. I'm going to be a hero too. Essentially, I want to make a deal. I'll help you study, train, and figure out your new quirk, reset, and analyze zero gravity as well. I'm pretty good at quirk analysis. In return, I want to use your quirk to save lives, and stop or even prevent villain attacks altogether with the advantage for knowledge gives me. Uraraka didn't say anything for a minute, deep in thought. Izuku waited patiently, watching the girl in front of him mull it over. My parents own a construction company. Uraraka started. So I know a few things about business deals and contracts. I can tell you're brilliant, Midoriya-kun. And if I really do have this second quirk, so I'll gladly agree to help you to use it for our future hero work. Izuku opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Uraraka raised 2 fingers. Her eyes narrowed. But all of that, it's entirely in your favor. I don't remember when I reset. You would be the only one able to make any decisions. And handing over that much power to someone I've known for a day is a lot. So I have 2 conditions. 1, show me your memories of what I've erased. You don't have to show me every single thing that happened in your life, just the important events and stuff that made you want to reset. I also want to see things that deal with me. Uraraka paused. This is still so much power to give someone, but I think I'll trust you. 2, show me everything that happened the first time I reset, with pink jacket. I can tell it's not something you want to see again, but Izuku let out a hollow laugh. Uraraka, I've used my quirk to remember that fight many, many times. I just didn't want you to see it. He looked down at their still linked hands. But you're right, that's only fair. I agree, I'll show you what you forget from now on, and what you've already forgotten. Uraraka's lips suddenly quirked up, breaking the serious air. What? Izuku asked. You dropped the honorific. I wasn't expecting that. Oh, I didn't even notice. Uraraka smiled. Don't worry about it. If you're right about this quirk thing, then we'll be working together a lot in the future. Just call me Achako. There's no way I could call you that, Izuku exclaimed, cheeks burning. Uraraka giggled. Why not? Within moments, Izuku realized she'd changed the mood around them. I think I'll just stick to Uraraka for now. Izuku smiled back. This memory is going to be a little long, and not nearly as fun, so try to brace yourself. He activated his quirk, and the cafe shop around them shifted. Uraraka gripped his hand like a lifeline, so tight that Izuku winced. Her face was pale. So that's how you knew to bring your gloves, Uraraka stated, her voice rough. Oh, the only other person Izuku had brought into his memories was his mom. He didn't realize Uraraka would experience everything the memory had to offer, including that very painful shock. Damn it, I should have warned you. No, I knew what I was getting into. Uraraka hesitated. That white light at the end, that's the reset thing you mean, right? Izuku nodded. And then I opened my eyes. And it's 7:58 a.m. again. All right. Uraraka stood up, letting go of his hand. Her own was shaking, the slightest bit. Thanks for sharing all that with me, Midoriya-kun. I think I need some time to process, though. Can we meet here again, on Saturday? Sure, but for what? A hint of Uraraka's usual smile returned. Well, you wanted to analyze reset, didn't you? 10:22 a.m. Saturday. Emitter quirk, reset. User Uraraka Achako. Ability, reverses everything back to a certain point. Observed use, activates automatically on the user's death, but after seeing her other quirk it's possible that it could be activated otherwise. A reset floods everything in white light, appearing to deconstruct the world around the user. In my experience, the reset took me back to 7:58 a.m. from 7:50 p.m. Is that its maximum duration? Possible applications. If we both agree to reset, then we've gifted ourselves with hours and hours of accurate foresight. That'd be invaluable to hero work. Drawbacks. Uraraka's quirk reverses her own memories as well. But if a reset causes any symptoms of quirk overuse, those negative effects would be instantly reversed as well. Uraraka skimmed through the page, curious. You've got a lot of cool theories here, Midoriya-kun. What's the blank page here for, though? Oh, that's usually where I sketch the quirk's user. Izuku scratched the back of his head. People don't usually see these notebooks. I mean, if you don't want me to draw you, Uraraka. No, I think it'd be neat. That's good, then. By the way, has anything felt different since your quirk awakened? Uraraka nodded. Yeah, I didn't notice it last time we met. But there's like this tingling feeling. She poked her stomach. Here, it's not the same as zero gravity, but I can tell there's something new now. It's hard to explain. Have you tried using reset since Thursday? Izuku asked. Nope, I didn't want to forget all of this, and you might have to stop that guy again. I wonder how'd you even convince me a second time. Honestly, Izuku wouldn't mind beating Pink Jacket up again. But he was still happy about the way things went. Then, why not try it now? Izuku suggested. I don't think your quirk can rewind super far. And it's already been about 3 days since the robbery. I doubt you'll go past Thursday. Uraraka closed her eyes, focusing. I'm trying to use it, but nothing's happening, she said after a minute. I can tell I have the quirk now ... but how do I use it? Izuku tilted his head, considering. Well, how do you use zero gravity? Uraraka blinked, surprised at the question. I just touch something with all 5 fingers, and the quirk reacts. Honestly, it's more of an effort to not float stuff. And then when I want to release, I put my hands together and energy pauses, basically. And then everything falls down. Izuku hummed. So maybe reset only works if your hands are together. Uraraka took off her gloves, placing them on the table before lining up her fingertips. A bright light shone between her hands, a mix of blue and pink. Whoa, zero gravity's pink, so that blue must be it. Holding my hands together feels weird, like I'm constantly using up power. Wait, I remember now. Remember what? You said I brought you back at 7:58 a.m., right? That's around when I wake up. On Wednesday. I dropped my phone and just barely caught it before it slammed into the floor. My hands were together, just like this, and I yelled save. Uraraka's hands glowed blue, though I ignored the feeling at the time. That must have been what set the checkpoint. Reset's just like a video game. Izuku realized. You say save to set it up, and then when you say reset, time is reversed back to the first activation. Uraraka blinked, her hands still pressed together. So like, if I say reset, 10:25 a.m., sorry. Though I ignored the feeling at the time. That must have been what set the checkpoint. Izuku stared at her. Huh, what? They needed to be careful with that. He placed a hand on her arm, showing her what happened seconds ago. Reset's just like a video game. Izuku realized. You say save to set it up, and then when you say reset, time is reversed back to the first activation. Uraraka blinked, her hands still pressed together. So like, if I say reset. Uraraka gasped. It works with just a word. That's so cool. All I need to say is reset. 10:25 a.m., sorry. Though I ignored the feeling at the time. That must have been what set the checkpoint. Wait, what are you doing? Izuku grabbed her hands as soon as his consciousness returned, pulling them apart. Your quirk sets a save just like that. And if you say reset with your hands together ... it activates. Izuku sighed. Uraraka looked down, sheepish. I can see what must have happened. Sorry about that. It's fine. We figured out how reset works now. Can you set another save, now that you know? Izuku let go, and she very carefully joined her fingertips. Uraraka tapped her phone. All right, save. 10:25 am. Her hands glowed blue again. Logging the time is a nice touch, Izuku commented. Some of us aren't lucky enough to have a photographic memory like you do, so it's nice to keep track of it. Though I feel really tired now, for some reason. Saves must really tire you out, Izuku noted. So that's what the main drawback of reset was, sapping her stamina whenever she set a save. You should limit checkpoints to once a day. I don't want to push a powerful quirk and potentially hurt you. A snore cut him off. Izuku glanced over to see Uraraka's head down on the table, fast asleep as her brown hair covered her face. He reached out a hand to wake her, then paused. There were dark circles under her eyes. She'd gone through a robbery and unlocked a new quirk. Before she could process it, Izuku showed her how the villain attack could have gone worse in maximum detail. How did it feel to hear your own death? Izuku winced, his hand dropping to the table. He'd really sprung so many things on Uraraka within days. The least he could do was let Uraraka rest a little. 7:43 p.m., Tuesday. Mom, this is my friend. Izuku gestured at the girl behind him. Uraraka Ochako. Uraraka, this is my mother, Midoriya Izuku. Inko stared at them for a moment, unmoving. Then she burst into a waterfall of tears. My baby's finally brought home a friend. Izuku blinked, taken aback. The last time he'd brought anyone home was when he was still friends with Katsuki ... over 6 years ago. Though, no wonder his mother was surprised. Hello, Midoriya-san. I've heard a lot about you from your son. Uraraka chirped. It's great to finally meet you. No, the pleasure's all mine. You can call me Inko. Sure, Inko-san. Being around cheerful people was weird. Izuku decided. Mom, we're going to go study in my room, if that's all right. I'll have dinner ready in a bit. Uraraka snickered as he closed the door behind them. What? Izuku asked, already suspicious. Izuku, you're the biggest hero nerd I've ever seen. Izuku abruptly realized that all of his walls were covered in hero posters. Merch and figurines were everywhere, mostly All Might themed with several other heroes strewn about like a miniature fan convention. Actually, on second thought, let's go back downstairs. This is almost like a museum. Uraraka exclaimed. Can I touch any of this? No. Uraraka was already poking at his different figurines, excited. Izuku sighed. You even have 13. Uraraka whispered. Are you a 13 fan? Izuku asked. She's pretty cool. Uraraka nodded, vigorously. Yeah, she's super amazing. My dream is to be a rescue hero, just like her. You both have space-themed quirks, too, Izuku noted. Though I think you wouldn't want to be solely rescue-focused. 13 almost only acts in rescue situations, saving people from natural disasters and similar events. Probably because of how dangerous her quirk is. I don't think I'd be able to fight hand-to-hand well in a bulky spacesuit, either. Your zero gravity, on the other hand, would be pretty great in combat and much more controlled. Really? Uraraka tilted her head. I always thought the main thing I would use it for would be lifting like rubble and stuff. I guess I can float someone up high, then drop them. Most villains can't do anything when they're stuck in the air, so you could capture people easily like that. Or just negate the gravity on something heavy, chuck it at them, and release. I kinda see your point. I also want to learn to fight as you did in the cafe. That was so cool. Where'd you learn to do that, anyway? I knew I needed martial arts to fight as a hero since my quirk isn't very strong. So I pressured Mom to put me into a dojo and started training early. Izuku shrugged. Perfect recall lets me learn things a lot quicker. Speaking of which, didn't you come here to tutor you in math? Uraraka scratched her cheek. That. Honestly, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't remember. Izuku stared at her. Uraraka, I physically can't forget anything. Uraraka pouted. I wish I had perfect recall. School would be so easy. You have two incredibly powerful quirks, the first literally allowing you to rewind time and the second one actually overwrites a fundamental force. But Midoriya-kun, you can memorize study guides. Anyone can do that. 6:23 am, Thursday. You're like a demon, Midoriya-kun. Uraraka panted, barely keeping up next to him. We've been running for so long. Izuku glanced over at the struggling brunette. Sweat covered her face as she sent a death glare at him, her shorter strides pounding against the sidewalk. What? It's only been half an hour. Exactly. You said we were doing some light training. Uraraka stated. Yeah, this Uraraka huffed. Is a bit more than that. Who even runs miles this early in the morning? You made me get up at 6, Midoriya-kun. This is basically torture, I'm telling you. Izuku glanced at her. You know, we can stop if you want. I never said I was going to quit. Uraraka cut in, fierce. I can handle this. All right, then. Onward. That was horrible. I wish I could go back in time and tell my past self never to agree to this. The brunette grumbled as she gripped her knees, gasping for air 30 minutes later. Yet despite her words, Izuku noted, Uraraka hadn't complained once the entire rest of the run. Izuku laughed. I might be able to, actually. Does your Tuesday save still work, Uraraka? Uraraka placed her hands together, concentrating. No, I don't have any checkpoints, so the save lasts a whole 3 days. Then, Izuku mused. That's useful. Is that why you told me not to set any checkpoints on Tuesday? Yeah, I didn't know any other way to test the limits of save besides trial and error. So should we set a checkpoint every 3 days, then, to make the most of it? Uraraka asked. Izuku shook his head. Daily ones are better. We can still use it if we need to, but a whole 3 days is a lot to erase. Right, you'll have to relive all of that time, Uraraka said. What was doing that like, last week, going through the same day? I didn't really do much that day besides try to figure out the reset. Katsuki flashed in his mind. How long could he avoid the blonde? Stop that conversation from happening again. Though, there was one irritating conversation that I got to dodge with the foresight. Thanks for that. For what? Uraraka raised an eyebrow. Discovering my quirk through a super traumatic experience. Yes, she smiled. You're welcome, Midoriya-kun. I'm happy I did, too. Izuku drifted through his classes as he always did, half zoned out. The teacher asked him more questions than the rest of the class, as usual, as he leaned back in his seat. He was known as the top student at Aldera Junior High, and for this, he was respected by students and teachers. Yet those same students felt that his quirk was the only reason behind his success, and laughed at his dream of being a hero. 13-year-olds didn't care about Night Eye or Eraserhead, the heroes Izuku looked up to. They, along with almost everybody in quirk society, only thought of the flashy heroes and their overpowered quirks. When compared to Endeavor's burning flames and Maruko's kicks, a kid with enhanced memory striving to become a hero seemed ridiculous. And that reminded him of the burning gaze drilling into him from behind. Katsuki didn't believe Izuku could be a hero. The very idea that he was attempting to do so was seen as a personal attack, so his goal was essentially to convince Izuku he was weak, hence calling him useless, even after so many years and still surpassing his test scores. Yet to the blonde's daily rage, Izuku wouldn't give up. He knew the potential of perfect recall and would try his best to save all the people he could, like All Might, even if he would never be able to fight like the symbol of peace did. Izuku wasn't safe anywhere near school. Though attacking someone with a quirk was a high offense, the school would wave it off for their explosive hero hopeful. Izuku had been dodging Katsuki since that Wednesday. Finding Uraraka had given him more determination to be a hero than ever before, and he'd been avoiding the blonde's yells and confrontations with more haste than before. The bell rang, and Izuku sprinted out of the classroom. Surprisingly, there was no shout for Deku, or any angry blondes chasing after him. His bully was taking a day off, for some reason. Not that he was complaining. The teachers and other students didn't bat an eye anymore when Izuku ran through the hallways. It would be funny if their uselessness wasn't so irritating. He broke through the doors, approaching gate within minutes. Katsuki leaned against the side of the gate, a smirk across his lips. It was the only exit, a wide school gate facing the center of Aldera Junior High. Where do you think you're going, Deku? Izuku stared at him, eyes wide. How did you? Katsuki barked out a laugh. I can fly, dumbass. Izuku was so stupid. Why would Katsuki suddenly give him a break? You're effing annoying to catch now. Dashing out as soon as you can, like an annoying bug. But then I realized, why even bother chasing you? I can blast off the roof and get here long before your useless ass. So now, Deku Katsuki's grin grew wider. We can finally talk. Izuku forced himself to meet those red eyes. I'm not going to stop being a hero, Katsuki. Nothing you say can change that. What the hell could someone like you do as a hero? Katsuki mocked. Plenty of heroes have non-combative quirks, like All Might's sidekick, and I can analyze. Against anyone strong, like me, you don't stand a chance. You're weak, useless. Are you going to run away from all the villains, Deku? Izuku felt something inside of him finally snap. So you finally admit you're the villain here, Katsuki? The smile fell off Katsuki's face. What did you effing say? Attacking civilians with your quirk, willing to cause harm. Isn't that exactly what a villain does? The sharp words tumbled out of Izuku's mouth, and Katsuki's eyes flashed. It was only years of martial arts that saved Izuku from that first right hook as he ducked, eyes wide. He deflected a kick and leaped back, frantically dodging punches. Katsuki was relentless, angrier than Izuku had ever seen him. Izuku couldn't fight Katsuki, meaning he had to escape. A desperate plan formed. Izuku bent low and twisted under the next explosive palm. It grazed his shoulder as he unslung his backpack and swung with all of his might. Katsuki blew up Izuku's bag in a burst of power on reflex, and the whirlwind of papers blinded him enough for Izuku to sprint past him. Something tore into his leg as he ran, like several sharp stabs, but Izuku didn't let himself stop running as adrenaline flooded his veins. He heard Katsuki scoff behind him as he sprinted out of sight. See what I mean? All you can do is effing run. 6:30 a.m., Friday. He was used to hiding his burns from his mother, treating them himself out of sight. His mother was old friends with the Bakugas, and Izuku didn't think she even realized how bad his relationship with Katsuki was now. Izuku forced a smile on his face as he jogged next to Uraraka, his bad leg screaming at every step. He'd treated it as soon as he got home, and while losing another backpack sucked, Katsuki's parting shot hadn't done as much damage as he'd expected. It would still hurt like hell for a while, though. Good thing Izuku had a ridiculous pain tolerance. You're already getting better at pacing, Uraraka, Izuku praised. At this rate, you'll be as fast as me in weeks. Uraraka simply stared back at him. Midoriya-kun, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You're a really good liar, but your smile is still super fake. Uraraka frowned. Just like that time, the detective talked to us. And you're limping, right now, too. Are you hurt? Clearly, Uraraka Achako was far more observant than he gave her credit for. Izuku shrugged. I got in a fight, and kinda hurt my leg. Uraraka grabbed his arm, forcing both of them to a stop. What? And you just ignored that and went running? Yeah. What happened? Izuku rolled up his pant leg in response, and his friend hissed at the bandages wrapped around his knee. My long time bully has an explosion quirk. He cornered me after school yesterday. You can probably tell what happened. Uraraka's eyes widened. He attacked you with a quirk like that. But that's illegal. Was he arrested? Izuku shook his head with a sigh. He's intelligent, driven to become a hero, and has an incredibly powerful quirk. Nothing's ever going to go on his record as long as he's careful. I always run away, but sometimes I don't get away in time. That's horrible, Midoriya-kun, Uraraka murmured. Now you know why I'm so good at running. Izuku joked, but Uraraka didn't respond, deep in thought. A long moment passed as Izuku stood there, watching the now silent girl. Her dark brown eyes were fixed on the ground. As her fingers pressed together subconsciously, a habit from her quirks, he was tempted to poke her cheeks, just to see if that ever-present blush would change. Maybe they were just pink spots. Do you want me to go back? Uraraka finally asked. Did he? He could definitely figure out a way to get past Katsuki if he could redo yesterday. But, no, it's not worth it. This was something small. Deku getting caught by Katsuki yet again. He didn't want to solve all of his problems with a reset. All he needed to do was be faster next time. Uraraka bit her lip but didn't argue. You mentioned that you always ran away. Have you ever fought him? Of course not, Izuku answered instantly. A river of memories poked at his mind. All the times he'd defended another kid from Katsuki. All the times they'd argued about heroes. All the times he'd run away from the blonde. It's Katsuki. I've known him for 10 years. He never loses. He's way too strong and has a ridiculously powerful quirk. I'm too weak. Wrong. Uraraka crossed her arms over her chest, firm. You're super strong, Midoriya-kun, Uraraka declared. Izuku blinked. I am. You saved me a week ago. You don't seem to think it was anything special, but to me, that was so cool. You jumped in to save me, and fought the villain fearlessly, like Pow Pow. Uraraka's arms gestured wide, and Izuku couldn't help but smile at her antics. Uraraka, that was nothing. With the reset, I knew exactly what I was getting into. The fact that you'd already lost to that villain, painfully, just makes it even more impressive. You still took that armed villain down like it was nothing. I've never met this Katsuki guy, but you know, you're Midoriya-kun. She said his name like it was an argument all on its own. So why can't you fight him? Izuku opened his mouth to protest only to close it as his excuses turned to ash. She was right, he realized. A full decade spent running away from Katsuki. And despite all of Izuku's resolve to become a hero, not once had he considered fighting back against the blonde. Why couldn't he? 3:40 p.m., Monday. Equal parts anxiety and confidence. Izuku strolled up to the gate to face his enemy. He got some worried glances from the students he passed in the hallway, yet his mood didn't falter. He knew his chances of beating Katsuki weren't very high. But the very fact that he was trying now, that he was actively planning a way to take down the blonde after a lifetime of hiding in fear, was exhilarating. Maybe that made Izuku a little crazy. Oh well, there was a crowd forming to watch the fight, far back to avoid the coming explosions. A bunch of details ran through Izuku's mind: the cooler weather, the slight breeze pushing against the trees on either side of the gates, the empty road behind the school, and the disappointing lack of teachers. Then he pushed all of that excess information out, focusing on the familiar blonde leaning against the brick walls of the gate. Katsuki glared. You sure took your time, shitty Deku. I didn't ask you to wait for me, you know. Whatever, Katsuki's hands crackled with sparks. This time I'm going to show you your effing place. Izuku willed his trembling hands into fists, spreading his feet apart as he lowered into a stance. A shaky but real smile fell on his face. Katsuki smirked. You're not running away this time, eh? The sweet smell of nitroglycerin floated through the air. Nope, Izuku stated. I'm done putting up with your bullshit, Katsuki. The angry blonde lunged. What did you just effing say? Thousands of memories flashed into his mind. Of all the battles and beatdowns he'd seen Katsuki start, Izuku sidestepped the punch, grabbing Katsuki's arm and twisting with the momentum, throwing the boy over his shoulder. Katsuki always started with a right hook. The blonde slammed into the ground, stunned for barely a moment before he was up swinging. Izuku leaned back from an uppercut that grazed his nose, ducking under another punch. Stay still and die, Katsuki demanded, his attacks getting faster and faster. No thanks, Izuku shot back. Izuku slapped a fist down with his palm, snapping upward in the same motion to uppercut Katsuki's jaw. He followed it up with a roundhouse kick, only to have his red sneaker burned away by an explosion. Damn, he loved these shoes. Off balance, Izuku barely hopped out of the way of a blast that carved into the ground. Katsuki swung forward in another right hook as Izuku raised his arms to block, only to fall for a feint, a fiery punch slamming into his chest with a sharp sting. He hit the concrete and rolled to his feet, another hook already sailing for his face. Izuku stepped out of the devastating arc, but an explosion propelled Katsuki's elbow back towards him like a spring to strike his head. The blow was a painful jolt that made him see stars, almost knocking him out, but Izuku gritted his teeth and refused to fall. Katsuki grinned, full of malice. You're still standing? Huh, then I guess I need more effing firepower. The more he fought, the more Katsuki sweated and therefore the stronger his quirk got. After a few minutes, his explosions were powerful threats that Izuku couldn't afford to take head-on. The blonde cupped his hand now, filling it with bright light. Izuku's eyes went wide, knowing what was coming next. He'd have to time this perfectly. Die, Katsuki yelled, throwing his largest explosion yet. In a single motion, Izuku dove to the side and shrugged off his school uniform, barely escaping the blast radius as the explosion smashed through his shirt. Smoke filled the air. Gotcha, effing Deku. Shreds of black fluttered down, revealing no green-haired boy. Izuku had watched thousands and thousands of videos of his favorite hero and his devastating punches. That's how he knew that, contrary to popular belief, every one of All Might's punches was completely controlled, showing off a powerful, honed boxing technique. Izuku focused on that now, a punch born from decades of heroism, overlapping an image of himself with All Might as he worked to keep track of every single muscle despite their difference in size. Where did the attack start? Where did his arm need to twist forward? Perfect recall made learning martial arts far easier. Yet what people didn't realize was that Izuku could copy any move he'd seen before, as long as his body could physically perform it. Izuku clenched his right fist to his side as the air cleared, flowing his entire body into a single blow just like he'd seen his idol do millions of times before. And Katsuki's eyes went wide, seeing the slightly burned Izuku right in front of him far too late. Smash! Izuku yelled. His punch slammed into Katsuki's gut with a crack, bending the boy over from the force. Katsuki coughed for breath, completely winded. Then the blonde's head snapped up, burning eyes meeting green, angrier than Izuku had ever seen him. Katsuki's eyes burned, angrier than Izuku had ever seen him. Sweat dripped down his forehead as his face set into a scowl, a picture of rage that was immortalized in Izuku's perfect memory. Effing Deku. The name was said with such hate that it prickled Izuku's skin. Izuku's bare arms tanked the powerful explosion, almost going numb. Katsuki's next kick grazed his face, and Izuku threw a jab in the opening at his stomach before ducking under a blast that scorched his hair. They were both starting to tire, yet neither slowed down, throwing attack after attack. The smash had been his trump card. Punching like All Might was effective but quite straining on his arms. But Katsuki had shrugged it off and kept going. He really was incredible, Izuku noted as the blonde deflected another kick instantly. The blonde fought wild, nearly unpredictable, and his reflexes were insane. There was a reason he never lost. Katsuki blasted over Izuku's sweep, landing behind him and nearly blowing a hole into his back. Izuku hissed in pain, the t-shirt doing nothing to stop the blast. From an outside perspective, Katsuki's quirk would only get stronger as the fight drew on, putting Izuku at a clear disadvantage as the fight drew on. Explosive palms, thrown elbows, ranged blasts, aerial acrobatics, kicks. It fell into a pattern that Izuku's mind tossed and turned over, analyzing. Then it finally clicked, and Izuku smiled. Izuku saw the next punch coming, batting it away. He sidestepped a large blast, wincing at the heat as he rolled under another kick. Next, Izuku kicked Katsuki's palm up, completely diverting the next explosion. How another fist only grazed Izuku's cheek as he dodged. Are you doing that? And why the F are you grinning like that? Katsuki yelled, frustrated. This was the first time Katsuki had truly fought Izuku. Izuku, however, had been attacked by the blonde many times before. And with the new application of experience, the wild, nearly unpredictable enemy was now predictable. After fighting this long, he'd finally gotten a decent analysis of Katsuki's fighting style. And now he just needed to counter it. A right hook too wide and Izuku stepped in, landing a fierce uppercut. A replica of Eraserhead's kick struck Katsuki's side. And while he reeled from the strike, Izuku swept out his legs from under him. With both palms now aimed down, Katsuki fired off a massive explosion into the concrete which Izuku had already leaped straight up to dodge. Checkmate. Izuku rose above his enemy, raising his leg high for Maruko's iconic move before swinging down. The powerful axe kick crashed into the back of Katsuki's head like a meteor falling to earth, slamming his face into the concrete. Luna fall. Izuku landed on unsteady legs, surprised when his opponent didn't get up. The world flooded back to him, the wind he hadn't even noticed. The ache in his entire body. The crowd that was so silent all Izuku could hear was his own panting breaths. He looked closer, making out the rise and fall of Katsuki's back. He really was unconscious. Izuku blinked, incredulous, glancing up at the stunned students around him. That really happened. He just fought Bakugo Katsuki. In 4:21 p.m. Saturday. Midoriya-kun. Yeah. Why are we in a junkyard? That was a pretty accurate term, Izuku thought. Mountains and mountains of trash surrounded them. There was everything from thrown-away plastic cans and other small items to large appliances, like the ruined fridges strewn about. Izuku could even make out a rusted car, somewhere near the middle of the mess. Izuku held his arms out wide. Welcome to Dagaba Beach, a beautiful tourist spot. Uraraka pinched her nose. Oh my god, the smell. Beloved by the community for decades, until they started using it as a junkyard. Now it's just sad. Oh, well, why are we here? Well, it's simple, Izuku said cheerfully. We're going to clean it. Huh, but how? Look at all of that trash, Midoriya-kun. Are we going to do all of it ourselves? Yep, Uraraka stared at him. But why? We'd get plenty of strength training, carrying all of this stuff out. And the super heavy stuff, Izuku pointed at the broken car. We can use to train your zero gravity. No one's going to complain about our quirk use here. Can't we just go to a gym or something, though? Uraraka asked. We could. Izuku looked out at the ocean, barely visible through the heaps and heaps of garbage piled up. But I mean, don't you want to see what the beach will look like once it's clean? I bet it's beautiful. A resigned sigh. It probably will be. But you do realize this is going to take ages, right? Izuku only smiled in response, handing her a pair of work gloves. 6:32 a.m., Thursday. 3 months passed in a simple routine. Time passage was always a weird thing for Izuku, especially with his quirk. It was nice to keep his day orderly, neat, so he could flip through it later like a book and sort it with the rest of his growing library. He could take a day off the shelf and hold it next to the week before, seeing all the little interesting differences between their pages. Izuku compared the view of the beach at the end of each day with the day before as they chipped away at the endless pile of trash, and he could feel the slow, steady progress like a changing picture. Hey, Midoriya-kun. Uraraka brought him out of his thoughts. Izuku glanced at his jogging partner as she easily kept pace next to him on the early morning street, most of Musutafu still asleep in the growing light. Yeah, why do you write in your notebooks? Uraraka asked. Izuku blinked, surprised, and she hurriedly continued. I get the analysis part, you're super good at that, but you can remember every single thought you've had. Couldn't you easily just keep them in your head, or something? Well, yeah. But it kinda helps the thoughts and ideas flow when I put them down on paper. I make sure to encode them all later, though. It'd be pretty bad if a villain read through some of my notes on heroes. Uraraka winced at the thought. Yeah, you've thought of ways to beat practically anyone. It's both amazing and vaguely terrifying. Izuku laughed. Thanks. I don't think anyone could beat All Might, though, even with some extra research. True. I mean, his punches literally changed the weather. I know, right. And he's so fast, too. They stopped at the intersection, catching some breath as the cars rushed by in front of them. Talking while running was tiring. What's his quirk called, anyway? Uraraka asked curiously. I've never heard his name before, which is weird, because he's like the most famous man in Japan. Izuku shrugged. No one knows. Some kind of enhancement, obviously, but there's never been one so ridiculously strong before. There's muscular, but that guy's transformation quirk has a visible effect. Who? This powerful villain who rampaged a few years ago. He could create and build his muscles, getting strong and stronger until he was this giant, powerful force. It took this combined team of heroes, some top 10, to take him down. That sounds terrifying. Yeah, unlike muscle augmentation. All Might's quirk doesn't have any visible effect or condition, it's just pure power. Maybe he keeps it a secret because its drawback is something easy to exploit. I could see that being a thing. That much power might be tiring to use, or something. Uraraka mused as the traffic light finally blinked, letting them cross the street. They slowly built up speed again, pushing off the curb together. Lots of villains try to kill him daily. It'd be terrible if they knew something like that. It's been years since a villain was strong enough to really fight All Might, though. Yet you wouldn't hear Toxic Chainsaw's name mentioned outside of hero forums. Izuku wondered how many dangerous villains faded into the background so easily. But Uraraka stopped in her tracks, causing Izuku to stop as well. He followed her eyes down to see a girl curled onto the sidewalk. They'd nearly tripped over her. Long blue hair fell down either side of her face, and she seemed comfortable despite the hard concrete. An orange tabby cat laid on her shoulder, eyeing them suspiciously. She was wearing the same black uniform he was, looking only a little younger than him and Uraraka. Izuku worried she was hurt, or something, to be passed out on the side of the road, but then he realized she was just asleep. Hello. Uraraka bent down and lightly poked the sleeping girl's shoulder. When she didn't even stir, Uraraka pushed harder. She was a heavy sleeper, so Uraraka had to shove her more and more until she was shaking the unconscious girl like a doll. Izuku held back a wince. This probably looked like assault. Finally, her eyes blinked open. She stared at them curiously, gray eyes and blank face showing absolutely no emotion as she sat up with a yawn, her cat stepping off her. It was strange, to say the least, almost like she was a cat herself. "Do you two need something?" she asked. No. Uraraka held up her hands almost guiltily. "We were just wondering why you were asleep here. We almost ran into you." The girl blinked. "I was taking a nap." "On the sidewalk?" Izuku asked. "Why not just sleep at home? Too far away." "Okay. You should be more careful, though, when you nap," Uraraka said. "Don't worry." The girl patted the cat next to her, and the tabby leaned into her palm. Her lips curled up the slightest bit. "I have Star here to protect me." That had to be one of the weirdest conversations he'd been in. He was almost glad when she wandered away, her cat clinging to her shoulder almost protectively. Izuku wondered if Star had a quirk. Intelligence quirks were growing more common in animals, along with less calm. Uraraka poked his arm. "You're muttering again." He could never seem to break the habit. "Sorry, I don't mind. It's always about something interesting." "Not sure you want all your thoughts broadcasted, though?" "Yeah, it'd be a huge weakness in a fight. How about this, Midoriya-kun? I'll poke you whenever you start muttering. That way, you'll always know." Izuku sighed. "That sounds like an excuse to poke me, but sure." Her smile gave him shivers. Uraraka saved after their jog, as usual, and he headed off to Aldera. School was very different, ever since he fought Katsuki. He got strange looks from other students, a mixture of awe and fear, sometimes even from the teachers. But no one bothered him anymore. Katsuki hadn't said a single word to him, turning into a silent presence that reminded Izuku of a dormant volcano. It was nice and peaceful overall, leaving Izuku to his thoughts and memories and half-hearted classwork. He drifted out of the school gates minutes after the bell, not having to run from anyone anymore. Izuku and Uraraka shuffled into their training on the beach, collecting and lifting trash and metal as the hours passed. Her weight limit had increased a little again, and she grinned when he told her. He invited her to eat dinner, and she agreed with an exhausted hum as they stumbled home, limbs filled with a satisfying ache. Uraraka was a common sight at the Midoriya household now, so Inko barely batted an eye when she ushered them inside. Uraraka started a riveting discussion on matcha, of all things, and how it was the best food ever. His mother's cooking was amazing, as always, and afterwards she went up to sleep as he and Uraraka plopped down on the couch to watch TV, full in content. Izuku smiled as he mentally added the book to his shelf, date labeled in neat, green script. Another great day. And then the news started playing, and Izuku's heart dropped to his stomach. Muscular breaks out of prison. 39 dead. The villain burst out of prison just earlier, a brief mistake by the guards quickly proving fatal. Muscular escaped easily with the use of his overwhelming strength and a few powerful leaps before ravaging the streets of Musutafu. Uraraka stiffened next to him. Several heroes attempted to capture the villain so far, leading to severe injuries among heroes like Kamui Woods and the deaths of the W Water Hose duo. The news anchor audibly stuttered, but Izuku couldn't blame her. The bits of news footage were pretty horrifying. Muscular's eye was covered in blood, a maniac grin on the hulking monster's face as he attacked heroes and civilians alike. Izuku really hoped no children had seen this live. Endeavor arrived on the scene, finally pushing him back, but the villain got away. Izuku tuned the rest of the broadcast out, his thoughts a mess. What were the chances? It was almost like they'd summoned a demon, mentioning him earlier. The attack happened while they were eating dinner. What would have happened if they'd spent just a little longer at the beach? Or if he let Uraraka walk home? He shivered at the thought. But wait. Izuku whirled around, grabbing onto Uraraka's arms and meeting her wide eyes. She was still frozen, almost in shock. He couldn't tell which of them was trembling. "Uraraka, can you reset?" Izuku urged. "Back to that save this morning. I can fix this." He knew the exact time Muscular arrived, when he crashed into the formerly peaceful street like an angry meat. Exactly when he needed to get there. None of those people would die if I stop him. No. Izuku stared at her. What? No, Uraraka said again, her voice firmer. You're going to rush right in there, right? Then what? You won't stand a chance against muscular. None of those heroes did. I can't just do nothing. You'll die, and then you'll just rewind it, and I can try again, Izuku said, a little too sharp. It doesn't matter. The second he said it, he wished he could take it back. Uraraka's face crumpled, but her hands clenched tighter around his. Just because it's reset, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. You, of all people, should know that, Uraraka said quietly. Izuku flinched. And you didn't even know who I was. Neither of them said anything for a minute, holding on to each other as the voices from the television filled the now silent room. You know, it's amazing that your first instinct is to rush in there, Uraraka said. You didn't even falter, though, seeing that. Me, I just panicked and almost did something dumb, Izuku said. That's exactly it, though. You see that terrifying villain, and still move to help before you think about it. Meanwhile, I kinda just froze in place. Izuku tilted his head. So, together ... we almost acted like a hero should. Uraraka hummed. Yeah, now that you've calmed. Izuku coughed. We've calmed down. Think of a better plan than that, Izuku. Izuku raised his hand to his cheek and thought, not even noticing that he was still holding her hand. She didn't move her hand from his face though, as seconds came and went, his mind turning and turning. Izuku finally grinned. I think I got it. Uraraka, do you remember that detective we met? Reset. 6:48 a.m. Thursday. 6:48 a.m. Thursday. The echo of Uraraka's voice reached his ears as his consciousness snapped back to his body. Uraraka looked up from her hands, eyes widening when they caught his face. Whoa, you seem pretty different from 2 seconds ago. Izuku let out a genuine laugh at that, despite the resolve weighing down his chest. Yeah, we've reset, Uraraka. He held out a hand and she took it curiously and showed her the news broadcast. It was probably worse with Izuku's quirk bringing back every little detail of Muscular's attack. But he didn't skip a thing, including that moment afterward. It wouldn't be fair otherwise. For some reason, Uraraka's cheeks reddened near the end of the memory. Was she embarrassed? Wow, that was a lot of different emotions. Uraraka blinked. I think that plan will work. You do realize we could get in a lot of trouble for it though, right? Izuku shrugged. He couldn't care less. He retraced his school day every step. Every word written through a driving sense of impatience. Aldera already felt like a waste of time, but going through the same lessons twice made him want to jump out the window. He met up with Uraraka afterward. They skipped the beach, heading straight for Izuku's house and up to his room. Inko looked surprised to see them this early, taking in their expressions yet not asking a thing. And Izuku opened up his computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. 5:29 p.m. Thursday. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi, sometimes known as True Man, was completely exhausted. His colleagues were capable, but it had been a hectic week full of small crimes. They were almost swamped with cases, mostly in response to some stupid social media post that went viral. Naomasa inhaled his third cup of coffee, glaring at the mountain of paperwork on his desk, hoping it'd vanish. It didn't. Was this what Eraserhead felt like? All the time. This was terrible. He should be nicer to that man next time he sees him. Officer Sansa sighed from the other desk, desperately writing as fast as he could. This is my least favorite part of the job. Paperwork is important and necessary to police work and the resolution of cases, Naomasa felt the need to point out. But some weeks, yeah, at least these are all simple incidents, though. Nothing big has happened in a while. A voice resounded from the intercom, putting the entire precinct on alert. It clearly wasn't any known personnel hack. Hello, can you all hear me? Every person in the room turned to the cat officer. Sansa cursed. I just had to say it. Huh. I'll take that as a yes, then. The voice said dryly. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s, but Naomasa had been around long enough to recognize a voice changer. Naomasa flicked a glance at Sansa, silently telling him to track the signal, and he nodded back. Who are you? Naomasa's pen tapped a steady rhythm against his forgotten paperwork. My name is Prophet, a code name, a vigilante. I'm here to deliver a tip. Why not go through the proper channels? Naomasa asked. This issue is ... time sensitive. Plus, I needed to inform you, specifically. Without your quirk, Tsukachi-san, my message would be dismissed. Truth, his quirk wasn't top secret. He had to go through a lot to get it verified for court. But it wasn't exactly public knowledge, either. We're all ears, then, Naomasa said. What's this tip? My quirk lets me get visions of the future. Naomasa's pen paused in shock. Though it isn't the same as Sir Night Eye's ability. I foresaw the villain Muscular breaking out of prison at roughly 6:30 p.m. and rampaging through Musutafu. The heroes on patrol aren't strong enough to stop him. And to Naomasa's rising dread, all of that rang true. Sansa shook his head, not getting a trace. Naomasa expected that. From the clear, concise way they talked, this vigilante didn't seem like much of an amateur. How had he never heard of a vigilante before? Time-related quirks were incredibly rare. There was probably no way to stop Muscular's escape, but a warning was exactly what he needed to capture him. Plus, noted, Naomasa replied, "Thank you for bringing this to our attention." The intercom cut out, the attacker leaving the system just as easily as they came. Naomasa broke the stunned silence with a long sigh. "I'm going to need to make a few calls." 5:33 p.m., Thursday. "Wow," Izuku said, impressed. "You're a really good actress, Uraraka." Uraraka smiled at the praise. "It wasn't that hard. You did most of the work, really, actually hacking into the police department so easily. Are you sure that was okay, by the way?" Izuku nodded. "I was super careful." Uraraka let out a breath. "Phew, now what?" Izuku settled into the couch. "Now we wait and see if the story goes any better." "What if that detective can't do anything about the attack?" Uraraka asked. "I mean, we don't really know anything about him other than where he works and his quirk." "Then we'd need a new plan," Izuku admitted. "But I have a good feeling about him. He seemed pretty reliable." Uraraka raised an eyebrow. "Feeling? Huh. What happened to my calm, logical eye Midoriya-kun?" Izuku laughed. His mother poked his head into the living room. "Oh, what are you two watching?" Izuku blinked. "Just a news special, Mom." Uraraka bobbed her head from next to him. Inko sat on Izuku's other side. "Sounds interesting. What's it about, honey?" The channel suddenly switched from a nice story about teleportation quirks to the same news anchor from before. She looked panicked, but not nearly as much as before. "This is just in. The villain Muscular has just broken out of prison. His current whereabouts are unknown, but police and heroes are currently rushing to capture him. That, oh my." The wait was painful. Any second now, Musutafu would be in danger, and Izuku had to force down the urge pushing against his skin to do something. He squeezed Uraraka's hand, probably too hard, but she didn't let go. And then Muscular was live, smashing through the street on landing, throwing back cars and pedestrians, muscles tearing through his shirt as he faced shaking cameras in all of his terrifying glory. His entire upper half was red, bulging muscle, towering over the running civilians. He had blonde hair, and both of his eyes, whatever injury inflicted upon him, had been reset and was leveling a fearsome, almost hungry glare. The smirk on his face alone set off warning bells in Izuku's head. Muscular didn't move for a moment, just throwing back his head and laughing as terrified civilians struggled to get away. Traffic stilled to a stop on either side of the villain. "Show me your blood," Muscular roared, loud enough to visibly startle the people on screen. A man tripped, hitting the concrete hard. Muscular moved, a blur of red on screen that Izuku's eyes couldn't even track, an unstoppable predator slamming down to squash his prey into nothing. The poor man's eyes went wide, and then the fist stopped, caught in a larger palm inches away from its target. "It's fine now." The live footage captured the exact moment Muscular's smirk fell off his face. "Why?" Izuku leaned forward so far he almost fell off the couch. "Because I am here." All Might's voice boomed. A reassuring grin stretched wide across his face. 5:40 p.m., Thursday. "Because I am here." All Might's voice boomed with the taste of ash. His heroic grin pushed onto his face through the pain in his side. He gripped Muscular's fist, pulling him in for a powerful punch to the chest. The villain went skidding back against the street, tearing up concrete and asphalt. The rescued civilian below Toshinori stared up at him with starry eyes for a stunned moment before he finally remembered to run. If he was being honest, Toshinori Yagi hadn't fully believed in Naomasa's tip. Many people had claimed to have foresight before, yet only one case had ever been real: his former partner Mirai. But Toshinori couldn't take the chance that it was fake, not with a villain like Muscular, and he trusted Naomasa and his gut instincts. The problem was that the timing was terrible. By the time Naomasa called him, Toshinori had already used up most of his time on patrol at most. He had 30 minutes left in his hero form, something that would only decrease the more Toshinori used the power of One for All. Muscular's body was unharmed from the opening blow, but the smirk was now gone. He was almost as tall as Toshinori, a wall of pure, terrifying muscle that reminded him of a very old American comic about a rage monster. "All Might." Muscular's face twisted into a scowl. "Here to lock me up again, are you?" "I'm here to put you back where you belong, villain," Toshinori replied, firm. He didn't even bother asking Muscular to surrender. He'd captured Muscular with Endeavor's help a few years back, easily. But that was before he killed All for One, before that crushing blow tore through his stomach like paper and he smashed his enemy through the ground in return. Muscular was powerful and bloodthirsty, killing everyone he came across to prove his own strength and power. Fighting the man weakened and alone wasn't exactly ideal. "You want to put me back in there? Do you know how long I've been waiting for this, sitting in that effing cell with my awesome quirk suppressed? I finally get to rip you apart," Muscular said, his arms bulging with power. The malice rolled off him in heavy waves. "You've killed countless innocents out of pure evil." Toshinori's eyes narrowed. "And you think you don't deserve prison? You don't get it. It's simple. I'm just doing what I want. I killed him because it was fun. No one gives a shit about evil. What you want is the complete opposite, stopping me." Muscular grinned, wild, his legs tensing up. So, all that's left is to see who wants more. Muscular rushed at him, launched forward like a spring. Toshinori crossed his arms, tanking a blow heavy enough to push him back before ducking under a red hook and countering, punching that monstrous chest with no small amount of force. Muscular stumbled back, seemingly stunned, but when he met Toshinori's eyes, his grin was even wider. Those punches ... they're way effing lighter than when we fought. Toshinori hit a grimace. You're getting weaker, All Might. Muscular lunged again, full of crazed laughter, and their fists met in a powerful shockwave. The wind blowed around them like a hurricane. Muscular's muscles grew to their peak, dwarfing Toshinori in size as they continued to clash. The villain was overwhelming, reminding him of All For One. For a brief moment, a muted ping in his injured side. Soon Toshinori was losing, being pushed back by the huge force in front of him, further and further, the road ripping up under them from the stress, the panic rising in the citizens around them like a tangible force as their hero lost more and more ground against the villain. Muscular's quirk had been unleashed to the point that he was an incredibly enhanced force of nature, overpowering Toshinori in their test of strength. That just wouldn't do. Toshinori grit his teeth tight, diving deeper into his unlimited ocean of power. The familiar burn of One For All ran through his entire body like a circuit, the centuries of stockpiled strength exhilarating as always even decades later, and his free hand curled into a fist as power flooded into it. His grin lifted from a comforting front into something truly fearless, and the terror around them faded, his aura covering the street like a warm but heavy blanket. That wasn't part of his quirk, despite what some conspiracy theorists would believe. The ability to calm the people around him by just being here was something he'd worked toward, built up over decades. The two came to a halt as their strength canceled out. Muscular's huge arms still pressed against his own, the hero's legs now planted unwavering into the street. 10 minutes left. The symbol of peace laughed, and Muscular unconsciously flinched back. Going all out, though, he'd only need one. Is that all you got, villain? Muscular swung his other arm for his face. All Might's fist struck first, a powerful uppercut that snapped Muscular's head up. He followed up with a Detroit smash that slammed into the villain's face, sending him flying. Carolina Smash. His fastest move brought him into range again, dual chops sweeping away the bulky arms in a cross-shaped burst of wind. Muscular twisted in midair, landing on his feet in time to block another blow ... then another, and another. All Might refused to let up, to give the villain room to breathe. The wall of muscle held strong under All Might's barrage, the shockwaves wrecking the street around them. He might even be more durable than All Might himself, with all those enhanced muscle fibers coiled around him like armor. Muscular growled, huge hands closing around All Might's throat and squeezing. But the hero didn't falter, swinging his head forward to crash against the villains with an ear-splitting crack. Muscular's grip loosened from the impact, blood dripping down the villain's forehead, and All Might reared his fist back. How's this for weaker, villain? All Might asked. What the foo? Texas Smash. The smash hit Muscular's gut with the force of a train, the villain barely managing to keep his footing. Then the muscles around his stomach suddenly grew, trapping his fist within Muscular's mass of red like something out of a horror film. All Might instinctively yanked, but he couldn't get free. Shit. All Might swung his other fist forward, only for it to get similarly caught on Muscular's shoulder. A rookie mistake. He'd assumed that this was a pure brawl, enhancer versus enhancer, but this application of Muscular's quirk had him completely trapped, stuck. I wasn't expecting that headbutt of yours, damn. Muscular chuckled with a hurt cough, throwing punch after punch at All Might's unguarded chest. You're full of surprises, but now that you can't punch me, what are you gonna do? One struck his injured side, hard, and All Might held back the blood in his throat. The thing was, All Might didn't become the #1 hero just by punching things. How about this? All Might made to headbutt again, and Muscular flinched at the feint, raising both arms above his head, and All Might instead stomped down on the ruined street, collapsing the ground beneath them in a single blow. Muscular looked utterly confused as they fell down together, too slow to react. He didn't have the decades of hero experience All Might did, adapting to cases and situations and fights. So as the terrible smell of the sewers hit their noses and All Might planted both legs on the villain's massive chest in midair, Muscular could do nothing until it was way too late. All Might leapt, kicking off his chest and ripping himself free of muscle fibers to rise up through the hole, flying higher and higher above his enemy. He paused at the apex of his jump, floating for a single second in open air, almost as if he had his master's quirk. Then gravity told hold, and he was curling into a tight ball, somersaulting through the air in a blur of red, blue, and yellow as he fell back down like a mighty meteor. California. He sprung out of the roll as he passed through the ruined street, his fist streaking out on a collision course. Muscular's eyes went wide. Smash. 5:44 p.m., Thursday. Smash. All Might yelled, his powerful voice easily booming out through the television. Izuku couldn't directly see the symbol of peace's finishing blow strike Muscular through the news camera, All the same, the whirlwind rising out like a tornado was awe-inspiring enough, washing away the clouds above. All Might hopped out of the sewers seconds later, a shrunken, unconscious muscular slung over his shoulders, his reassuring grin still in place. Amazing, Izuku breathed. I've never even seen him use this much power before. Despite his decades of heroism, there were rarely ever villains strong enough to challenge All Might. Izuku had complete memories of all his public fights. He could count the number of times the hero had gone all out on a single hand. That was so fast, Uraraka said. He beat that muscular so easily. That detective had ended up calling in the actual symbol of peace, and the terrifying threat they saw was dealt with in no time at all. This day was the ultimate proof of Reset's ability. They'd completely overwritten a tragedy, saving everyone involved with just a well-timed call. All that destruction caused by Muscular stopped in minutes. Incredible. Well, he is the #1 hero, after all. Inko glanced at them. I'm surprised you kids know about Muscular, anyway. His rampage was years ago, and it's not exactly something people talk about. You shouldn't be. Your son's almost addicted to researching heroes and villains, Midoriya-san, even the forgotten ones. Uraraka laughed, just as happy as he was. He could teach a class on them at this point. It sounded kinda concerning when she put it like that. Inko smiled warmly. My Izuku has always been so smart. I sometimes wonder why he loves his heroes so much, but when I watch All Might, she gestured at the screen, where All Might was waving at a cheering crowd. I think I truly understand. He's my favorite hero as well. All Might soared off into the sky soon after, likely to save more people. Izuku couldn't help but wonder when he'd get to see the symbol of peace again. His appearances had been lowering the past few years. Uraraka's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. I still think 13's cooler, though. One of Izuku's eyes twitched. There's no way. Inko just shook her head fondly as they dove into the argument. 4:21 p.m., Tuesday. Hello. Izuku made sure Uraraka wasn't currently breaking quirk laws before carefully placing the toaster in his arms down in the sand and turning to face the newcomer. He was tall but unnaturally skinny, with stick-like limbs and worn features, his shirt too large and colored with hints of red. Sir, are you okay? Izuku blurted. Thank you for your concern, young boy, but I can assure you that I'm quite fine. The man actually coughed up blood at the end of that sentence, wiping it off like it was nothing. I'm not a doctor, but you really don't seem to be fine right now, Uraraka remarked, walking up behind Izuku. Izuku winced at her bluntness, but well, she wasn't wrong. He only chuckled. I do have a medical professional that's been looking after me since my injury, but I'm sure you don't want to hear about that. I heard about 2 students working together tirelessly to clean up this beach. That's you too, isn't it? Izuku hummed, cautious. And what if it is? Are you going to tell us to quit? The opposite, actually. It's been years since Dagaba Beach was clean, and I very much want to see that side again. I'll help you. Really? The blonde man nodded. I own a pretty large truck. I can park her nearby. And you can load the heavier stuff like kitchen appliances, so I can drop them off at an actual junkyard. That'd be super nice of you, Uraraka said. But you do realize that we come out here every day, right? We don't want to take up too much of your... He waved it off. I have a lot of free time these days, don't worry about that. I'll be here. Izuku smiled, holding out his hand. We'll be relying on you in the future, then. I'm Midoriya Izuku, and the girl next to me is Uraraka Ochako. The man shook it with a grin, his blue eyes glinting. Despite his appearance, his grip was unwaveringly firm. Yagi Tashinori, 7:28 p.m., Sunday. Izuku collected 3 more months of memories. Yagi, true to his word, was almost always there to help when they arrived. His truck made their job way easier. Izuku guessed they'd finish cleaning the beach within a few more months. He started training Uraraka in hand-to-hand combat. Now that her stamina was decently well off, knowing how to fight was necessary for any hero, even those with offensive quirks. Zero gravity, a touch-activated quirk, only made the skill even more essential for her. Her talent and determination were incredible, and she got the basics down easily. Uraraka favored grapples and throws, seeming to enjoy slamming Izuku into the sand. Surprisingly, Yagi was quite experienced at combat. He sparred with the 2 of them sometimes, offering his own tips and tricks. Izuku had a hunch the man was an injured retired hero helping the next generation, yet he couldn't recognize the blonde at all. An underground hero, like Eraserhead. Despite Yaga's weak build, his reflexes were fast and his eyes sharp. He moved like he was used to having much higher mass, likely because he'd lost weight from his injury, but it barely left any openings. Both Izuku and Yagi were terrible teachers, though. Uraraka didn't hold it against them, and they did manage to give her a good foundation, but she would definitely need actual training. Maybe he should take her to meet Sensei. They'd get along well, he bet. 6:10 p.m., Wednesday. Now that Izuku actually had people to train with, he could practice the active part of perfect recall, something that could be invaluable to heroics and investigations. He formed the idea of a library as a mental construct long ago to represent his memories within his mind. Izuku slowly worked on getting his library more tangible and organized. At 14, he had years and years of complete memories filling hundreds and hundreds of bookcases. There were multiple floors, all adorned in that same dark, polished wood. A massive spiral staircase stretched through the middle, stretching up higher and automatically building with the rest of the construct. There was no roof, just more space for floors meeting the blue sky above. The term library barely did the place justice anymore. The books themselves were color-coded and labeled by date. Most of the shelves held his green books, a separate one for every single day he had lived. His quirk was the ability to relive his past, meaning that he even had memories from before perfect recall awakened. In total, he had 5280 green books at the moment. The other colors were each given their own small sections. Izuku's very first memories of strange consciousness, drifting aimlessly in pure comfort, were in 9 different brown books on the bottom floor. He remembered his time asleep, as well as the dreams during it. While those dreams were usually recorded with the rest of a day in green books, he sometimes put down interesting dreams in his orange ones. The red books were his worst or most painful memories. Thankfully, Izuku didn't have many of those. But there were still a few, such as the feel of burns from explosions and that terrible electricity crackling against his skin. Izuku hated even touching their narrow covers, but he couldn't help but wonder how useful the red books could be. A single touch, and a villain would be thrown a terrible memory. On the other hand, Izuku would literally have to go through the same pain. Finally, Izuku's most beloved memories were colored a bright blue. He didn't think he'd ever get tired of flipping through those, feeling the same thoughts and emotions flow into him as they did in that moment. They were all beautiful. Passively, perfect recall let Izuku remember all the text and information contained within his many books. Actively, Izuku could enter his own mind, pick up the book he wanted and go through the memory itself. No time passed outside his mind while he relived it. He opened his eyes to see Uraraka's face, his hand still holding hers. "Do you see anything, Uraraka? I can't really tell if my quirk's working or not." Uraraka shook her head. "Nope, my head kinda feels fuzzy, like it does when you're about to show me a memory. But then, nothing happens. I wanted to show you my mind itself, instead of just my memories. But that might have been too big of a leap. He could bring people into his memories, but so far it seemed that he couldn't bring anyone into his mental construct itself. Or maybe that wasn't even possible, and he was just stretching the concept of his ability too far. I mean, you could just need more practice," Uraraka said thoughtfully. "You told me yourself that you almost never worked on this part of your quirk." "True, mental quirks are always a little harder to figure out. What if you chain memories together?" "Huh?" Uraraka tilted her head. "No time passes while you're in a memory, somehow, right? Midoriya-kun. If you could play memory after memory inside your mind, or even just loop the same one." Izuku hummed. "I see what you're getting at. But you realize that this is probably going to cause some kind of quirk backlash, right?" Uraraka nodded. "Yep, alright then." Izuku hummed. "I see what you're getting at. But you do realize that this is probably going to cause some kind of quirk backlash, right?" Uraraka nodded. "Yep, alright then." Izuku focused on replaying back those few seconds before his hold on Uraraka's consciousness faded. It worked, surprisingly, and the scene rewinded fast before flowing normally once again. Izuku hummed. "I see what you're getting at. But you do realize that this is probably going to cause some kind of quirk backlash, right? Man, seeing my face in maximum detail from your eyes is weird. And hearing your voice from your eyes is even weirder." Uraraka muttered. "Wait a minute, we can talk while inside my memories." Uraraka nodded. "Yep, alright then." It was much easier to grab onto the time frame he needed the third time, bringing them back into the same sequence. Izuku hummed. "I see what you're getting at. But you do realize that this is probably going to cause some kind of quirk backlash, right? Now that's really useful." Izuku mused. "If I can keep this up, we can just pause in the middle of hero work and have so much more time to think. That's incredible. Midoriya-kun ... How the hell am I listening to you talk in the memory at the same time without missing either? Your quirk's bullshit." Uraraka nodded. "Yep, fair. Alright then." Again, Izuku hummed. "I see what you're getting at. But you do realize that this is probably going to cause some kind of quirk backlash, right?" Izuku hissed. "Yeah, my brain is definitely hurting now. Do you feel that too?" Uraraka nodded. "Yep, yeah, it must be the quirk overuse. How many times did you replay that so far?" "4. Alright then. Maybe just one more, then." Izuku hummed. "I see what you're getting at. But you do realize that this is probably going to cause some kind of quirk backlash, right?" Uraraka nodded. "Yep, alright then." Izuku let go and they both blinked their eyes open, their hands flying up to cradle their aching skulls. "Ouch," Uraraka cursed. Oh, no, really not a fan of the headaches. I mean, at least it's better than your nausea. I guess. So, how long were we in there? A minute, maybe. But almost zero time passed here. Uraraka's eyes widened. That's amazing, then. Just watch like the longest memory you have. Nah, it's not just how many memories I view at once. It's how long we spent there. But a minute is definitely plenty of time to think in a fight. Izuku smiled. Thank you, Uraraka. I don't know how I didn't think of that. She waved it off. You're always helping me with my quirks. Plus, helping you practice yours is fun. Perfect recall is like the coolest. Again, Uraraka, you can rewind time. Izuku trailed off, watching her eyes narrow in thought. What? Why are you still calling me Uraraka? Izuku blinked, confused. Because ... that's your name. Uraraka tilted her head. You stopped using an honorific on my surname months ago. And I'm pretty informal with you anyway. Why not just use Achako? That's not weird, right? There's no way I could. Izuku-kun. Uraraka tried. Izuku completely froze up, his cheeks surely burning red. Uraraka nodded to herself, mind made up. Yeah, that works. What? No, it doesn't. So, Izuku-kun, I have a few more ideas. 4:30 p.m., Saturday. The call picked up after a single ring, Uraraka's altered voice flowing smoothly through the microphone. Hey, Tsukachi. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Prophet. I still have no idea how you got this number. It was easy for Izuku to get the man's cell number after their earlier hack, and a lot safer to call him with their information directly. I can see the future. Uraraka reminded the man. That really shouldn't surprise you. Tsukachi sighed. I guess not. Speaking of which, today, at around 7:20 p.m., there's a big bank robbery, the one about ... 5 blocks east of Mount Agency. What? No one hits that one. It's way too close to most hero patrols, not to mention our precinct. Well, they did. Uraraka said simply. There were 5 of them, in masks. At least 2 carried guns. Do you know any of their quirks? Nope. I only saw their ringleaders some kind of fire. That's how they escaped. No one was killed, but there were a lot of injuries in their getaway. All right. There was a pause, likely the detective writing notes. Your quirk has definitely been accurate in cases so far. Thanks for the information, as always, though I can't help but wish you did this through official channels. You know that wouldn't be the best idea, with a quirk like mine. Uraraka spoke a bit slower here, making sure she got the wording right. I'm not in a stable position like Sir Night-Eye, and there are plenty of people who'd want to know the future for their own ends. I suppose that's true. Until next time then, detective. She hung up before he could respond, not very Uraraka-like, but very much a mysterious informant thing to do. After seeing how much Prophet had changed the outcome of that day, it was hard to resist using the name again and again. Simply telling the well-connected detective about an appearance of villains and what they knew about it was almost always enough to make a major difference in a situation. Prophet represented both of them, and while originally created as a way to discreetly pass on information and get around the detective's quirk, it was quickly becoming their own persona. Unless they actually went out and solved foreseen villain incidents themselves, Prophet couldn't be considered a vigilante. What they were doing was completely legal. But as the detective understood, foresight quirks were incredibly valued. So while they couldn't get in trouble with the law, they had to be very careful dropping tips. They didn't actually have visions of future events, just Izuku's memories of watching the news. They knew the basics and the time an event happened, yet none of the specifics. If Izuku was being honest, that really bugged him. The bank robbery they told Tsukachi about, Izuku knew almost nothing about it but the time it happened. The detective's actions could make things go worse. Of course, Izuku could learn about an event, reset, go there and get all the information himself, reset again, and then tell Tsukachi everything. But a teenager wouldn't be allowed near a villain attack, and his very presence could drastically affect what happens. A sudden poke to his shoulder broke him out of his thoughts with a jolt. Are you trying to give me a headache? Uraraka teased. Izuku blinked. Uraraka, was I? Muttering. Yeah. Uraraka shrugged. I love hearing your thought process, though, so I let you go for a while. Stop making that guilty face. Guilty face. Thanks. I didn't think you'd actually remember to poke me, Izuku admitted, rubbing his shoulder. Oh, Uraraka grinned. Never underestimate me, Izuku-kun. But you're right. We need to be more careful about the tips we give, especially when we don't know everything about the incident. They left for the beach, his mom warning him not to bring back sand again as they jogged out the doorway. Blocks passed behind them, Uraraka ranting lightly about her English homework. Izuku was easily fluent after a bit of practice in his quirk, something that made her adorably annoyed. Izuku noticed everything he experienced. If something didn't immediately prick at his attention, he'd notice it later when he read through the memory. So, he knew that the black cat behind them was actively following them for some reason, turning where they did, keeping the same distance away from them. Can we stop for a second? Izuku asked. Uraraka nodded, albeit confused. The black cat padded closer and closer to them as they paused on the sidewalk, its bright yellow eyes seeming almost intelligent. It stopped at Uraraka's feet, rubbing its furry head on her ankle. Uraraka squealed, immediately bending down to pet the creature. "Oh my god, she's the cutest cat I've ever seen." The cat didn't shy away from her hand, just continuing to gaze up at her as she stroked her fur. Izuku squatted down next to her, hesitantly reaching out as well. His eyes widened. "Wow, are all cats this soft?" "Depends," Uraraka answered, her face stretched with a wide smile. "Strays like her usually aren't, though." "How do you know she's a stray?" Izuku asked. "People in Musutafu usually put thin collars on them to tell." The cat leaned into Uraraka's hand a bit as she petted her neck, and the girl seemed to melt. Izuku watched the cat's eyes fix on Uraraka's, glancing at him from time to time. She slowly backed away from the two of them, turning to walk away. Then the cat stopped and looked back, and Izuku realized that she wanted them to follow her. "Do cats usually do that?" Uraraka stared as the cat flicked her head at them again. "I don't know. Should we?" "Don't worry." The girl patted the cat next to her, and the tabby leaned into her palm. Her lips curled up the slightest bit. "I have Star here to protect me." That had to be one of the weirdest conversations he'd been in. He was almost glad when she wandered away, her cat clinging to her shoulder almost protectively. Izuku wondered if Star had a quirk. Izuku hummed, "Let's see what she wants." He didn't have to tell Uraraka twice, the girl excitedly following after the creature. The cat walked a little faster, now that they'd made their choice, glancing back every now and then. Minutes and several turns passed, the buildings giving way for more trees as they got closer to the edge of the city. Izuku looked up at them now to see a shrine at the very top of a hill, a huge number of steps building up to it. The cat paused for a second to let them take in the sight before steadily padding up the steps. Uraraka sighed, and Izuku nearly did too. That many stairs were never a fun time. The cat seemed to be completely fine, somehow, and that was probably the most annoying part as they huffed up the many, many stone steps, the shrine getting closer and closer into view. They were both a little tired when they finally reached the top. The shrine itself was a small wooden building, traditionally designed and decorated and surrounded with a forest of green. It was beautiful and somehow nostalgic in a way only historical artifacts could manage. What drew Izuku's attention were the dozens and dozens of cats laying over the ground in front of them, even on the steps of the shrine itself. There were all kinds of colors and breeds, some awake and some asleep. It was a cat haven. "Whoa," Uraraka breathed. "I've never seen so many cats before, all in the same spot. Why are they all here?" Izuku pointed. "I think I figured out why." Laying down near the mass of cats was a familiar blue-haired girl. She was curled into them, asleep, and some of the awake ones lightly stepped around her. As they watched, the black cat next to them slowly stalked over, skillfully wading around felines until she made her way to the girl and booped her on the nose. The mysterious girl woke up, intelligent gray eyes focusing on the two of them. "Hello, Uraraka-san, Midoriya-senpai. You're that girl from before. How do you know our names?" Uraraka asked, surprised. Her quirk lets her learn through her cats, somehow. Izuku answered for her. It's logical to assume that she's heard us talk before. Also, she just implied that she was an underclassman. Mentally going back through the class lists. "You're Nano Seika, right?" Izuku guessed. Nano nodded, absent-mindedly stroking the black cat. Her face was still blank. "You're very observant, Midoriya-senpai. My quirk, feline, lets me access the senses of every cat in the city while I'm asleep, as well as view their memories." Uraraka's eyes widened. "Wow, that's pretty cool. So that's why you're asleep all the time. You must know everything that goes on in this city." Izuku realized, amazed. "Everything that the wandering strays see? Yes. I know about perfect recall, reset, and profit." Izuku narrowed his eyes. "I won't tell anyone, though." "What did you call us here for then?" "Nano," Uraraka asked. "I'm here to make the both of you an offer, Uraraka-san, Midoriya-senpai." Izuku winced. "You really don't need to call me that." "What's the offer?" Nano tilted her head. "Okay, Midoriya-san. I overheard that you needed a way to gather information, especially in a reset. With my quirk, that's what I do best. I've never been able to do anything with the things I know. You clearly found a way to. So you want to help us?" Izuku summarized. "Not just that. I will support the two of you in your hero careers with my quirk when possible. I'm not planning to be one myself. I want to be a vet, if that wasn't obvious, but I don't really have plans for that future. I will enter UAS general education course a year after you do." Izuku wasn't surprised that she knew what school they were planning on. That was generous, to say the least. "There's something you want, isn't there?" Nano handed them a picture. Izuku took it curiously, Uraraka leaning over his shoulder to see. It was a beautiful silver cat, his blue eyes almost bored as they glanced over at the camera. "You just have printed pictures of all your cats?" Izuku couldn't help but ask. "As she should." Uraraka gestured at all the cats at their feet. "Look at all of them. His name is Mercury," Nano said softly. He's really cute. A few hours ago, he got hit by a car. Oh my god. Uraraka caught on instantly. You want us to save him? Yes. Her emotionless voice trembled so slightly that Izuku nearly missed it. Please, when did it happen? Izuku questioned. Sometime between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. That's when I noticed he was gone. And then found out what happened. I wasn't watching him. And I can't see the memories of cats when they. Nano trailed off. A 5-hour time frame. Our save is at 6:40 a.m. Izuku mused. If we come here immediately and ask you to connect to Mercury, can't you just make sure he never goes there in the first place? Because, even if you don't know where he was, if he's at the shrine there's no chance he gets hurt. Uraraka finished. Izuku glanced at her, and she smiled back. Nano nodded. That works. He's probably nearby. My past self would believe you. An easy resolution. But, I'm happy using a reset to save Mercury, offer or not. I'm sure Uraraka is too. Uraraka nodded her assent. But if we reset, you won't even remember this conversation, or have any reason to help us afterward. I can see why you'd think that. But simply mentioning Mercury's name is proof enough that I can trust you. Helping you too with hero work doesn't cost me anything. Also, my father has told me that I need more human friends. Izuku blinked, taken aback at the bluntness. Uraraka just grinned. Of course, we'll be your friends, and save Mercury. Nano actually bowed, low enough to make Izuku incredibly awkward. Thank you. They walked away from the shrine and back to Izuku's house to see how the robbery went. The main difference in the events was Midnight being put on patrol nearby, but she was able to skillfully subdue all of the villains with ease. Izuku learned that another one of the villains had a fire-based quirk, and that another had an enhancer. He wouldn't tell Tsukachi about the new information he got this reset, instead resolving to use the same words as last time. This loop was probably the best-case scenario for the robbery, and he didn't want to risk that. Izuku nodded to Uraraka, and she clapped her hands together, familiar phrase on her lips. Reset. Reset. 6:40 a.m. Sere. Izuku smiled. We've reset. Cool. Why? Is this another villain thing? Uraraka tilted her head. Huh. Oh yeah, there was this armed bank robbery. But we can worry about that later. Uraraka blinked. That sounds like the more important issue. A cat gets hit by a car in a few hours. Izuku interrupted. Where? Izuku showed her the entire conversation with Nano. Uraraka took a few seconds to absorb all the information she just absorbed, hand-cupping her chin thoughtfully. Nano Seika, huh. It's kinda weird going to meet someone for the first time yet already having memories of them. So, do you remember where this cat shrine is, Izuku-kun? Uraraka joked. I'm pretty sure I do, yeah. Izuku quipped back. Izuku, like the amazing friend he is, didn't show Uraraka the memory of having to trudge up the stairs. But like the petty person he was, he didn't warn her about them, either. Izuku was half expecting Nano to not be there, but there the cat-like girl was, asleep in a pile of fur. Izuku stepped over and gently poked her forehead. Nothing. Uraraka, can you? Uraraka shook the girl roughly awake, now knowing that she had a sleep-based quirk and needed more of a ... push. It was also interesting that she still could feel stuff while connecting with a cat, something Izuku would need to ask about sometime. Nano rubbed at her eyes sleepily. Midoriya-senpai and Uraraka-san. I wasn't expecting you two to show up here. Actually, you asked us to come here. You know about reset, right? Yes, I do. But why would I? Your cat, Mercury. He gets struck by a car within a few hours. Uraraka explained. You asked us to reset to save him. Nano's hands trembled, the most emotion Izuku had seen from her yet. I see. Thank you. Give me a moment, and I'll connect to him. Nano leaned more into the cats around her, her long blue hair dripping down onto them as she laid back down. Her breathing evened out within a minute. If only Izuku could fall asleep that fast. What a skill. Nano's eyes suddenly blinked open. We have a problem. Mercury, he's too far away. Huh, I thought your quirk covered the entire city. It does. I can connect to every cat in the city and sense what they do, but I can't compel cats to do anything if they're a certain distance away. From his surroundings, Mercury's at this park right now. Izuku reconsidered. All right, I know where that is. Go back to sleep and send one of these cats to follow us. We'll run there as fast as we can, and you can guide us until we reach your control range. Okay, 7:14 a.m., Sare. Nano sent Star with them, the tabby leading them across sidewalks and roads in a dash. Izuku didn't know cats could even move that fast, but they were barely keeping up. I like using reset like this, Uraraka murmured. To save cats. Izuku tilted his head. Well, yeah, but that's not what I meant. As Prophet, we've helped lots of people indirectly these past few weeks. But this is something we're actively doing ourselves. If that makes sense. It does. Star flicked his tail at them. They were falling behind and the pair rushed to catch up. Even if we're just saving one cat. Maybe when we get our provisional licenses, we can just pretend we end up on villain attacks by chance. I honestly can't tell if you're joking or not. Not completely. Why, I'm pretty sure Yue would figure it out after you managed to get caught up in every single hero fight. Izuku-kun, your mother said that you chased those long before you ever knew the future. That's why she made you call so often and carry an extra handkerchief. Izuku held back a wince. She really tells you everything? Huh? Uraraka only smiled. You are a cute baby, you know. Star suddenly stopped, turning to meow at them. Her paws patted at Uraraka's shoes. This must be how far she can direct her cats. Uraraka noted. And we traveled so far, that's an impressive range. They found the park easily after that and walked along a path of stone, enjoying the scenery in their search. It was a nice place, somewhere Izuku would definitely visit again sometime. Mercury was a little fatter than he was in the picture, but unmistakably the same silver cat, sunbathing in a patch of grass when they found him. He lazily glanced up at them as they approached. Izuku was glad they knew where he was. However, what do we do with him now? Izuku asked. Nano can't affect him from there. Do we just follow the stray around and make sure he doesn't get hit by a car? I guess. Uraraka mused thoughtfully. We could always catnap him. What? Like kidnapping? But with a cat. Catnapping. I really don't think that's how words work, Uraraka. That sounds more like we're about to put him to sleep. That's also an option. Izuku tried and failed to suppress his smile. How about, instead, we just take him back to the shrine? But Izuku-kun, you can carry him there. Yes, all cats loved Uraraka because she was Uraraka. Mercury didn't move as she carefully picked him up, actually curling himself around her shoulders. Is he too heavy? You're going to be holding him for a long time. Izuku asked as they started walking back. Nope, I can handle it. Hey, Izuku-kun, if Nano is feeling everything Mercury is, and I'm carrying Mercury, does that mean I'm technically carrying Nano? Izuku hummed. Yeah, pretty much. Is that weird for you? Not really, though I doubt Nano herself would let me pick her up like this. Should I ask her? Izuku glanced at the cat in her arms. Uraraka, you already have. Oh, right. They walked for a long while, talking about anything and everything. They must have been within Nano's control range for many minutes now, but Mercury didn't make any move to escape Uraraka's hold. Uraraka didn't place Mercury down until they reached the shrine's stairs, letting him pad up the way easily. Meanwhile, the two of them didn't move, staring up at the many steps above. We've run around a lot today. Huh. Uraraka wiped the sweat off her forehead. I really don't want to fight those stairs again. You did just bring a fat cat all the way over here. I asked you if you wanted me to help, and you said no. Uraraka let out a long sigh. Izuku laughed, talking on impulse. You know, I can give you a lift if you want, just like how you carried Mercury. Uraraka brightened instantly. Really? Izuku blinked, not expecting her to take the offer seriously. But well, why not? He bent down and showed her his back, letting Uraraka scramble onto him like a cat. He stood carefully, stumbling a little at the sudden weight. She hugged his neck to stabilize, and once she was in place he started walking up steadily. Uraraka grinned into his hair. I've never been this tall before. The view's pretty great. When I look behind us it's like, if you keep shifting around, Uraraka, you're going to make me slip. Izuku muttered. Sorry. He was quite thankful that the shrine was nearly abandoned. Carrying her on his back like this was really embarrassing. Nano stared at them as they finally arrived several minutes after Mercury. Izuku awkwardly let Uraraka down before slumping to the ground himself, completely exhausted. We found your cat. Uraraka pointed at him. The blue-haired girl bowed. I see. I can't thank you enough for saving Mercury, Midoriya-senpai, Uraraka-san. Uraraka waved her off. It was nothing, Nano-san. No, really, my cats are well, everything to me. Nano paused. I must have offered you something before you reset. I'll grant that, whatever it was. Nano didn't remember any of their earlier conversation. Izuku knew Nano was rich, from the shrine she lived in as well as being able to provide for all of these cats so easily. Not to mention how useful her ability was. They could ask her for literally anything, and the girl would probably accept. He exchanged a glance with Uraraka, reaching a silent agreement. Izuku hummed. 2 things. Nano nodded. All right, what are they? 1. Stop calling me Midoriya-senpai. Please. Nano slowly blinked, confused, and Uraraka snickered. And 2. How about being our friend? 12:06 p.m., Monday. At Aldera, Izuku had a long, nice table completely to himself, carefully avoided by every student. It was peaceful yet painfully empty at times, the bright blue seats going unfilled while people squished into the other table. It was as if Izuku was simultaneously at the middle of the social ladder and at the very bottom. He got along quite well with his classmates and other students, but because of his conflict with Katsuki, no one was really friends with him for fear of becoming a target too. And sitting near Izuku at lunch was seen as a friend thing, unfortunately. Despite the student body's fears, Katsuki never went after any other hero hopefuls, even the ones with weak quirks like the guy who bragged about his extendable eyeballs. He went after Izuku because he actually trying as hard as Katsuki was, pushing his body and quirk as hard as possible for the far-off UA exam, and learning hand-to-hand combat. The only other actually going for the hero course, and Katsuki couldn't accept that, especially from someone with a weak quirk. The first few months at Aldera, Katsuki was constantly looking for a confrontation with him. Izuku remembered abandoning the cafeteria out of necessity and spending his lunch alone on top of the roof every day. Aldera Junior High's rooftop was small, boring, and didn't offer much of a view. It was always left unlocked, but you would rarely ever find anyone up there. It was perfect for Izuku, a nice, quiet spot. He'd press his back against the wall and munch on the bento in his lap, watching glimpses of the field below through the roof's fence. Katsuki never truly stopped going after Izuku. But as they got older, his attacks got rarer and rarer until Izuku felt safe enough to eat in the cafeteria uninterrupted, still alone, but sitting at a table instead of a hard rooftop. And since then, Izuku hadn't been up there once. So today, as Izuku followed Katsuki up to the very rooftop that he used to escape from him in the past and confronted him over the very same rooftop he associated with peace, Izuku couldn't help but feel a deep sense of irony. He'd wanted to search for Nano, to talk to his new friend. Unfortunately, today was the day Katsuki finally broke his strange silence and dragged him away, claiming they needed to talk. Izuku had been so shocked that he just let it happen. They did need to talk if Izuku was being honest, but Katsuki being the one to say it. Incredible. And that's how he ended up on the school roof with the same blonde he'd fought months before. The awkward silence between them painfully tangible. Katsuki was glaring hard at the ground, his hands clenched and unclenched in a slow rhythm, but there wasn't a hint of sweet nitroglycerin in the cold air. Meanwhile, Izuku watched Katsuki warily, not moving an inch as he scanned his eyes across the boy in front of him. This new, quiet Katsuki was alien, unreadable. None of Izuku's memories were helpful here. Was this some kind of nonverbal message? Was he gathering his thoughts, or was Izuku supposed to say something first? Izuku counted out 45 seconds before Katsuki suddenly muttered a curse under his breath and shoved his hands deep into the pockets of his black school uniform. His red eyes finally looked up into Izuku's green ones. Before Katsuki started, his voice low and deliberate, like he was picking every word with uncharacteristic care. "You called me a villain." Izuku winced, his perfect memory bringing the angry moment back to the front of his mind. "Yeah, I went way too far. You were right." Katsuki cut him off, and Izuku's jaw dropped. You were right. You were right." Was he dreaming? "Close your dumbass mouth, nerd. I fought and hurt a civilian with my quirk. That's exactly the kind of thing a shitty villain would do, isn't it?" I mean, it is. No matter what all those teachers say, All Might definitely doesn't go around blasting teenagers. Katsuki saw the world so purely, Izuku couldn't help but think. Strong and weak, hero and villain, winner and loser. "I'm not some shitty villain who uses his quirk like that," Katsuki stated, firm. "I'm going to be the #1 hero." "Okay." Izuku knew he would. "Are you going to keep attacking me? Or are you still trying to be a hero?" Katsuki countered. "Always," Izuku answered without a hint of hesitation. Instead of getting angry, Katsuki just nodded. "Yeah, I'll fight you without using explosion, though." "But didn't you lose to me even with your quirk?" Katsuki glared at him fiercely but didn't deny it. "For now, you're better at hand-to-hand combat than I am, shitty nerd. I'm just going to have to train even harder." His face was determined. Izuku still didn't understand. "But why do you want to fight me, anyway? Why did you do any of this in the first place, Katsuki? You don't want to be friends with me, sure. But your quirk is remembering things, right? That's a pathetic quirk for a hero. You'll never be able to fight villains who can destroy streets with just a blast or match blows with All Might. Someone needed to show you that you're too weak to be a hero." A bitter feeling rose up from the depths of Izuku's stomach. "So you had to play the villain, then? For nearly a decade? That's stupid. You declared me too weak, so you needed to show me that out of concern." Katsuki scowled. "No pride. You never fought back. Not effing once, until now. You always ran away. Someone with a weak quirk, who won't fight back, becoming a pro hero like I was. Impossible. Of course, I ran away. I never wanted to fight you. You think a villain is going to care?" "Exactly. You aren't a villain," Izuku shouted back. "I'll become a hero, and capture villains without hesitation. But I'm not going to fight a future hero for no reason. And guess what? Every hero isn't All Might. Most of them aren't super powerful. Heroes with weaker abilities can still be good heroes. In fact, it's great that we have versatility and quirks like Sir Night Eye's foresight that can help in other ways." The wild pussycats. Izuku was on a rant now, but he couldn't stop. "Specialize in mountain rescue. 2 of them don't have combat quirks. Mandalay and Ragdoll essentially fight quirkless. but their quirks are incredibly useful to saving lives. You're smart, Katsuki, so why are you acting like a one-dimensional, quirkless dumbass? Katsuki stared silently, red eyes narrowing. Izuku met his gaze, willing his knees not to shake. He meant every word he said, but if he just called the scariest person he knew a dumbass. A long, heavy minute passed before Katsuki scoffed. Guess you finally grew a backbone, nerd. He brushed past Izuku, stepping back into the school and closing the door shut. Izuku could only stare blankly after him as the loud blonde's footsteps faded away and the rooftop turned silent once more. 5:13 p.m. Monday. Izuku plopped down next to Yagi for a much-needed break, his arms and back aching. More sand fell into his poor shoes at the motion, but well, Izuku had stopped caring about that months ago. His brain flashed back through that conversation with Katsuki for the 4th time. It had felt good, really good, to finally get to say those things to him. But as the hours passed, Izuku only felt more tense, wired up, like he was missing something. He still didn't understand Katsuki. Yagi acknowledged him with a small smile before looking back at his work. Izuku would have thought it'd be more comfortable to do right on a desk or a chair, but the man seemed to be perfectly at peace curled into the beach just like this, paper supported on his knee with the breeze sweeping through his blonde hair. Come to think of it, Izuku and Uraraka still knew almost nothing about Yagi except that he was severely injured and knew a lot about the hero business. Oh, and he could throw a strong punch despite being built like a stick. It was probably very weird for 2 middle schoolers to befriend some old guy they knew nothing about. But Izuku and Uraraka weren't exactly normal students, and Yagi was kind, thoughtful, and not very suspicious. But with that said, if Yagi was going to spend this much time with them and never talk about himself, Izuku should really start asking questions. What are you, working on, Yagi-san? Yagi glanced up. He wasn't exactly hiding what he was writing, but it was just out of Izuku's view. Just some paperwork, young Midoriya. It's very boring stuff. For what? Izuku asked. Work. I've held a desk job at a hero agency for the past few years, you see. Well, that explained why he knew so much about heroes. That's pretty cool. Which agency do you work at? Might Tower, Yagi said casually. Izuku blinked. Wait, you work for All Might? That's amazing. It's not that big of a deal, really. I just file forms and write reports for him, small things like that. But you work at Might Tower, that giant skyscraper. Wait, does that mean you've met him? Yagi's face scrunched up for some reason. I have, yes. What's he like? Izuku pressed, eagerly. Well, how do I put this? All Might is exactly the same as you would imagine. He's bold, loud, and tries to make everyone feel safe. He's also very, very busy. I guess that makes sense. All Might seems like someone who would do his best to live up to his hero persona, even in the office. Izuku paused. I really can't imagine him behind a desk, though. Yagi chuckled. Most people probably wouldn't place the image of their symbol of peace with doing desk work. Izuku thought of Katsuki, and how he saw All Might as the standard for heroes, representing victory itself with his power. All Might always winning was amazing, for sure, but All Might wasn't amazing just because he always won. Yeah, he spends practically all of his time in the spotlight capturing villains everywhere. I remember seeing him on TV a few months back, when he fought Muscular. Of course, I remember, and even now, I rewatch his old fights a lot. The way he literally is the symbol of peace and can calm people down just by being there is incredible. Yagi tilted his head. I knew All Might was your favorite hero, but I was certainly expecting you to talk about his strength, or maybe even the speeches. Oh, no, his speeches are terrible, Izuku cut in bluntly, and Yagi nearly coughed up a lung. You're not one of the people who writes those things, right? I don't want to offend you, or anything. No, All Might prepares his speeches himself. I was just surprised to hear you say that. Izuku laughed lightly. His messages are all great, but he fumbles words a lot and generally just isn't made for public speaking. He tries, though, and that's what really matters. Maybe it's just the fact that I've seen all of them a dozen times. But I think most people ignore his small flaws like that because he's, well, All Might. They should realize he's still a person too, you know? Yagi had completely stopped writing now, his powerful blue eyes fixed on Izuku. Yeah, I do. But his catchphrase, though Izuku's face twisted into his All Might impression, sharp features, shadowed eyes, and a gritted smile completely jarring on a teenager's face. Yagi flinched back, startled. Never fear, because I am here. Izuku's face went back to normal, is absolutely perfect, simple and to the point, but it's so powerful. Young Midoriya, how in the world did you do that? Don't worry about it. I'm very much whoa. Hey, Izuku-kun. Uraraka yelled out from the other side of the beach, a heap of garbage outlined in pink and floating above her. Are you gonna help out, or are you gonna just talk to the old man all day? Yagi sputtered indignantly as Izuku stood up with a small chuckle, brushing the sand off his pants. Be right there. 12:33 p.m., Tuesday. Izuku had a new quirk to analyze, and such a cool one, too. Does that mean you're always conscious, even while you're asleep? Izuku asked, his pencil furiously jotting down notes. Are you constantly vivid dreaming, then? Or do you not dream at all, since your sleeping mind is focused on your quirk? Nano blinked slowly. Her spoon paused in front of her mouth, the barrage of questions washing over her. Midoriya, do you eat lunch? You've been analyzing my quirk for nearly 20 minutes. I don't mind, but it's not even that interesting. Izuku gasped, insulted. Take that back, right now. I'm sorry. Apology accepted. Now please, answer the question. 4:13 p.m., Friday. Property of Izuku Midoriya, 14 years old. Quirk name, Feline. User, Nano Seika. Ability, Emitter. While asleep, the user goes into a dreamlike state that lets them get proper rest while still keeping them conscious enough to retain memories and activate the quirk. When activated, the user can possess any cat in a huge radius around them, allowing them to sense what the cat is sensing as well as see their memories. In addition, the user can compel a cat's actions if close enough. Observed use. Nano often uses Feline to check up on all the stray cats around Misutafu. Once, she found a specific cat's location from extremely far away and then sent another cat to lead people to him. Possible applications. Incredible potential for information gathering simply by checking the memory of every stray cat and their paths throughout the city to learn what they've seen. Cats can also serve as discreet scouts since people are much less likely to care about a wandering cat than a wandering human. Can possibly send cats to attack from range. But Nano being woken up will remove the effect overall low combat value. And obviously, this would risk the mentioned cats. Drawbacks. Needs to be asleep to activate the quirk, which can be a hard activation condition depending on the scenario. Nano has mentioned that she can get headaches if she stays connected to a specific cat for hours on end or overuses the control part of her ability. These headaches could possibly force her awake, canceling her quirk. Additional notes. Nano can fall asleep instantly. This is possibly because of Feline, a constant state of drowsiness for ease of use. Nano seems to spend the most time connected to Mercury in comparison to her other cats. Despite predictions, Nano does not seem to exhibit any other cat-related abilities. The analysis overflowed onto the next page in an organized jumble of information, going into a theoretical and scientific explanation that was a little shaky, as reasonings for mental quirks usually were. The page after was a detailed illustration of Nano's face, gray eyes staring blankly as usual. He captured her features as accurately as possible with his quirk, to the point where the drawing was nearly a photo. Resting on top of her blue hair was a yawning Mercury, his silver fur gleaming in the lighting. Izuku-kun, Uraraka began as she squinted down at the notebook in her hands. She sat cross-legged on the beach across from him, her face steadily growing more worried as she read. The subject of his newest analysis was currently asleep nearby, soundlessly snoring on the sand without a hint of discomfort. It probably wasn't very interesting to watch Izuku and Uraraka lug around trash. Are you stalking this girl? Uraraka sent a quick glance at the sleeping Nano before looking back at Izuku's face. What? No. Then why do you have a whole 2 pages of notes on her? We met Nano barely a week ago. Oh, yeah, I'd usually have more info by now, Izuku admitted. I'm more used to analyzing heroes. More info, Uraraka sighed. Sometimes, I forget how much you love quirks. How'd you learn so much about her quirk, though? Oh, she told me. I just asked her a few questions about Feline, and she didn't mind answering. Though I owe her some cat food, now. Uraraka hummed, low. She definitely needs it, with all of those stray cats. I've been wondering how she affords to take care of them. I wouldn't ask, Yagi said, suddenly next to them. Uraraka jumped to her feet, startled. You said young Nano lived at a shrine, correct? If I were you, I would not poke at her situation until she tells you herself. You're going to give me a heart attack, you sneaky skeleton, Uraraka muttered. It'll be a long time till you teenagers need to worry about that. Yagi chuckled lightly. Uraraka rolled her eyes. By the way, Yagi-san, after we take Nano-san home, do you mind coming over for dinner with us tonight? Izuku asked. Yagi blinked. Sure, if your mother doesn't mind. She's been wanting to meet you, actually. Oh, has she? He sounded worried. Uraraka pounded her fist into her palm in sudden realization. Wait, your stomach's super injured, right? Yagi was used to her bluntness by now. It is, yes. Why? I'll text Inko-san and ask her what she's making, so make sure to tell me if you can't eat anything. Young Uraraka, you don't need to go through the trouble. I wasn't asking, Yagi-san. All right, 6:32 p.m., Sunday. Naomasa stared at his old friend, barely believing his own ears and quirk. You're training kids. Toshinori rubbed the back of his neck, sheepish. He sat next to Naomasa's desk, the blonde a familiar enough sight in the precinct now to not draw any glances. Yeah, and in my true form, too. It just kind of happened. How? I found the 2 of them cleaning Dagaba Beach by themselves. Yeah, that one. They said it was for muscle training, and well, why not? I have free time now because Toshinori gestured at his stomach, so I offered to cart the garbage with my truck. That sounded like exactly the sort of thing his friend would do on impulse, and they simply accepted the help from a random, possibly dangerous man. Naomasa couldn't help but ask. I asked about that, actually, and young Uraraka just said, Yagi-san, no offense, but if you tried to carry this fridge you'd probably die. Ouch, I bet no one's ever said that to the symbol of peace before, Naomasa muttered. Toshinori chuckled, a small smile on his face. Definitely not, no. They're good, determined kids. The blonde leaned back into his chair at the memory, hollowed features growing more relaxed. His true form's smile was just as warm as his hero form's, yet more tangible, real. This sounds like a good thing for you, Toshi. Though, Naomasa lowered his voice. Is this about your quirk? No, I've been helping them with their muscle development and their hand-to-hand combat. They're going for the UA exam. But I'm not training them for that yet, though neither of them would be bad successors. Toshinori paused. I still haven't looked at Mirai's choice, now that I think about it. Naomasa fixed him with a practiced look. You're going to have to check that out eventually. You know, the two of you can't keep avoiding each other forever. Naomasa, Toshi, Naomasa cut in gently. You need to get in touch with him. Toshinori sighed. I know, but it's just been so long. What if he doesn't want to see me? I doubt that. Really? Yeah, and either way, you'll never know if you don't try. Toshinori didn't respond, but Naomasa could tell he was thinking about it. Oh yeah, that reminds me. I have a new anonymous informant, one that I feel you'd find quite interesting. They hacked directly into our intercom without a trace, and their first tip was that urgent warning about muscular. Naomasa watched Toshinori's face flash with realization, remembering that fight. How much damage would that villain have caused if they hadn't been given that message? They call themselves Prophet and say their quirk lets them see the future. Toshinori's eyes widened. A foresight quirk, like Mirai. That's a very bold claim, but a true one, apparently. Not only does lie detector affirm it, but their record speaks for itself. Every case they've predicted over the past few weeks has come through exactly. So I can't help but be incredibly curious who they are. You're going to ask Mirai for help, aren't you? Toshinori realized. Naomasa shrugged. Who better to find someone who can see the future than someone who can see the future? "5:46 p.m., Tuesday. Yagi wore a natural smile on his face today. It was small but didn't fade as the man took his usual spot on the beach. His shoulders seemed far lighter too, as if he'd been finally relieved of a great burden. You seem really happy today, Yagi-san. Uraraka piped up, echoing Izuku's thoughts. Did something good happen? Yes, something long overdue. I talked to an old friend for the first time in 5 years. What was that like? Izuku asked, curious. Not nearly as scary as I thought it'd be, Yagi said, almost wistful. It was quite nice to catch up with him. He hasn't changed a bit. Does he live far away? It must be hard, not having many chances to meet up. Ah, no, young Midoriya. That isn't it. We had something of an argument all those years ago. Both of us had strong opinions on my future, and well, neither of us wanted to give in to the other. We were left at a standstill and stopped working together, separated, then gradually fell out of contact. For years, Uraraka questioned, incredulous. Why didn't either of you try to fix things? We can both be incredibly stubborn, Yagi admitted, sheepishly. I didn't know how to reach out first and apparently neither did he. There is another, more personal issue that made things even more complicated, but I feel like we're on good terms again now. Oh, Uraraka's eyes widened in realization. I get it. You two were in a relationship. What? Yagi sputtered. How did you come to that conclusion? You basically just described a breakup. Yagi-san. Of a partnership. We were coworkers. Uraraka snorted. Yeah, I bet you were. But what made you take that first step? Izuku asked. After procrastinating so long. Well, a particularly interesting case was brought to my attention. I thought of Mirai, and how this was exactly the kind of thing he'd want to see. And someone close to me convinced me to call him. Are you allowed to tell us what the assignment was about? Yagi cupped his chin thoughtfully. Actually, I could probably tell you about this one. This wasn't official, anyway. Is it really okay to give out agency information like this? Nano wondered. Izuku hadn't noticed her wake up, but there were 2 cats now curled up onto her beach blanket with her. Where had they even come from? Yep, as long as the 3 Yagi smiled down at the animals. 5 of you don't go around telling anyone. I doubt it'll become an issue. Besides, I want young Midoriya's opinion on this. Well, now he was curious. We have a new, anonymous informant. They're quite a skilled hacker, entering our systems and personal communications to drop tips without a trace. Most fascinating, though, is their quirk. Izuku stared at the blonde man in disbelief, feeling Uraraka shift at his side. There was no way this was a coincidence, was it? Calling themselves Prophet, they have shown the ability to see the future and with incredible accuracy, too, Yagi stated, a hint of respect in his voice. Every case they've reported has been resolved easily, our heroes arriving early to the crime scene. But you said they were an informant, right? Izuku repeated. Not a vigilante. Yes, why? Then they aren't really breaking any laws. So why is your agency, looking for them? We aren't trying to arrest Prophet, Yagi clarified, and Izuku held back a relieved sigh. But foresight quirks like Prophet's, especially ones so accurate, are very rare and very sought after. Without protection and assistance, Prophet is in extreme danger. Also, we'd like to try convincing them to properly join the police. Izuku shared a glance with Uraraka. There was a choice here. They trusted both Tsukachi and Yagi, and could potentially reveal themselves to the police through them. If the police learned Prophet was just 3 teenagers, it'd change things. But they'd probably still let them help out as informants. But on the other hand, Yagi and Tsukachi would definitely have to report who Prophet was to their higher-ups, report Uraraka's second quirk, and connecting themselves to the police would make them much more obvious to outside attention as well. Uraraka's reset was simply too powerful to risk. Izuku shook his head subtly, and Uraraka's eyes flicked back to Yagi. If they are living under that much danger and secrecy, they probably won't accept that invitation. Uraraka mused, slowly. I mean, the only other foresight quirk user I've ever heard of is Sir Nightai, and not even Izuku knew anything about that guy before he was a hero. Yagi's lips tilted upward ever so slightly at the mention. Your old friend, the one that's helping you on this Prophet case. It's Sir Nightai, right? Yagi blinked, stunned, before breaking into a smile. You really are smart, young Midoriya. Yes, that's correct. You're telling me your ex is Sir Nightai? Izuku exclaimed, hands flying to his mouth. Oh my god, I can't believe I know someone who's dated him. Don't forget that he knows All Might, too, Uraraka interjected. Uraraka, please, I still haven't even processed that one yet. For the last time, young Uraraka, I was not in a relationship with Mirai. I wasn't. Then why do you say his name like that? Izuku snickered. He knew firsthand how tough changing Uraraka's mind was once she was set on something. Yagi gave up with a long sigh, laying back onto the sand. Nano reached up to pat him softly on the head like she was consoling a cat. At least you believe me, young Nano. Nano didn't say anything. Right, 7:15 p.m., Tuesday. Did you tell him? Uraraka asked as soon as they left the beach together, Yagi's tall form long since out of sight. Tell him what? I mean, did you tell Yagi about Uraraka gestured around with her hands? Prophet in my quirk, and then use a reset to redo it, since it didn't work out. No. That was the first time I went through that conversation. Really? You seemed so sure. Did you want to tell him? Izuku asked. No, Uraraka answered firmly. The more I think about it, the less appealing it is. And also, I have a feeling Prophet isn't going to be a simple, legal informant much longer. Watching a news report and then telling someone about it just isn't enough to save everyone you want to, is it? Izuku really couldn't hide anything from her. Yeah, I know wanting to do more as Prophet is selfish and really going into vigilante territory. Izuku confessed. I mean, all I can do is fight kinda well and hack into things. We haven't even gotten into hero school yet. Izuku-kun. Uraraka cut him off. If I can rescue even more people with you, I will. You don't need to convince me. Izuku blinked, stunned, before breaking into a smile. Thanks, Uraraka. In return, she poked him in the chest. Achako. 3:27 p.m., Thursday. Yaga's hand swung down, chopping the air between them. Start. Achako immediately swung straight for his jaw. Achako always fought far more offensively than Izuku did, rushing straight for her opponent with blows and grapples, a complete contrast to Izuku's more careful, analytical attacks. Izuku raised his arm on reflex to block, throwing his own jab at her face in the same instant. Achako didn't stop, instead leaning just out of the way so that his knuckles only grazed her cheek. Her next punch was a little too telegraphed and was caught easily in his palm only for Achako to step around him, grabbing and twisting his arm behind his back. Her grip was tight enough to lock the limb in place despite how careful she was to only use 4 fingers. Gotcha, Achako claimed brightly from behind him. Now, surrender. Izuku brought his free arm to his trapped one, pushing down to counter her hold. Then he suddenly twisted to slam his elbow into her stomach, breaking free as she stumbled back. You're going to have to try harder than that, Izuku teased, lightly. Achako placed her hands on her knees, straightening up again. Her brown eyes flashed. Oh, I will. Achako kicked it up a notch. Her fists lashed out like whips against his arms and shoulders, pushing him back blow by blow on the beach. Izuku stepped out of the way of a roundhouse kick, saving his ankles. She didn't pause, pivoting on her heel and throwing a chop with her momentum. Izuku's favorite red sneakers traced an arc in the sand as he dodged, letting the attack fly by. He went to counter, only for Ochako to stomp hard on his foot, ouch, literally stopping him in his tracks. Both of her palms shot for his face, and Izuku rose his arms to cover it on reflex. But no impact came. A feint, he realized too late. Ochako snapped her leg up, kneeing him in the gut without hesitation. Izuku held back a wince. Payback. Ochako grinned, smug, and tensed her legs to dash in again. This time, Izuku beat her to it. Izuku met her halfway, and her eyes widened. In a fluid motion, he grabbed her fist and turned sharply, his leg sliding to sweep her off her feet. His other hand pushed her shoulder just the right amount, and his opponent flipped over with a yelp. Ochako's back crashed down on the sand, defeated, and Izuku smiled. Gotcha. Ochako crossed her arms, almost pouting. I should have seen that coming. Stupid YouTube throws. Izuku chuckled. YouTube throws? Yagi questioned from where he'd been silently observing. Yeah, I get a lot of my moves from the internet. Yagi blinked. Well, that certainly explains that weird mid-air twisting kick you messed up last week. Ochako snickered, and Izuku's cheeks flushed red. Usually I get good stuff from there. That was a mistake. Clearly, Yagi agreed with a small smile. But then who taught you the rest, and trained you to fight so well? You can't have gotten this skilled through just recollection, no matter how many videos you've watched. Here we go again. I used to go to a dojo. Tanaka-sensei is an amazing teacher, and she can give the instruction that I really can't. That's why I want Ochako to meet her, but I'm not ready. Ochako protested, sitting up. I mean, I've barely been training a few months. She'll totally think I'm terrible. She won't. Izuku interrupted. And even if, when, Ochako corrected, if she does, then that just means she'll have to train you even more. But she'll be disappointed, and you'll look bad for bringing me. And there's no way she'll be disappointed when she sees you, Ochako. Izuku snorted. Izuku-kun, as soon as you started trying I went down instantly. Only because I have a lot more experience than you do. Izuku reminded gently. Remember, young Midoriya is right. Yagi chimed in. For someone who started so recently, you are doing remarkably well in hand-to-hand combat. You're amazing, Ochako. Izuku gave her his hand and she took it, letting him pull her up. Ochako brushed the sand off her legs with a sigh. I guess I've pushed this off far too long, huh? 4:02 p.m., Thursday. Toshinori didn't know much about teenagers if he was being honest, or kids in general. It had been a long, long time since he was one, after all. But it was easy to tell how much potential Midoriya and Uraraka had. They set out to clean the trash-infested Dagaba beach with just the two of them for no reason other than training and community service. They had the drive needed to become truly great heroes, training daily long before they would even get to UA. Toshinori had no doubt that they would pass the exam by a landslide. Midoriya in particular. His quirk analysis was on a professional level, and he knew how to adapt that knowledge as well. And his hand-to-hand combat was already better than most actual heroes, enough for him to be the one teaching his peers. So, Toshinori was pleasantly surprised when Midoriya asked him to tag along, and quite excited to meet the person who taught the boy. He probably made a weird sight on the street, though. A tall, painfully thin man walking next to two teenagers that he looked nothing like. How long have you been learning from this Tanaka-sensei, young Midoriya? Toshinori asked. Midoriya ran a hand through his fluffy hair. A couple of years. She's super good, she could probably even beat you, Yagi-san. Tanaka-sensei's pretty cool. Toshinori could almost hear the respect in the boy's voice. Huh, do you think she'll let me spar with her then, sometime? He didn't fight much in his weaker form. If the time he could use one for all kept decreasing ... it'd be better if he tried practicing more without it. Yeah, though, Yagi-san, for someone with a desk job you're quite excited at the possibility of a fight. Toshinori chuckled. Ah, if only he knew. A desk job at a hero agency, my boy. I can't help but be influenced a little. Midoriya hummed. Fair enough. The dojo was a fairly big wooden building, shouts and voices easily audible as they approached. The inside was all traditional colors and padded with tatami mats. The three of them drew some glances as they walked in before the practicing students went back to what they were doing. All of them were clad in white martial arts uniforms. Then a woman nearly as tall as Toshinori broke away from a group of teenagers to greet them. Her black hair was tied back in a ponytail and her expression held stern as she took them in, only lightening up the slightest bit when her eyes landed on Midoriya. Izuku, the woman greeted. It's been a while. It has, Midoriya agreed, apologetically. Sorry that I haven't been coming to spar very often recently, Tanaka-sensei. She waved him off. Don't worry about it, I can tell you've been training anyway. Who are they? Midoriya gestured at each of them in turn. This is Uraraka, Ochako, and Yagi Toshinori. Guys, meet Tanaka-sensei. It's nice to meet you, Uraraka greeted, and Toshinori nodded to the woman politely. Tanaka nodded back, then glanced to Midoriya. You want me to train the girl? It was more of a statement than a question. Yeah, I've shown her a lot these past few months, and Achako's really talented. She has potential. Achako, huh? Tanaka mused as the mentioned girl blushed at the praise. You've never brought me any of your friends before, Izuku. And who's this guy? Your dad. Toshinori nearly coughed up blood. Ah, no, that is certainly not the case, Tanaka-san. I'm just a friend of young Midoriya and young Uraraka, and wish to meet the dojo sensei I've heard so much about. If she found Midoriya befriending someone decades older than him strange, she didn't show it. I see. Are you going to test me, somehow? Uraraka asked tentatively. Before I'm allowed to join, I mean. Tanaka's hands folded neatly behind her back as she scrutinized the brunette. I do usually have a pre-test of sorts, but it's not an entrance exam. I would let you join my dojo, either way, provided that you've gotten permission from Uraraka's guardians. Which you have, right. A pause. I knew I missed something, Midoriya muttered. Tanaka sighed, almost fond. Of course you did, Izuku. It's not like you have a perfect memory or anything. That's what I always say. Uraraka blurted out. Like, how do you forget something when you have a quirk that remembers everything? He's just so absent-minded, sometimes. Yeah, definitely. I remember one time last week when he was so focused on analyzing a quirk we saw on TV that I couldn't get his attention for a full 30 minutes. Tanaka nodded in sympathy. When he does that, all you can do is wait for him to finish. Wait, that happened? Midoriya asked, tilting his head to find the moment. Oh, sorry, Achako. It's all right, Izuku-kun. It makes sense when you think about it. Toshinori chimed in, amused. All of the space in his mind is filled up with heroes and quirks. The rest's just been shuffled to the side. Come on, I'm not that bad. What do you eat for breakfast yesterday? Achako interrupted. A notable pause. Waffles. Why? Who's the 13th ranked hero in America? Fury, actual name James Clay. His quirk's called Rage. He gets physically enhanced the angrier he is. It's pretty cool in action. Most of his ranking is from his combat prowess and niche fanbase. Blood type A. And at 32 he was diagnosed with actually, that's probably private. Toshinori stared, equal parts terrified and fascinated, as the boy rambled through all kinds of data on a man that most people in Japan probably wouldn't have even heard of. Some of that stuff definitely wasn't on the record. Resolved cases and with very low amounts of property damage despite his general image. Midoriya finally caught himself, looking sheepish. Yeah, I see what you mean, now. Tanaka turned to Uraraka. Get permission from your parents and come see me tomorrow. I'll see what you've got then. We'll be fighting with quirks, so make your preparations. The clear threat only seemed to make Uraraka look more determined. 4:47 p.m., Friday. Uraraka Achako's parents weren't poor, but they weren't exactly rich either. They owned a small construction company that did well, but only because of how hard both her papa and mama worked every single day. Achako wanted to help them. So when Achako got zero gravity and accidentally floated up her toys in that pretty, pink glow, she was so happy. Her parents wouldn't have to worry about heavy lifting or anything. She could make everything so much easier for them. And Achako was smart. She could do all of that annoying business stuff if she tried, easily. Sure, she wouldn't be able to become a rescue hero like 13 and learn to fly up to the stars to save people like she'd always dreamed of. But it'd be worth it. Papa and Mama didn't see it that way. They loved her and cared about that dream even more than she did. So an older Achako made a compromise. She'd become an amazing rescue hero, one of the best, and make more than enough money to give her parents the rich, relaxed life they deserved. Something like those couples in movies, maybe, resting peacefully together in one of those cliché perfect houses. She trained her quirk hard and learned what little fitness and hand-to-hand combat she could without any direction. 2 years before UAS entrance exam, Achako moved into a small apartment in Musutafu to prepare. It was hard at first to live alone, yeah, but she adapted. She called her parents every day on video. Papa and Mama always squished together to appear in the frame of her small phone and seemed to brighten up as soon as they saw her face. She got new gloves, nice, black ones that made her look cool, and friends at her new school. She went on long walks around Musutafu to get used to the place. She got a part-time job at a cafe for a while. It had a nice atmosphere, decent pay, and lots of new people to see every day. Achako definitely wasn't expecting her cafe to be robbed by a dangerous villain, and that dangerous villain to be stopped by a brilliant, green-haired boy her age, and then for that boy to casually lie to a police detective and then reveal that she had a second quirk all these years. Achako's quirk was part of her identity. Who she was, learning that she had another ... took a lot of time to process. But Reset was amazing. Even though she couldn't remember what she erased, she'd probably never tell Izuku just how much she hated that she forgot everything. She had the ability to reverse time. All of the terrible words, moments, tragedies, and deaths she would see as a hero could have happier possibilities if she worked with Izuku. How could she say no? And that eventually led Achako here. willfully heading off to fight a very scary lady after getting parental permission from her confused yet supportive parents. There were no stakes here, she knew. She'll lose against Tanaka badly, hopefully not making Izuku look like too bad of a teacher, and Tanaka would then accept her into the dojo anyway. It didn't actually matter if she impressed Izuku's old sensei or not. But to Ochako, it felt like more than a meaningless pre-test. To her, this was a challenge, a way to prove her strength, quirk, and potential. So when she tugged Izuku aside, she didn't ask him anything about Tanaka's fighting style, her weaknesses, or even her quirk. If he helped her, there wouldn't be any point. Instead, she silently handed him her precious black gloves. She instantly missed them and the comfort they brought, but she knew Izuku would take good care of them. Then Ochako pressed her bare fingertips together, feeling the thrum of energy in her gut. Save, Friday, 4:48 p.m. Now that she set her mind to it, she'd do the best she could. Hey, Izuku-kun, did you bring your notebook? Of course, why? No reason. He glanced at her, eyebrows scrunched up the way he did while trying to figure something out. A second later, Izuku's face faded into understanding, a knowing smile growing across his face as he gave her a small nod. This was the first loop. All right. They caught up to Yagi and walked into the dojo together. It was mostly a haze from there. The tall, imposing figure of Tanaka walked up, clad in a black gi, and Ochako said something before Izuku handled the rest of the talking. And then suddenly she was standing in front of Tanaka again. Just the two of them in the center of the dojo and its huge training mat. There was a big audience of students around them, for some reason, was watching their sensei fight people that funny. The conditions were winning were throwing her opponent out of bounds or knocking her out. She met Tanaka's eyes again and wondered if that was even possible. Start. Izuku called off from the side, and Ochako snapped back to attention. Focus, Ochako. She started running, and her opponent shot forward in the same instant. Ochako made her first move, tapping her clothes and activating zero gravity to make herself lighter. She used the sudden burst in speed to lunge, palms outstretched. If she could just remove Tanaka's gravity, she'd have the advantage. Tanaka's eyes flicked towards her open fingers at that moment, calculating. Then the woman twisted to let Ochako's hands fly past her and grabbed her arm in an iron grip. The world spun, and Ochako's back slammed hard into the tatami mat. So that's where Izuku learned to do that. Luckily, her weight was still reduced. Ochako recovered almost instantly, rolling to her feet just in time to block a powerful roundhouse kick aimed straight at her face. Her arms trembled through her glowing shirt. Tanaka wasn't holding back at all. Ochako let the heavy leg slide off to throw a palm strike, feeling it get batted away instantly. She dashed around to attack Tanaka's blind spot, just like Izuku taught her, but the woman shot a kick behind her without even a glance that made Ochako leap out of range. She didn't give up, using a hook that missed Tanaka completely that suddenly turned into an uppercut that actually did come close to her opponent's jaw. And then Tanaka started to speed up, underestimating her less and less in OF. Tanaka launched into a really cool-looking series of kicks that Ochako would have loved to observe if, they weren't aimed at her. As it was all she could do to defend against the barrage. But she was being easily overwhelmed more and more as the seconds passed. Even though every attack was carefully aimed to avoid Ochako's hands, they came from every angle relentlessly. A front kick snapped through the air by Ochako's face, and her opponent's other foot crashed painfully against her raised arms. She ducked under one jab, then another, but missed the third one flying straight towards her face. Everything went black. 4:56 p.m., Friday. The first thing Ochako saw when she opened her eyes was Izuku. He was looking down at her, fingers tapping a rhythm against the notebook in his hands. Izuku-kun, what happened? Ochako asked, sitting up. Her head hurt a little, but she pushed the feeling away. She was still on a tatami mat, but everybody seemed to have wandered to other parts of the dojo except Izuku. Tanaka-sensei knocked you out. Izuku sighed. It's sort of a rite of passage in a way. She knocks out everyone who joins up with some experience already. She has the skill to do it safely, but yeah. That explained the required parental permission. And the audience. You're officially a student of this dojo now, Ochako, Izuku said, his voice a little softer now. You earned it, and you showed her some of your potential. But you aren't satisfied with just that much, are you? Ochako wordlessly reached out and Izuku handed over his precious notebook, along with a pencil. She took it carefully in her hands, pinkies off the covers, and flipped past his amazing notes to the first open page. And then she began to write. 4:48 p.m., Friday. Now that she set her mind to it, she'd do the best she could. Hey, Izuku-kun, did you bring your notebook? Yeah. Ochako glanced over to see him writing into it in neat, careful strokes. A couple of seconds passed before he handed his precious notebook over to her. She took it carefully in her hands, pinkies off the covers, and flipped past his amazing notes to the first open page. Reset number 1. Hello, past self. This is so cool. It's like I'm making a time capsule but for the past. Tanaka is even faster than I thought. and she hits really hard. I couldn't even make her use her quirk. When you try to float her, she's going to throw you over her shoulder and then aim a vicious kick at your face. I couldn't even figure out how to hit her after that. Good luck. Okay, that sounded terrifying. Her future self was probably exaggerating, though. The dojo sensei would definitely be holding back on her since she wasn't even a student yet. 4:48 p.m., Friday. Now that she set her mind to it, she'd do the best she could. Hey, Izuku-kun, did you bring your notebook? Yeah. Ochako glanced over to see him writing into it in neat, careful strokes. A couple of seconds passed before he handed his precious notebook over to her. She took it carefully in her hands, pinkies off the covers, and flipped past his amazing notes to the first open page. Reset number 2. Hello, past self. This is so cool, it's like we're in a relay race. Tanaka is even faster than we thought, and hits really hard. No, we are not exaggerating. My arms hurt. I couldn't even make her use her quirk. When you try to float her, she's going to throw you over her shoulder and then aim a vicious kick. I know what you're thinking, just grab onto her leg. Nope, she sees it coming and dodges. I couldn't even figure out how to hit her after that. That was fewer exclamation points than Ochako would have expected from a letter to herself. She must have expected that try to go far better and been disappointed. Poor Ochako was pitying a future version of herself. Self-pity. Anyway, it sounded like that first lunge was a bad idea. She should make that a feint instead. Tanaka should be expecting that less. 4:48 p.m., Friday. Reset number 4. Hello, past self. This is so cool, it's like we're in a relay race. Tanaka hits really hard. Don't try to take her hits head on. She's fast, graceful, like Izuku-kun. In reset number 3, we apparently tried a feint and she immediately caught on and threw me over her shoulder. I tried going for a different feint, but then she saw through that one, too. So no longer how we make the first palm strike. We're getting thrown over her shoulder. I think you should work from that. As soon as you hit the mat, she's going to try to kick you. Don't try to grab it, roll to the side. Instead of what comes as instinct in that spot, another palm strike, go for a leg sweep. This probably isn't going to land, but you'll know how she reacts at least. That sequence of attacks, when she speeds up, you need to watch out for the jabs. I couldn't make her use her quirk. It sounded like Tanaka figured out zero gravity in just an instant. Well, no wonder the note was telling her to vary it up. More kicks. 4:48 p.m., Friday. Reset number 5. Hello, past self. This is so cool, it's like we're in a relay race. Tanaka hits really hard. Don't try to take her hits head on. She's fast, graceful, like Izuku-kun. This didn't happen to me, but if you get thrown over her shoulder, she's gonna try to kick you. Don't try to grab it, roll to the side. New plan, try to hide your quirk until the right moment. So don't use it on your clothes. I know this'll make you slower, but trust me, I am literally you. Start off with a leg sweep. She's going to do this epic jump kick thing that you're gonna duck under. And then she's gonna aim this punch at your face. I did not dodge that punch. You should. You need to watch for the cool kicks and then for her jabs. You see an opening and try to get her with the palm strike. It's too obvious, and we suffer for it. I couldn't make her use her quirk, but I found a weakness. She is still underestimating us, despite what you think. So when you go for that second opening you see, put everything you have into it. Good luck. Ochako bit her lip. 5 whole fights that she didn't remember, and she still didn't even have her opponent's quirk. But she still had plenty of precious thoughts and ideas to use. She met Izuku's eyes, beautiful emerald green, calmly watching her think. He must have seen her fight Tanaka 5 times already, but he was still here to pass on the little information 5 Ochakos had managed to obtain. She had the support of 5 Uraraka Ochakos and 1 Midoriya Izuku, and that gave Ochako a new burst of confidence. Let's try out this plan. 4:48 p.m., Friday. Hey, Izuku-kun, did you bring your notebook? Yeah. Ochako glanced over to see him writing into it in neat, careful strokes, pencil quietly transcribing a long message. A full minute passed before he handed his precious notebook over to her. She took it carefully in her hands, pinkies off the covers, and flipped past his amazing notes to the first open page. There was an entire letter written there, nearly taking up all of the given lines. Reset number 8. Hello, past self. This is so cool, it's like we're in a relay race. Tanaka hits really hard. Don't try to take her hits head on. She's fast, graceful, like Izuku-kun. We got her to use her quirk on reset number 6 for the first time. I carefully hid zero gravity for a while, then struck and hit her. Tanaka started to float and was surprised enough that I could push her towards the boundary. But then, the dojo mat suddenly rose up to wrap around her like an anchor. On number 6, we were so surprised that we got blindsided by a huge mass of floor. Ouch, it's some kind of cotton manipulation or whatever tatami mats are made of. And to a scary extent. Once you get her to use it, you need to start dodging. This is going to be a lot to remember, I know. It's a lot to write, even, but you got to. Don't use your quirk or any palm strikes until the right moment. Start off with a leg sweep. She's going to do this epic jump kick thing that you're gonna duck under. And then she's gonna aim this punch at your face. If you time it just right, you can catch it and land zero gravity. Do the throw. Don't get thrown yourself. But if you do, she's gonna try to kick you right after. Don't try to grab it. Instead, roll to the side and create distance. You need to watch for the cool kicks and then the jabs that come right after. As I said, you need to strike her in that second opening with all you've got. She was near the edge by then, so the float and push nearly got her out. Then she anchors down with her tatami quirk, and the floor becomes your enemy. Memorize this, okay. Left, left, down, right, jump, down, duck. That's where I got knocked out. And remember, you've got 8 Ochakos supporting you. And 1 Izuku, even if he's trying to hide how much he's rooting for us to stay as neutral. Yes, Izuku, you need to copy this part too. Good luck. Ochako stared at the letter in her hands in awe. Whoa, there was so much information there to make sense of. All of those different sequences of events. Her original win plan with zero gravity and Tanaka's quirk itself. This would be so much easier if she could directly remember things like Izuku could. But she'd clearly made so much progress with just her own efforts. Step by step, reset by reset. And now it was time to see what she could do with it. Ochako walked into the dojo, Izuku and Yagi close behind her. The tall, imposing figure of Tanaka walked over to them, pitch black eyes completely focused on Ochako today. But wait, there was enough to make a villain tremble. Scary. Are you ready, Uraraka? Tanaka asked. But Ochako had this. Ochako nodded, determined. Yep. Tanaka led her over to the huge training mat near the center. There was a large audience around them of students that she ignored completely. The spar ends on knockout. Or if one of us gets thrown out of bounds. Tanaka intoned, voice low yet carrying all the way to Ochako easily. Izuku, call it. Izuku jogged over to the side, offering her a small smile as he passed. Sure, Tanaka-sensei. Are both of you ready? All right, start. Ochako started running, her fists clenching in anticipation, and her opponent shot forward in the same instant. Ochako made the first move, sweeping her leg low. Tanaka leaped up effortlessly for an aerial kick that was completely useless since Ochako had already dropped low to avoid it. Ochako then raised her arms to catch the incoming punch, all 5 fingers wrapping around the arm. Gotcha. She twisted as Tanaka's body started to glow pink, easily swinging the weightless adult up in an arc over her shoulder before slamming her down into the dojo's tatami mat. Then she jumped back and hurriedly released her quirk, not giving Tanaka any time to realize the nature of her ability. Tanaka rose back up easily, eyes narrowed and reassessing. Ochako definitely wouldn't get any more free hits. She raised her arms just in time to block a speeding roundhouse kick, arms trembling through her shirt. Tanaka wasn't holding back at all. Ochako let the heavy leg slide off her to throw a punch, feeling it get batted away instantly. She dashed around to attack Tanaka's blind spot, just like Izuku taught her, but the woman shot a kick behind her without even a glance. Ochako launched an uppercut at her face and it was caught a moment before impact. Black fabric brushing against her hand. Ochako's fists flew as she frantically tried to make an opening. Tanaka was underestimating her less and less the longer they fought, which was what she wanted. But that didn't make things any less terrifying. Then the foretold cool kicks came and Ochako carefully weaved through them with all of her concentration. A front kick snapped by Ochako's face. And then came lightning-fast jabs. 1, 2, and then the hidden third one she already knew was coming. Tanaka seemed surprised that she'd dodged it. Ochako saw an opening and almost went for it, hurriedly remembering her future self's warning. She let it flicker by instead, continuing to watch and calculate like Izuku would. Tanaka slowly backed up from Ochako's assault until she was near the edge, on the defensive but still in control. She wasn't even sweating yet, calmly deflecting every strike headed her way with a natural ease that told Ochako she'd settled in for a long spar. Izuku's training had increased Ochako's stamina tons, but she wouldn't last nearly as long as the woman would. No matter how determined she was, she'd lose a battle of endurance. But another, bigger benefit of training with Izuku was that his movements were almost perfect because of his quirk. He rarely ever made any mistakes in form, in his kicks or punches. Other people weren't Izuku. Tanaka overextended just a little on her next punch and Ochako lunged. Her palm stuck Tanaka's side and zero gravity activated. Without pause, the brunette pushed her opponent towards the mat's boundary. And then the tatami mat suddenly bent unnaturally, reaching up to catch their master. They anchored the now weightless woman to the arena, wrapping around her feet like robed sandals. That's not really fair, is it? Ochako complained. Reading about it was one thing, but whoa, what a quirk. Before she could react, the floor suddenly rose up, rolling towards her like green ocean waves. Ochako was tossed into the air and launched back before finally hitting the ground face first. Oh, the floor becomes your enemy. She needed to get all the way over to Tanaka without being yeeted out of bounds by that powerful, ranged quirk. There was no way Ochako could do that normally. But luckily, there was one more trick left in her personal strategy guide. Left. Ochako blindly rushed forward before curving to the left. Green mats flying past her face. Left. Ochako dove to the side, a wave of tatami crashing over the arena. Down. Tanaka could form the floor into shapes too. A large fist sailed over Ochako's head as she ducked, close enough to ruffle her hair. And then ... What was next again? The mat suddenly rose up, slamming into Ochako's right side and nearly knocking her over. Despite being soft tatami mats, they were moving fast enough to hurt. Jump. Ochako tapped herself and kicked off the evil ground, taking to the air to dodge pillars. And wasn't that a weird sight to see? The floor's designs all curled into the cylinders. She forced down the nausea that came with floating herself, already moving into the next instruction. Down. Release. The tatami shaped into hands and reached up to grab her as Ochako pressed her fingertips together, dropping into a roll to avoid them. She rose up to her feet mere meters away from her opponent, Tanaka's black eyes now wide. The green tatami shot forward in multiple thin, blunt spikes. Ochako ducked, feeling them just barely miss her body, now finally in range. Oshao, and slammed her fist into Tanaka's jaw, whipping her face to the side with a satisfying crack. The world held still for a moment, the dojo completely silent except for Ochako's tired, panting breaths. She did it. She actually managed to hit her. Tanaka turned her head back to Ochako, her calloused hands slowly rising up to her face. Then she smiled. That was a great punch, Uraraka. Ochako beamed. Thanks, Tanaka-sensei. She'd impressed someone this strong, someone who taught Izuku, and with nothing but her own body, mind, and quirks. Though, I'm still in bounds. Tanaka-sensei's foot tapped the mat below her. Ochako raised her aching arms up and took a step forward ... only for her legs to give out. She fell to her knees with a huff, completely spent. And you can barely move. So, what now? That was a very good question. I surrender. Ochako tried. Tanaka hummed, considering. 4:59 p.m., Friday. The first thing Ochako saw when she opened her eyes was Izuku. He was looking down at her, fingers tapping a rhythm against his knees. Izuku-kun, what happened? Ochako asked, sitting up. Her head hurt a little, but she pushed the feeling away. She was still on a tatami mat, but everybody seemed to have wandered to other parts of the dojo except Izuku. Tanaka-sensei knocked you out. Izuku sighed. Even though you'd surrendered already. It's a rite of passage in a way. She knocks out everyone who joins the dojo with some kind of experience. That explained the required parental permission. And the audience. But you're officially a student of this dojo now, Ochako, Izuku said, his voice a little softer now. You were incredible back there. No one's ever landed a hit on Tanaka-sensei on their first try before, you know. Well, I did cheat a little. Izuku chuckled. Maybe. But you were just using your quirk, exactly like she was. That reminded her. Hold on, Izuku-kun. Are you okay? Yeah, why wouldn't I be? I used reset a whole 8 times. I made you live through this fight for so long just to pass me my notes. I'm so selfish. No, you aren't. Izuku cut her off. I was fully on board with this, just like you often agreed to help me with reset. Today we agreed to help you with it. Izuku smiled. A 10-minute loop isn't much to me. And this one was so fun. I watched you fight Tanaka-sensei 8 times, getting more clever, more intuitive with every reset, willing to do better the next time. You really are amazing. Ochako, I told you she'd never be disappointed. He made her sound so cool, even though she must have been fumbling blind, struggling to get every little piece of information she'd gotten. Ochako couldn't help but smile back, warm. I guess you did, Izuku-kun. Can I see those memories with you later? Sure. 6:26 p.m., Sare. What was the most powerful quirk in existence? When 80% of the population had superpowers, it was natural to wonder which one was the strongest. The most common answer you'd get in Japan would be All Might's quirk, despite the fact that no one actually knew what his awe-inspiring power was. The rest of the world was full of amazing abilities as well, like America's New Order in flight. Nearly all of them belonged to popular, incredible heroes or renowned, terrible villains. But now, well, the most powerful quirk Izuku knew of belonged to the girl on the floor next to him, cluelessly peering up at the textbook in her hands. Reset allowed the user to infinitely loop back in time as long as they had a save point. Even short-term time travel was incredible, capable of reversing any negative effects and creating endless loops to test solution. Everyone, heroes, villains, and maybe even vigilantes would kill to get their hands on Ochako if they found out about her secret quirk. Maybe the Hero Commission would be more subtle about it, but Izuku had zero illusions about their morality. If they found out about the literal time machine in Musutafu, there was no way they'd just leave her alone. Izuku worried. Ochako lived alone and set a save every morning. If she got attacked by a villain, he'd have only hours to do anything about it. He'd have infinite tries within that time frame. Yes, and Ochako definitely wasn't defenseless herself, but there was only so much two teenagers could do. And anything before the save was set in stone. Prophet was a red herring, an informant identity with the attention-grabbing gift of seeing the future. It also served as a cover for moves made with future knowledge. But right now, Prophet's identity was protected by nothing more than the limited cybersecurity Izuku had set up to break into the nearby police station. He needed to fix that. He thought of the way he'd asked her if they could do more a few days ago, imagining taking down small criminal organizations with the power of time travel, hacking, and a direct line to the police. All the people Prophet could help before Izuku and Ochako earned their hero licenses. They could still do that, but Ochako's safety needed to be his first priority. Izuku could set up contingencies and find ways to make their resets more effective. Izuku certainly knew how to work around different types of quirks from years of analysis. They especially couldn't afford to be blindsided by information-based quirks like Tsukachi's. At the very least, Ochako's zero gravity would convince almost anyone that she didn't also have a second, far more useful quirk. A soft thump broke him out of his thoughts. Izuku glanced over to see the textbook fall onto Ochako's face, her muffled sigh carrying through the hardcover. Izuku-kun, this is so boring. Ochako whined. Why are we studying this much? We're not even taking UAS exam for another year. Anyway. Izuku pushed a smile onto his face, even though she currently couldn't see him. It'll be easier if we start preparing now. You don't want to cram everything into the last week now, do you? Huff. Easy for you to say. You could probably take and ace the written exam right now, even without your perfect memory. I don't think so. UAS principal made that test and he's like one of the smartest beings on the planet. He reached over to lift the textbook off her face, revealing warm brown eyes and pouting round cheeks. That's fair, Ochako acknowledged. I kinda wonder how they even prepare these tests, too. I mean, this one guy in my class can send telepathic messages to whoever he wants. How'd you catch him if he tried to cheat? Izuku flipped through the pages aimlessly. Well, is the communication one way? Or can he read minds, too? I'm pretty sure he can only give messages, not receive any. Does his quirk have any visible effects? Nope. Then you'd probably have to isolate him from the rest of the testers. Izuku hummed, the familiar topic of quirks easing his mind. I bet UA has to make accommodations like that for a lot of students. From what he'd heard, that school definitely had the budget to do so. Cheating on that exam is a terrible idea. Anyway, Ochako mused. Actual pro heroes will be watching you at all times, and if you get kicked out ... boom, it's over. Yeah, anyone who thinks they can sneak something past Eraserhead is an idiot. Who? Ochako asked. Eraserhead. Who? Izuku gasped, horrified. Are you telling me that I haven't shown you Eraserhead? This mistake must be rectified immediately. Wait, how is his scarf floating? I thought you said his quirk was. Exactly. On screen, a figure clad in black skillfully took down a gang of villains by himself. He didn't seem to have any recognizable quirk until you focused on his glowing red eyes. Fists at him from every direction, none of them even coming close, but when the man attacked, enemies fell with every calculated blow. The less brave villains tried to run only to be ensnared by a flash of gray that yanked them back. Whoa, cool, right. Yeah, he really is. Ochako agreed. I deem him like fourth coolest hero. What, fourth? Izuku repeated, incredulous. No way. Who's after All Might in 13? It's 13 and All Might, Ochako corrected. And third goes to Edgeshot, obviously. I mean, have you seen that man? But Izuku waved his hands at the screen. Eraserhead. Can Eraserhead twist himself into a massive web to knock out enemies and rescue civilians at the same time? No, that's what I thought. Eraserhead can erase overpowered quirks with just a glance. Edgeshot can fly. Eraserhead has more skill. No arg, true. But Edgeshot has a hat and a ninja mask. But does he have a cool scarf, Ochako? Edgeshot's an actual ninja, Izuku-kun. A ninja. Well, Eraserhead feeds stray cats. A pause. Does he really? Yeah, I got this video off a street camera. Give. 5:12 p.m. Monday. As Izuku expected, Tanaka-sensei pulled them aside the second they stepped into the dojo. They got a few curious looks from the other students as the tall woman all but dragged the two of them over to a private corner, an unbreakable grip on their shoulders. Uraraka, what is your quirk, exactly? Tanaka asked, straight to the point. It's called zero gravity. Ochako let her fingertips hover an inch apart. I can float things that I touch with all 5 fingers. Tanaka nodded. A useful quirk. But there's more to it, correct? Ochako glanced at Izuku, and he nodded subtly. Tanaka caught the movement, black eyes narrowing further. Izuku trusted his old teacher. Yeah, I can see hints of the future, sometimes. Ochako lied. It's like a vision, almost. I have no control over it. It's really weird that the foresight aspect has no relation to gravity manipulation. Izuku shrugged. We're still trying to figure out everything about it. Izuku trusted his old teacher, but this was still something they could only afford to tell half of the truth on. Well, Tanaka said, that explains the precognition. Ochako winced. Was I that obvious? Not especially. Your reflexes are good. And Izuku has clearly trained you decently enough. But knowing exactly how little combat experience you have, it was suspicious that you could perfectly read some of my movements ... yet completely miss the others. Oh, I doubt anyone else will catch on as long as you're careful. It's good that you two are keeping this a secret. That said, you didn't see this conversation in a vision, right? No, why? Tanaka smiled, sending shivers down both of their spines. Then fight me again, Uraraka. Without your foresight. Ochako turned to him, her eyes wide in terror, but there was nothing Izuku could do but place a sympathetic hand on her shoulder. Good luck, Ok. You're up afterward, Izuku. 3:41 p.m., Sunday. A plain of white, flat sand stretched out in front of them until it met the endless, deep blue ocean. The sun rose over the horizon, tangible sunlight dancing over the water. Not a single piece of trash was left. Izuku laid back on the beach, head resting on folded hands as he burned the image into his memory. Ochako was beside him, her eyes wide in wonder. This was totally worth it. Izuku grinned, smug. I told you it'd be, didn't I? You did, Ochako agreed. I guess you can be right sometimes. Only sometimes, huh? MHM. He took in the Ochako next to him, comparing her to the girl he'd seen that day in the cafe with his perfect memory, seeing the small increase in height, the higher held shoulders, the brighter light present in her eyes. Izuku smiled up at the sky. I think I'm right a little more often than that. 7:20 p.m., Thursday. Now that the beach was clean, other people actually came to hang out there, relaxing and swimming together among the calm waves. He was glad to see his community happy, though he also couldn't help but feel the loss of their secret spot. Izuku and Ochako's super long project was finally complete. This freed up lots of time from the schedule they'd been committed to for the past few months. Ochako seemed to love training at the dojo despite the more varied and tougher workout Tanaka put her through. It was also a great thing that she now had more sparring partners than just Izuku, giving her a better training experience. The rest of the dojo students took well to her in turn, impressed with the newbie's skills. She could already give a lot of them a run for their money with and without her quirks. The other thing the two of them used their newfound time for, though, was a little less legal. Nano yawned outside of her shrine, stretching her arms up above her head. The bed of stray cats below her shifted with the movement, readjusting to pull her back into the deep realm of sleep. Izuku's voice brought her back just in time. Did you get anything on that woman I showed you, Nano-san? That. A few cats have seen hints of that weird silver human within the past few days, all around the city. Did you find out where she lives? Oh, that sounds really bad. Ochako grimaced. The villain in question was a young woman of average build with long, gray hair. She wasn't a huge deal but had a couple of cases of quirk-assisted robbery already and was doing a pretty good job evading the police. Because of how the villain's hair manipulation quirk was stated to work, Izuku was simply calling her needle hair for now. Izuku thought she'd be a good first villain to tackle as Prophet, not that they were going to do any actual tackling. Of course, that'd be vigilantism. Instead, they were just going to gain information on the villain and hand it to the police, by showing Nano what she looked like and then spying on her with cats. Izuku shrugged. I mean, we don't have anything to go on except what she looks like. If we want to help catch her, this is really the best way. I don't mind, Nano said. I trust that this is an actual criminal. And I'm not really doing anything here but remembering things my wonderful cats have seen. She was at the park near UA for a while this morning, writing something. Melon sunbathes there most of the day. Why don't we reset and then have Melon follow her around today? Ochako suggested. I mean, being tailed by a cat won't be too suspicious. But what if she attacks him? Nano asked, a distinct hint of worry in her usually bland voice. She won't attack some random cat, especially not in public, Izuku assured. Well, alright. Tell me to tell him to be careful though, just in case. I mean, you'll probably do that anyway, Ochako said, pressing her fingertips together. One more thing, Nano added quickly. Midoriya-kun, I thought of this hilarious joke today that you need to tell my past self. Why don't cats? 6:46 a.m., Thursday. Play poker in the jungle? Izuku asked. Nano tilted her head. Why? Because there are too many cheetahs. The two girls just stared at him blankly. Midoriya-san, that's the worst joke I've ever heard. I've never wanted to erase my own memory more. Wa Nano-san, you're the one who thought of that joke. Izuku sputtered indignantly. Nano looked doubtful. Are you sure? I'd like to think I have far better humor than that. See, clearly, you don't. It's okay, Izuku-kun, Ochako said. There's no need to pass off your own joke like that. I mean, it wasn't completely terrible. Really, that wasn't my joke. 5:01 p.m., Thursday. The call arrived as scheduled, and Naomasa picked it up on the first ring. Hello, a cheerful female voice sounded throughout the meeting room. Hey, Tsukachi, I got some extra info for you today. It's been a while since your last call, Prophet, Naomasa mused. Some of us believed you quit the whole informant thing. Nope, that's not happening anytime soon. Just why did those words have to register as truth? I foresaw an attack by some kind of ice villain at like 6:20 p.m. He didn't really seem to have a goal, and personally, I think he just wanted attention. Kamui Wood stopped him pretty quick, but I figured I'd warn you anyway. I see, thanks for that, but you should still be careful. Prophet rolled right over him. I also found where Needle Hair lives, and what she's up to. Needle Hair, Prophet chuckled. It's a nickname. You know, young woman, average build, long gray hair that has a really cool texture cause of her hair manipulation quirk. Naomasa exchanged a wide-eyed glance with Sansa. That description exactly matched one of the criminals they were currently searching for. So you go searching for villains now, too? Naomasa asked. Yep, Prophet replied. I'm branching out a little, you see, kicking it up a notch. Prophet happily told him the details of both incidents and then hung up on Naomasa with a light farewell. Naomasa set his phone down. So, the signal is still completely untraceable, sir, Sansa reported. I can't get a hint of anything, much less a location. Naomasa sighed. Yeah, figures. They clearly don't want to be found. At least they called when you foresaw, Night-Eye. Sir Night-Eye nodded. Yes, that use of my quirk certainly paid off, though I'm unable to hear what's actually occurring in your future calls with this informant. From my analysis of Prophet's past tips, most of their information seems to be from collected news reports. Big, easily found details of events that usually come to fruition a mere day after the prediction. But interestingly enough, they've broken this established pattern today. The info we were given on Needle Hair is precise and overall extraordinarily useful. Prophet understands that capturing a villain is different from actively catching them in the middle of an incident. It requires more than just what they could see on the news. Naomasa's eyes widened. Prophet's quirk must be able to see other people's futures, just like foresight. That explains how they have such in-depth knowledge on Needle Hair and her movements. Correct. Night-Eye pushed up his glasses. How utterly fascinating. I've never met anyone with a quirk similar to mine before. I can't wait to meet this Prophet. You and me both, man. 3:07 p.m., Wednesday. Now that you'll all be graduating soon, it's time to decide what you're going to be doing in the future. Izuku tuned back in to see his teacher waving a set of papers in the air, droning on about something actually important for once. The school you're going to apply for is a big decision ... but I bet you're all going into heroics. Sensei, I kinda want to be a doctor. Most of you are going into heroics. Why was this man even a teacher? Izuku couldn't help but wonder. The class cheered in response, proudly showing off their quirks. Hands turned to rock, hair extended up to the ceiling, fire blazed into the air and eyeballs jutted out of their sockets. To Izuku, it was disappointing. He'd analyzed every uniquely fascinating quirk in this room months ago, including their uses and potential. It was painfully obvious that almost none of them put the work in to train their bodies in quirks to push themselves to become a hero. To Katsuki, well, an explosive palm smashed through wood, crumpling his poor desk like paper. Katsuki stood up with a fierce scowl, his chair screeching back against the floor. You weak-ass extras are batshit if you think you're getting into a hero course like me. Look at all of those little twig arms and pathetic quirks. None of you stand a effing chance. The room burst into loud protests. You don't believe me? Ha! Katsuki scoffed. Then try it. Apply to UA and see if any of you can even get close to me on the exam. Izuku replayed the scene in his memories as he walked home. Katsuki's small yet controlled burst of fire and force. His explosions were far better than the last time Izuku saw them. The blonde must be training hard. And that challenge, Katsuki had glared directly at Izuku as he said it, red eyes burning into green ones. Was the blonde trying to see if their fight had been a fluke? Or did he see Izuku as a rival now? Izuku pondered over it as he took his usual shortcut, deftly curving through small alleys and roads on an unconventional yet efficient path. It was easy to navigate a city when you had every route practically downloaded into your brain. He stepped into a small tunnel, immediately scrunching up his nose at the absolutely horrible smell. Izuku was, unfortunately, already quite familiar with the odor of garbage at this point, but this was somehow even worse than that, like something had just died in a pit of raw sewer. A huge mass of sickly brown-green lunged out of the shadows. Izuku dove to the side just in time to dodge the sudden attack, palms grazing the ground as he rolled to his feet. He looked back to see sludge take shape, growing and growing into something tall enough to reach the tunnel's ceiling. It had a writhing, oozing form that made Izuku automatically shrink back. And at the top of the creature was a murky face with grinning teeth and two floating, yellow eyes. Put simply, it was the most terrifying thing Izuku had ever seen. Holy shit. It cackled maliciously, slimy tentacles slithering out of its skin. That's not very nice, kid. Now, hold still so I can steal your body. Izuku did not hold still. His favorite red sneakers pounded against the pavement as he turned and sprinted for the tunnel's exit, sunlight shining through the semicircle. Oi, oi, where are you going? I need you, kid. In a blink, the villain was in front of Izuku once again, easily covering the exit with his huge size. Why do you need my body? Izuku asked, proud of how firm his voice held. The slime cackled again. Izuku really hated that sound. Cause I need a disguise, dumbass. And your small skin suit will do just fine. Izuku leaped back, disgusting tendrils just barely missing his face. Clumps of murky green continued to swing at him from every angle, slapping against the tunnel's walls as he dodged them. A mutant or transformation quirk that caused the entire user's body to consist of this green sludge. But the villain was seeing and talking fine, meaning that every organ worked normally despite the quirk's effects. The slime could be manipulated to strike in a large variety of ways, this effectiveness only increasing in tight spaces. Izuku carefully watched the villain form every one of his strange arms and tentacles, predicting where the attack would strike before weaving to avoid it. It was a frantic blur of analysis and movement, fists sailing past him and whips grabbing at nothing but air. Stop dodging, the villain demanded. But dodging was all Izuku could do, even as he started to tire. He couldn't run away, and he couldn't even fight back since physical attacks were useless against an enemy completely made of slime. He spent a spare second glancing up at the villain's creepy, exposed eyes. Maybe not completely. Izuku hit the ground in a roll, muddy mass flying over his head, and unslung his backpack in a fluid movement. He pulled something out of the top pouch before swinging the bag with all of his might. The villain easily brushed the yellow bag aside. What was that supposed to? Izuku stabbed a pencil into his eye. The slime cut himself off with a roar of pure pain, his molded form spasming at the lapse in concentration. Izuku gritted his teeth, raising his other pencil. A huge amount of sludge rose up like a tidal wave, slamming Izuku against the wall hard enough to knock the breath out of his lungs with a painful hiss. The pencil fell out of his hands and clattered to the floor as slime held him in a firm, unbreakable grip. I can't believe you effing stabbed my eye, you little sit. Oh, I'm going to make this hurt. Izuku struggled uselessly at his bonds. He couldn't break free, he couldn't move, he couldn't do anything. Was this really it? It's fine now. An unmistakable voice boomed in Izuku's ears. The villain's remaining eye widened in fear. Why? A single punch was thrown faster than either of them could process, sweeping wind through the tunnel like a hurricane and splattering every single bit of slimy villain against the opposite wall. Because I am here. Izuku landed on shaky knees, staring at the ground and panting hard. His heart pounded painfully against his chest, short breaths just not seeming to give him enough air. A large, comforting hand landed on his shoulder, grounding him. Breath steady now, my young boy. And out. You're okay, you're safe. Izuku leaned into the touch and listened, feeling the urge to vomit gradually recede until he could push himself to his feet to look up at his savior. His eyes widened as he took in All Might himself, standing tall in his iconic red, blue, and yellow. In the hero's right hand was a bottle filled with slime the villain already captured. Oh my god, Izuku breathed, taking a million mental screenshots. All Might was really here, in the flesh. This was the best day ever. Well, besides the fact that he'd almost died 2 seconds ago, and that he still wanted to violently throw up his lunch. But this almost made it all worth it. All Might chuckled. Hello to you too, young boy. Are you feeling all right? That was quite the nasty encounter you just had. All Might was talking to Izuku. To Izuku. Why yeah, I'm fine. Izuku stuttered into a respectful bow. I just dodged the slimy stuff for a while and that last hit knocked the wind out of me. Thank you so much for saving me. All Might-sama. Powerful blue eyes twinkled. No need for all of that, I was simply doing my job. Oh, okay. By the way, I know you're probably super busy and everything, but before you go, can I please have 2 autographs? Izuku said hurriedly, flipping to an open page in his notebook. All Might raised a noble eyebrow. 2. Izuku nodded with his entire body, barely functioning. Why yeah. Oh, 1 for Miyama, Izuku, and another for Achako. Oh, I totally need to show her this memory, man. I've never been so happy to have this quirk before. All Might signed both pages with a bright grin, clearly used to dying fans. Here you go. Good luck, and I wish both you and your girlfriend success in your future endeavors. Thank you, Izuku's face blushed even redder than before. Wait, no, we're not dating. Izuku could have sworn he saw All Might grin wider, for some reason. And now I must be off, criminals and cases await. Goodbye, young boy. With that, the symbol of peace dashed away in a blur, leaving his biggest fan to stare after him in awe. 7:34 p.m., Wednesday. Mom, Izuku said with all the seriousness he could muster. I love you. He took another bite of precious, heavenly goodness, savoring its blissful taste. Inko rolled her eyes fondly. You say that every time I make katsudon, sweetie. Well yeah, because it's always this good. Achako nodded vehemently in agreement, her eyes bright and her own plate almost empty already. Oh yeah, I wanted to tell you both something, Izuku remembered, swallowing down another mouthful. I kinda got attacked by a villain earlier. Achako's eyes widened. You what? Inko exclaimed. Are you okay, Izuku? What happened? When was this? I'm not hurt at all, Mom. Don't worry, Izuku reassured her with a wide grin. I actually got saved by a hero before anything happened, and you'll never guess who it was. Kamui Woods, Achako guessed, her concern fading a little at his excitement. Backdraft, Eraserhead. Even better. Izuku beamed at her, holding up his newly signed notebook for her to see. Achako stared at it blankly. No way. Yep. There's no way. Yep. You met All Might, Inko said, stunned. Wow, that's incredible, Izuku. What was he like? He's even more amazing in person. Izuku beamed. He took out the villain in just a punch, and he was so tall I had to tilt my head back just to see him. He's also really kind and stayed there to help Izuku through the sudden, rising panic that set in as soon as the fight's adrenaline faded away and he was left with the realization that he'd almost just died, and that the memory was now permanently engraved in his mind. Izuku definitely couldn't say that. Patiently wrote me 2 different autographs, even though he must be super busy and everything. He quickly finished instead, forcing the memory away to focus on Achako. Wait, 2. Izuku handed over his notebook. Achako blinked slowly, taking it with 8 fingers and carefully tearing out her autograph. All Might's note to her was written in huge text, bold letters nearly taking up an entire page. I wish you luck in pursuing your dreams, young Achako. Go beyond your limits. Plus Ultra. You asked him to write one for me, Achako whispered, dumbfounded. Well, yeah, of course I did. Achako hugged him hard. Thank you. You're welcome. Izuku smiled, though it quickly turned into a wince. Okay, well you're strong now. I think my back just cracked. Achako pulled back, brown hair tickling his face. Sorry, I guess I don't know my strength anymore. Oh my god. You're amazing. This is literally the best gift ever. I don't know how you even remembered me while talking to the actual symbol of peace. Izuku-kun, I can't ever give you something this good. Izuku laughed, warm. Remembering stuff is my entire thing, you know. Besides, I'd never forget you. You don't need to get me anything. Brown eyes narrowed on him expectantly, clearly not taking that as an answer. Well, Izuku considered it. I guess that if you ever, meet 13 you could ... get me an autograph from her. Achako nodded, determined. Deal. 4:02 p.m., Thursday. In hindsight, it was obvious. After drifting through another monotonous school day, Izuku went to meet up with Yagi and Achako for training. He saw an unmistakable tall blonde figure and walked up, noting that Achako was running late. Izuku opened his mouth. Hey, Yagi. Yagi turned to face him, powerful blue eyes widening slightly in recognition. Oh, Toshinori. Yagi was All Might. A millisecond later, Izuku's mind screeched to a halt at its own conclusion. What? That didn't make any sense. Despite Yagi's weak build, his reflexes were fast and his eyes sharp. He moved like he was used to having much higher mass, likely because he'd lost weight from his injury, but it barely left any openings. Well, how do I put this? Yagi said. All Might is exactly the same as you would imagine. He's bold, loud, and tries to make everyone feel safe. He's also very, very busy. You're telling me your ex is Sir Night-Eye? Izuku exclaimed, hands flying to his mouth. Oh my god, I can't believe I know someone who's dated him. A large, comforting hand fell on his shoulder. Breath steady now, my young boy. In ... and out. You're okay, you're safe. In hindsight, it was incredibly obvious, but that was exactly what made the fact so well hidden, wasn't it? No matter how many similarities you might passingly note between Yagi and All Might in appearance, the idea of someone not larger than life and lacking the sheer power and presence of the symbol of peace being All Might just seemed impossible. But now that Izuku had the chance to actually meet both of them, to compare their bodies, speech patterns, and movements, young Midoriya is everything all right. After all these years, I finally figured out what your quirk is, All Might-san, Izuku said quietly. Yagi froze in place, leaving the empty beach silent save for the crashing waves. An emitter-like transformation ability that bulks you up while in use. So much so that you're almost a completely different person. It gives you seemingly limitless strength and speed, seeming to work similarly to stockpile quirks. As All Might, you can stop trains, create tornadoes with just a fist, catch bullets with your hands, and carry hundreds of people out of a burning building within a minute. But without your quirk, all that muscle and power vanishes like smoke. Yagi can't do any of those things. Though he can still throw a pretty strong punch. You're terribly injured and far more quietly thoughtful, so much so that anyone would doubt that you're really ... well, you. But you are still you. All Might is Toshinori Yagi. And Toshinori Yagi is All Might. A long pause. Yagi slowly straightened up to his full, impressive height, back cracking at the motion, and checked the surroundings for passers-by. He found none. He transformed, and All Might was suddenly standing in front of Izuku, arms above his shoulders in his signature pose and muscles straining against Yaga's baggy clothing. 5 seconds later the form dropped and he was Yagi once more. The greatest hero chuckled, genuine. You're completely correct, young Midoriya. I honestly doubted I could hide this from you forever, with how amazingly observant you are. Do you wish to hear the details? Izuku nodded. My quirk is called One for All, Yagi began. It's a strong stockpile quirk, as you said, that grants me pure power. But it is also a sacred torch, you see. One for All is a quirk born several generations ago, one that can be passed down from one wielder to the next. Izuku's eyes widened. Quirks could be transferred to other people. He'd never even heard of anything like that before. Each wielder stockpiles their power and then empowers the next user, their successor. My abilities are the result of over a century of effort. But Izuku hesitated, eyes flicking to the hero's side. Go on. I know you want to ask, young Midoriya. You're your all might, Izuku murmured. What villain was strong enough to hurt you this badly? And why have I never heard of them? Yagi sighed, pulling up his shirt a little to expose the scar running over his entire left side. It was shaped like someone had drilled straight through his chest. And Izuku held back a grimace at the sight. I fought a terrible, terrible evil 5 years ago, Yagi stated grimly. He's still the most powerful villain I have ever faced. And in our final clash, he got me with this powerful parting blow. My power has been severely limited since. That explained All Might's gradually declining patrol lengths. Who was he? Yagi shook his head. You need not know, young Midoriya. I finished him off that same day. His voice was a mix of venomous satisfaction and hollow recollection. Izuku hated the idea of killing, but he understood that in desperate situations heroes had no choice but to use lethal force. But the very fact that someone had managed to push All Might that far was absolutely terrifying. Yagi lifted his lips up in a smile, trying to lift the suddenly somber mood. Well, you know my secret now. I don't need to bother running around so much to hide it from you anymore. That's certainly true. I trust you with this knowledge, young Midoriya. But remember that this is an important secret. Don't go around telling people about my quirk. Seriously, Izuku tilted his head. I'm going to tell Ochako. Yaga's eye twitched. All right, and my mom, young Midoriya. Either I tell her your true identity, or you will, Izuku stated firmly. She needs to know. Fine, Yagi relented with a sigh. You're a lot meaner to me in this form. Huh, where'd all that precious hero worship go? Honestly, it's probably still processing all of. Izuku waved his hands to indicate the older man. This is a pretty big shock. The symbol of peace smiled sadly. That I'm not as strong as you thought I was. Izuku shook his head. No, that you're just as human as the rest of us, Yagi-san. 6:07 p.m., Thursday. Izuku's mother and Ochako stood across from them, waiting expectantly. What's this big thing you wanted to tell us? Sweetie, why are you moving me in front of the couch? Izuku stepped back to Yaga's side, dodging the question. Well, it'd probably be easier to just show you. What do you? Inko's voice trailed off as the small and skinny skeleton next to her son suddenly transformed into the massive and bulky symbol of peace. Hello, All Might boomed. Inko's eyes widened so much that Izuku was afraid they'd fall out. She fainted, toppling backward into soft furniture. Ochako only blinked. Didn't see that coming. 6:16 p.m., Thursday. Izuku maneuvered his unconscious mother into a more comfortable position on the couch with practiced ease. Meanwhile, Ochako interrogated All Might. All Might himself was in Izuku's living room and currently being interrogated by his best friend. That was an actual thing that was happening. Whoa, so you're Yagi Tashinori, Ochako confirmed. Yagi nodded. Yes, but for a few hours a day, you're All Might and super buff and strong. And a lot more hot. Ochako ignored him. Am I wrong? No, that's correct. Neat. I guess that explains Izuku's rant about your decreasing activity. An impending retirement. What? I never. Ochako poked him, a slight smile playing across her lips. Izuku really needed to quit muttering. Yeah, I immediately noticed your patrol times and active hours decreasing 5 years ago. There was also a clear drop in the number of cases you solved per month and the number of interviews you took. Yagi blinked. That obvious? Pretty much. You still held a lot of press conferences, probably to make this step back less prominent. Without knowing about your injury, I just assumed you were retiring. People don't tend to mention it, but you have been a hero for quite a long time. I think that's the kindest way that anyone has ever called me old. Izuku scratched his hair, embarrassed. But why help us train, Yagi-san? Ochako asked. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad you are. But even if you have more free time now, there have to be a million better things for you to do than train 2 random teenagers. You could have set up an entire cleanup effort or something instead of driving up every day with your truck to load junk with us. So why? Yagi chuckled. The simple reason. I'm not nearly as busy in this form as you think I am. Young Uraraka, besides some paperwork. Everything I told you that day was true. I was curious and wanted to see the beach clean a site that was certainly worth it, by the way. A cleanup effort from my hero self would call way too much attention here. And I wouldn't deprive you two of your training like that. So I helped out myself. But moreover, you're retiring soon, Izuku stated quietly. Within a few years, Yagi confirmed. Damn, I've been All Might for quite a long time now, as you said. My body's getting old, so I've started to look toward the future. Training the two of you helped me learn how to do that, and recently, I got a teaching job at UA to find a successor for One for All and nurture the next generation of heroes with my experience. You'll still be there to teach us, Ochako realized. Yagi grinned. Yes, and on that note, I must ask, do either of you wish to become my successor? You're both extremely qualified. I don't think young Midoriya desires the opportunity. Izuku shook his head. He had thought about it after learning All Might's secret, of course. He could probably help a lot of people if he became the symbol of peace and used All Might's ability. But ultimately, that just wasn't the kind of hero Izuku wanted to be. He didn't need or want that much spotlight. He was far happier becoming an investigative hero like Sir Night-Eye and saving people through his intelligence, skill, and future knowledge. Perfect recall would be more than enough. But what about you, young Uraraka? It's pretty tempting, Ochako admitted. But no thanks. While being hella buff would be super cool, I have ... more than enough power to control and work on already. Izuku couldn't help but wonder if Ochako didn't have to worry about reset and keep the ability a secret. Would she have desired All Might's offer? On the other hand, he didn't even know if the human body could handle 3 powerful emitters at once. Dual quirk users like Ochako were already practically unheard of. I respect your decision. Yagi nodded. One last thing. Though despite being a UA teacher next year, I won't actually be grading the hero exam. So just as before, both of your successes will be entirely up to your efforts. We understand that, Yagi-san. Don't worry, Izuku grinned back at his favorite hero. We'll do amazing. 4:58 p.m., Sunday. 4 months had passed since he made that statement. 125 days. And 125 green books to go with them. Izuku flipped through those memories casually, checking on their improvement. Izuku and Ochako were both 15 now, a little more well-built than before. They started training even harder than before as UAS exam approached. Having zero clue what they'd be tested on was worrying. For all Izuku knew, it could be something targeted towards powerful applicants, and he'd need every last piece of pitiful human strength he had. After the successful capture of Needle Hair, Izuku had started to carefully increase their activities as Prophet. They'd give Tsukachi hints on small-time villains, maybe a tidbit on a relevant case or the hero news that Izuku kept up with almost constantly. Izuku convinced Ochako to save every other day instead of every morning, doubling the usual time they gain. Reliving an extra day didn't really matter to him anymore. They made sure not to rely on Nano's quirk too much since it was already registered in the quirk database. While its information-gathering abilities were incredible, it had a clearly defined range and couldn't see anything that wasn't happening in public view. His hacking skills were also coming along and were quite helpful in finding criminals, though he didn't want anyone to look into that either. Izuku made sure their calls to the detective were timed as unpredictable as possible to avoid suspicion. Tsukachi was incredibly sharp. A tiny bit of future knowledge was enough for him to close cases and move heroes to exactly where they needed to be in time. He really didn't seem like just a detective at all, actually. The phone rang, jolting him out of his thoughts. It was the simple one Izuku had specifically for Prophet, containing a voice changer and a few modifications so that it couldn't be traced. Speak of the devil. Ochako took it. Hello. Hey, Prophet. It's me. Ah, Tsukachi-san. Ochako greeted cheerfully. You haven't called in a while. Is there something you need? Yes, I need your help finding someone. Ah, a villain? No, actually a hero. He's a good friend of mine named Saltaire, who suddenly vanished yesterday during his patrol. He didn't make contact with anyone beforehand, and there is still not a single trace to be found. A source of mine suspects it was a kidnapping. Ochako hesitated. You know that I can't control my future visions that well. There's no guarantee that I'll see anything related to. That's fine, Tsukachi assured. But if you do happen to find anything useful, Prophet, please call me. The detective hung up on her, and Ochako slowly lowered the phone. That was weird. He's never asked us to find a hero before. Ochako noted. Yeah, Izuku rubbed his chin. Saltaire's only been gone for a day. And it didn't sound like Tsukachi had much evidence it was a kidnapping. So why'd he call us an anonymous informant he barely knows already? Ochako shrugged. Tsukachi did say they were good friends. He's probably worried about him. Someone who can see the future is a very welcome extra set of eyes. But who exactly is Saltaire? I've never heard of him before. The leaping hero, Saltaire, real name Angelo Aikta, Izuku recited. A relatively new hero ranked 183 in Japan. His quirk, Leaper, lets him jump pretty high and gives him powerful kicks. He has short, orange hair and this really flashy hero costume. Well, it can't hurt to look for him, even if he isn't actually kidnapped. That's true. Tsukachi didn't really tell us anything except that he vanished yesterday, so if we reset right now, we'll rewind back around 34 hours and have more than enough time. I already know his patrol route, so if we get a cat to follow him, Didn't you just say his quirk was called Leaper? Ochako interrupted. Nano's cats won't be able to trail him if he's jumping around everywhere. Izuku blinked. Right. Then I guess we have to go with the, less legal solution. 5:40 p.m. Saturday. I really should have asked this before. Nano tilted her head to the side. But Midoriya, why exactly did you have me place a tracking device on a pro hero? The three of them were in Izuku's room, the blue-haired girl almost out of place among all his hero merchandise. She had brought 2 cats with her, both of the adorable creatures now quietly curled into her side. The black cat on her right was the one who snuck Izuku's little device onto the back of Saltaire's leg a few hours ago. Izuku looked up from the tablet in his hands, sparing Nano a glance before staring back down at the moving green dot on the screen. We were told he'd be kidnapped today, so we've been keeping an eye on him. Stalking, Nano stated, for the past few hours, but his patrol route is almost over and nothing's happened. It's odd. The screen displayed a detailed map of Musutafu, with Saltaire's route clearly labeled in red and nearby locations shown. Saltaire was indicated by a bright green dot, and other than when he was sidetracked by fans or actively capturing small-time criminals, the green dot stuck to the schedule and faithfully followed the red line. Ochako frowned. Yeah, but there's still enough time for something bad to happen. Couldn't you just tell that detective now that his friend might get kidnapped? Nano wondered. Izuku was already shaking his head. We have no information, so that won't really work. That's why I wanted to see what happens first. Wait, something's happening. The dot suddenly started racing off its directed path, zooming through the streets far faster than the leaping hero's usual pace across rooftops. He must be in a car. Izuku monitored the path carefully, hoping that they wouldn't leave the tracking device's limited range. Saltaire's pretty far away from his patrol route now, Ochako stated. I think this is the kidnapping that Tsukachi was talking about. Well, he could have still gotten in the vehicle willingly, Nano pointed out. We can't see anything he could be driving himself, for all we know. 10 minutes later, the little green dot stopped on a building. But to their surprise, it wasn't at an unknown location or even anywhere suspicious. It was the opposite. Izuku blinked. That's the water hose duo's agency. So all he was just going to a meeting. What? There was no way Tsukachi didn't know his friend was simply visiting another agency. The incident must have happened here, and now that he'd stopped somewhere, Izuku needed to track Saltaire for even longer in case he got kidnapped on the way back. How irritating. The three of them settled in for a boring few hours, taking turns staring at the stupid tablet and its unmoving green dot. Ochako brought out some homemade matcha during the wait, something Izuku and Nano thanked her dearly for. Even the cats seemed to enjoy the dessert. Nothing ever changed. Saltaire remained perfectly accounted for in the water hose duo's agency, even as night fell. Impossible. Tsukachi told him that Saltaire was kidnapped during his patrol, so either something bizarre had happened to the agency or... Oh, Izuku sighed. Wow, I'm dumb. Sometimes, yeah. Ochako agreed readily. What happened? So you know how we're waiting here for a kidnapping based on zero information? Right. 4:56 p.m., Sunday. Ochako pressed her fingertips together, and they glowed a light, pretty blue. Save. 2 more minutes passed before their phone rang, just as before. Hey, Prophet. It's me. Hello, Tsukachi-san. Ochako greeted. Is there something you need? Yes, I need your help finding someone. Who? A hero and good friend of mine named Saltaire. He vanished yesterday during his patrol. He didn't make contact with anyone beforehand, and there is still not a single trace to be found. A source of mine suspects it was a kidnapping. Ochako answered calmly, her response already prepared. You know that I can't control my future visions that well. There's no guarantee that I'll see anything related to your missing hero. That's fine, Tsukachi assured. But if you do happen to find anything useful, Prophet, please call me. The detective hung up on her, and Ochako slowly lowered the phone. She looked over at Izuku. I honestly don't blame you for falling for that. He sounded pretty genuine to me too. There. I know, right. 7:26 p.m., Monday. And so, Prophet didn't do a single thing to find Saltaire over the next day, already knowing that he would be safe with the water hose duo the entire time. But the public, and by extension, Prophet, wouldn't have any way of knowing where he was without literally stalking the hero as they did. Izuku really had to give Tsukachi credit for his simple yet very effective plan to find out Prophet's true capability. First, the detective would tell them about a kidnapped hero and ask Prophet to find him. Prophet would look into the future, and then one of 3 things would happen. Either they'd get nothing helpful, they'd find out where Saltaire actually was, or they'd see Tsukachi reveal a fake story about Saltaire's whereabouts a day later. If they got nothing helpful, Prophet's foresight would be seen as weak and unreliable. Izuku briefly considered letting them think this, but it might make Prophet a more vulnerable and attractive target. If they found out where Saltaire actually was, Tsukachi would know that Prophet's foresight was precise and could find exactly who they wanted, even if they were in secure locations like a hero agency. In this case, Tsukachi would probably play the kidnapping thing off as a misunderstanding. If they see Tsukachi's fake story, the detective would know that the foresight was focused on Prophet themselves and even its relative range if he planned out when to tell them the tale. It was a foolproof plan that'd benefit Tsukachi no matter how their foresight really worked. But unfortunately for him, Achako's quirk wasn't actually foresight. Achako picked up the call. "Hello, hey, it's Tsukachi again," the detective said. "I'm just calling to tell you that we already found Saltaire. Reports showed that he got captured in the middle of his patrol, but luckily he broke free of the villains within a few hours and was saved by Kamui Woods. He doesn't seem to be harmed at all, either. Wow, what a lucky guy. That's incredible." Achako deadpanned. Izuku stifled a snort. "Yes, it is. Reset. 4:58 p.m., Sunday." Achako picked up the phone. "Hey, Prophet. It's me, Tsukachi-san." Achako greeted lightly. "You haven't called me in a while. Is there something you need?" "Yes, I need your help finding someone." "Really? Who?" "A hero and good friend of mine named Saltaire." Achako cut him off. "Wait, are you talking about the guy with orange hair and a super flashy costume?" "Yes. Don't worry about him. I heard with my quirk that he was captured by villains while on his patrol but escaped within a few hours with the help of Kamui Woods. Apparently, there wasn't even a scratch on him." "Really?" "Yeah, he must be an incredible hero. I'm honestly surprised the man is only ranked 183. My vision also told me that he was set to have a meeting with the famous water hose duo around the same time, probably to discuss those same villains who kidnapped him. I should try to find out who they are. Actually, they sound pretty dangerous." Silence. "Are you still there, Tsukachi-san? Is something wrong?" No, it's nothing. I was just surprised. Your foresight quirk is remarkably powerful, Prophet." "Thank you. Oh, sorry, I've gotta go now. Something's about to come up." "Saya, Tsukachi-san." Achako hung up on him, cackling, and Izuku laughed with her. The police were finally getting serious about finding Prophet, yet as long as they didn't know what her quirk actually was, they'd always be several steps behind them. 3:07 p.m., Friday. His consciousness came rushing back to his body, the world reconstructing around him as it had so many times before. Friday, 3:07 p.m. They were in Achako's room, cross-legged on the hardwood floor. She was sitting across from him with a massive notebook strewn out around her. Achako Analysis for the Future number 11 and Achako Analysis for the Future number 12 still resting open in her lap. Achako leaned forward, her auburn brown eyes wide with anticipation. "You just came back, right? What was the exam like? Was it hard?" In response, Izuku sighed. "Robots." Present Mike had been the one to explain the rules of the exam, which was great, but the longer the hero had talked, the worse the exam seemed for Izuku. First, they separate everyone by area, probably so that friends can't work together, and then drive us all to a mock city where the exam takes place. Mock city. Izuku waved his hand. "It's a huge, full-size replica of an urban landscape with buildings and everything. I'll show you in a second." The task's objective itself is pretty simple: defeat as many enemy robots as you can within 10 minutes. They have 3 main types: 1-pointers, 2-pointers, and 3-pointers, each scaling up in size, durability, and reflexes. You get Villian points every time you immobilize or destroy a robot. They have 40 slots, so I'm pretty sure the 40 students with the highest points get into the hero course. Achako frowned. "Wait, that's all they score on? But there are so many useful quirks that don't affect robots, though. That's just so dumb." "Yep," Izuku agreed, not even bothering to hide the bitterness in his voice. "Since we can't bring any tools or gear unnecessary for quirk activation, you practically need a physical kind of quirk. But that's just how it is. I doubt this targeted exam's even UAS fault. Really, the Hero Commission mainly wants flashy, powerful heroes that can grab the media's attention and make them look more effective." It's been over a decade since Izuku received his quirk, plenty of time to accept how the Hero Commission really worked, and that his subtle and weak memory quirk would be considered unheroic by a lot of people, no matter how hard he tried, no matter how useful it actually was. Izuku wordlessly held out his hand and Achako took it with hers. The memory set into sharp focus. He stood still on a gray street, surrounded by unfamiliar, anxious students. In front of him was a tall gate that led to an empty, lifeless city. A sense of nervousness filled the air as his testing group prepared to compete for their future. The next 10 minutes could very well determine the course of their lives. Though it was a little different for Izuku, wasn't it? This was the first time he was living this particular day, and something this important could always be improved with a second try. He was still planning on trying his best, of course, but possessing such a powerful redo button at his fingertips could easily instill the dangerous mentality of nihilism if he wasn't careful. Achako was about to fight somewhere in a testing area just like this, and there was no doubt she'd pass with how amazing she and her quirk were. Izuku, on the other hand, was going to have to struggle his hardest to kill enough stupid robots to pass. Go! A sudden shout pierced the area, Present Mike's booming voice ringing loud through his ears, and Izuku was off into the city. Only a few other students reacted when he did, the rest left behind in a moment of stunned surprise before desperately rushing to catch up. There are no countdowns in a real fight, Yagi had told them, and after learning who the man really was, the words held far more weight. The robots were colored a deep, dark green and had red orbs placed like eyes where their heads would be. Depending on the robot's type, they had distinct shapes and a number painted onto their sides. Izuku sprinted straight for the closest one, his favorite red sneakers pounding against the road. It was a one-pointer, vaguely humanoid with a large torso and a small, snake-like neck sprouting out of its top. A single red eye took up most of its tiny head, and it had two large arms with flat shields built into its exterior. Target acquired. The bot exclaimed threateningly at Izuku's approach, wheeling to meet him. A bulky mass of green metal swung towards Izuku's face. Far too slow. Izuku smoothly ducked under the blow and leaped up, his palms pushing against metal shoulders to launch himself higher. In midair, he twisted sharply into a perfect roundhouse kick, striking with all he had into its most vulnerable spot. The one-pointer's neck caved in at the blow to expose machinery, damaged yet not dead. Izuku reached in and viciously tore out different wires until its red eye finally dimmed. 1 point. Izuku took out 3 more one-pointers and 1 two-pointer with calculated blows before he realized that this just wasn't enough. He was falling behind the competition. Destroyed robots were littering the streets while he barely had 6 points. But what else could Izuku do? It took him a while to destroy one-pointers and two-pointers, and he didn't even have the attack power to kill a three-pointer. To make things worse, two-pointers and three-pointers had short-ranged lasers that made them harder to approach. The disparity between Izuku's meager human strength and the robot's durability and attacks was too large. An idea struck. Most of the robots seemed to be coming out of the street, hence the dead ones in clear view. But when Izuku traced the pieces of metal and compared it to his growing mental map of the mock city, he realized that a large number of them were appearing in groups somewhere. He dove into an alley and, as predicted, 4 two-pointers clustered together. Time to test his theory. The two-pointers were the fastest type, speeding at students on 4 flat legs. Their speed and short height made them hard to hit, and they also had a long tail capable of firing lasers. But inside a tight, enclosed alley, all of those advantages were useless. Izuku jumped in close, seamlessly weaving through all of their blows and beams. None of them came close, their attack patterns way too obvious to anyone with a sliver of martial arts training, leaving them to strike and destroy each other on accident. Within 5 seconds, Izuku was victorious in an alley of crushed metal. 14 points. Timing it just right, Izuku made 2 one-pointers crash into each other. 16 points. 3-pointers were way too tanky for him to beat, but their hail of lasers was great for taking down other robots. A group of clueless one-pointers was lured to their slaughter. 23 points. Izuku set 2 robots up to collide, only for an infuriating blonde to steal them with his blue lasers. He glared after the boy as he danced away. 23 points. A tail just grazed his head, stabbing into the robot behind him. Izuku snapped a kick in the opening and knocked the first bot's head clean off. 26 points. Izuku dove past a 2-pointer's charge and grabbed its tail with a tight grip. He twisted it as hard as he could to aim the laser at other robots, taking down 3 before he was forced to kill the struggling 2-pointer. 30 points. He yanked a girl out of the way of some lasers on instinct, pulling her to safety. She took down both 2-pointers with a mushroom quirk before bowing to him shyly in thanks, a fringe of hair covering most of her face. 30 points. A mighty swing from a 3-pointer missed Izuku and smashed straight through 2 one-pointers at once. 32 points. With his new strategy, Izuku was rapidly catching up to the rest. Just a few more minutes and, suddenly, a huge crash made every student look up and then promptly deny their own eyes. A massive robot now towered over the mock city, its blocky face practically as big as a house. Numerous red eyes peered down at them as it casually wrecked the buildings it traveled through. The 0-pointer. Thankfully, it didn't seem very fast, although it was obviously impossible to fight. What an utterly terrifying obstacle. The other students panicked at the sight, screams erupting around Izuku as they all ran in the opposite direction. Izuku watched it for another moment before turning to follow, still looking for more points. Unfortunately, there were none to be found in the chaos. Besides a single one-pointer, Izuku didn't get any more points during the last 2 minutes of the physical exam. Time's up, and there the memory abruptly ended. Achako's room suddenly shifting back into perspective. Achako blinked a couple of times, readjusting a bit slower to their new surroundings. Whoa, those robots were a lot more threatening than I imagined, especially those huge 3-pointers. Zero gravity was super effective against robots. By the way, Izuku reassured. Really? Yep. He went around lifting them up to lethal heights and dropping them back down and according to you, got over 50 points. Well, did I give you anything to pass on? It's a little funny, actually. Ochako excitedly told him how she did as they stepped away from Yue, missing the fearful glances from the examinees in her area. She walked freely next to him, showing zero signs of nausea or quirk exhaustion. You told me that the robots were too light, Izuku murmured, suddenly feeling an odd mix of pride and envy. It was almost sad to relive that exam. All those other students with powerful offensive quirks cruised through the exam and racked up incredible points, like that guy running around with engines for legs and kicking through enemies left and right. Ochako did even better than all of them. And then there was Izuku, struggling to trick and defeat those same robots one by one. In the end, all I got on my first try was a pitiful 33 points, probably not enough to pass. What you did was amazing, Izuku-kun, Ochako told him. You took down so many robots with actual skill and strategy, and even saved a bunch of people while you were at it. 33 points ain't bad at all. Plus we have another chance at it now, right? Izuku pursed his lips. But that's exactly the problem. I need that second chance. All this training, all this work, and I'm still too weak to pass the exam without using your quirk. I can't just use you like this to make up for my lack of ability forever, can I? That's not fair to you, Ochako. If never met you, if I didn't have reset, I wouldn't even have a shot of becoming a hero. Ochako suddenly broke into a laugh. No, Izuku-kun. It's the other way around. What? Look around you for a second. Come on, humor me. Izuku did so, albeit a little confused. Her room was smaller than his and relatively simple. She had a map of the stars plastered on the wall, and there was only a single piece of hero merchandise, the 13 figure standing proud on her dresser. The other decorations in the room consisted of pictures of her family, Ochako or her parents smiling wide. He was in one too, actually, him and Ochako both holding up matching peace signs in the frame. Her captured grin was so bright that he wanted to dive back into the memory and watch it again. His eyes landed on her wooden desk where 10 of the 12 notebooks he'd gifted her were piled in a stack, her bright pink bookmarks poking out of their pages. They contained months and months of data focused on her quirk and martial arts, her impressive progression over the time he knew her. Izuku glanced back at Ochako to see her smiling. Ochako analysis for the future number 12 gripped with 5 fingers, her quirk control now so perfect she didn't have to worry about accidental activation. It's the other way around, Ochako repeated. Before I met you, I couldn't even float myself without getting sick. I barely had a chance of achieving my dream, and that was before I knew I'd be attacked by robots. Even without considering reset, you're the reason I've gotten this far. Meanwhile, you were strong way before you met me. Even if you somehow fail the exam, which I really doubt you did, you'd just get in through the other method we researched. Placing high in the sports festival wouldn't be that hard for you. The corner of his mouth quirked up at that. That's a pretty big claim, you know. I almost feel bad for the other students. Well, heckum, we're going to be taking 2 hero spots anyway, Ochako declared. I owe so much to you, Izuku-kun. So please, let me help you with stuff like this dumb, biased exam. Izuku relented with a sigh. I just wish I was strong enough to overcome my lack of a combat quirk and do stuff like this on my own, but I guess I'm not there yet. Maybe not. But you still took down, 26, minus 26 scary robots with no prior knowledge or offensive quirk. Even if that's less than the rest, or no one else will ever know, I'll always find that pretty cool. Thanks, Ochako. She always knew what to say, somehow. 5 p.m., Friday. Yagi stood tall in a darkened room, intently watching the array of screens in front of him. Around him, almost a dozen pro heroes were writing down notes on what they saw. He hadn't had time to earn a full teaching license like his new colleagues, but he did make sure to complete several training courses over the past few months. He wasn't arrogant enough to believe that he could tackle education with nothing but his pro hero experience and some time spent with teenagers. That'd be ridiculous. It was enlightening, really, to get that new perspective. It was well and easy to claim that he would be nurturing the next generation as an educator, but a lot harder to actually start doing it. Yagi was in his depowered form right now, his true identity already revealed to the trusted UA staff. It felt quite odd being in his weak and thin state around all of these young and fit heroes, but he supposed he'd have to get used to it. The joys of getting older. Maybe this was why Gran Torino was always so grumpy. As Yagi suppressed a shudder at the very thought of that man, Nezu spoke up. It seems that we have many extremely prospective applicants this year, everyone. The rat clapped his paws almost gleefully. This is going to be a very interesting semester. Rein it in there, boss. A scruffy, black-haired man eraserhead muttered. I swear, you become more of a supervillain with every passing day. The creature only laughed louder at the insult. But is that such a bad thing, Aizawa-kun? Maybe if I was a supervillain, more humans would take me seriously. That was a joke, right? Nezu certainly looked non-threatening. He was cute, fluffy, and needed a custom-built chair to boost his height. The long scar on his face somehow only added to the harmless effect. But then you actually met him in person, and well, when you released the zero-pointer in testing Site B, immediately wrecked the surrounding buildings. The students are there seem to be extraordinary cocky, and while I do appreciate the confidence, there should certainly a limit. No. On it, the man in a large mask over his face, Power Loader, replied instantly. Shuzenji-san, please prepare to heal the red-haired girl in testing site as she'll likely be knocked unconscious within 13 seconds. The elderly woman recovery girl complied with a muttered curse. A truly scary being. And Yagi had faced down all for one himself. Yagi wrenched his focus back to the students in front of him, letting his blue eyes flick between the different testing sites. As Nezu said, the students were impressive. A large amount of them were defeating the robots easily with their wide variety of quirks. In one area, a green-haired girl stood still, hands touched in prayer, as vines tore through every robot in her vicinity. In another, a boy with engines on his legs effortlessly kicked through a three-pointer, Ingenium's younger brother, if Yagi wasn't mistaken. And in yet another, a black-haired boy charged straight into enemies with his skin hardened like a rock. But Yagi couldn't resist following two teenagers more than the rest. The two he knew. Admittedly, he'd been worried for Midoriya at first. Although brilliant and quite skilled, the student's quirk was completely useless against the villain bots. And the villain bots were made of metal and had very durable armor. But then the exam started, and Yagi realized that he was a fool for doubting the boy for even a moment. Midoriya shot into the city the instant Mike called it, far ahead of the other examinees, and swept through the area like a seasoned pro hero, efficiently taking down the one-pointers and two-pointers in his path with well-placed kicks to their weak spots. If he didn't have it already, he definitely grabbed UAS attention when he started literally turning the robots against each other, tricking them into destroying one another with their own lasers and blows. The precision there was absolutely remarkable, and he was even racking up hero points as he did so by saving students and pulling them out of the way of attacks. It was almost like he knew what was going to happen next. Aizawa leaned forward in his seat, an interested gleam in his eye. I want that one in my class. His demand left no room for argument. Nezu chuckled, naturally. Meanwhile, Uraraka was doing even better. The brunette glowed pink as she gracefully flew through the streets, tagging every robot she glided by. Every robot she touched lit pink with her and floated up into the sky against their will. It was incredible to watch the massive villain bots lie suspended in the air, helpless, before they were ruthlessly slammed into the ground with her quirk's release. Uraraka didn't even seem to be tiring, powering through everything with a grin across her face. Yagi barely stifled a laugh at the expressions on the other examinees. Does that listener have a hero parent? President Mike Yamada asked, awed. We almost never see that kind of quirk control outside of the recommended kids. Nope, Nezu answered cheerfully. Uraraka-san's parents own a construction company, which is probably where she achieved all of that practice. She certainly has talent. Kayama-chan, how's the invisible girl doing? Yagi startled at that, glancing over. Sure enough, one monitor had been dedicated to a thermal camera that tracked a red, girl-shaped blob as she raced through the exam. None of the villain bots even seemed to realize she was there. Pretty well, actually, Midden Kayama replied, not taking her eyes off the screen. She doesn't seem to have the strength to take down a robot normally, but she's clever enough to sneak in attacks on distracted ones. She's also getting a ton of rescue points from all the unprepared examinees in her area. Ken frowned. I really hate that we have a teenager fighting out there with zero protection. If she gets in, we need a costume for her like a SAP. Power Loader nodded. Yeah, I've been working on that myself. The support company we had a contract with just threw in the towel and gave her a pair of gloves, if you can believe it. What kind of costume even is that? We can sue them for that, right? Nezu nodded with a smile, his beady eyes glinting with malice. We most certainly can. Minutes passed, the students trying their hardest as the teachers monitored them and scored secret hero points. Yagi tried to remember all of the faces and quirks he'd be teaching. And then, Power Loader handed the principal a black device with a big red button. Even warned ahead of time, Yagi still couldn't help but gawk in horror and awe as an absolute mountain of a robot suddenly appeared to wreak havoc on the city, breaking buildings, crushing streets, and terrorizing the poor examinees. What the hell was this school? Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.